Hello, everyone. It's Saturday, and that means we're streaming, but today we're going to be doing something very different. Oh, hey, it's good to see that the chat box works properly. We're actually doing this for the very first time where I'm actually going to be doing sort of a pseudo just chatting session, and I see that the chat box actually stays in place. Oh, I see it fades away pretty quickly too. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I'm Oni Black Mage, and hey, Guy Ogre, hey, Nova. Is this going to have commentaries we watch, or is this straight up watching with no input from you? No, I'm going to be watching it with you while talking over it, which means I'm probably going to have to make sure that the audio on the video is lower than me because obviously I'm be talking over myself. Might be kind of annoying. See how this is. Hey Wesley, how are you today? Good to see you. And before we get started, yes, this is actually kind of impromptu in a way. Where I need to change the chat box where I want to have it where it just lingers, it doesn't just stay. Yeah, there we go. Always show messages. There we go. There we go. That should be permanent now, I think. We'll see. Hope I didn't break it. But yeah, so this is a bit of an impromptu thing where in the endeavor to try to finish up series as we go, and many of these series are either ongoing, like Final Fantasy or Resident Evil. Some of these series, like Fantasy Star, even though Fantasy Star is still technically alive, the core game version of them, like the console regular version, like that's pretty much done and over with. They're just an MMO now. And, Breath of Fire, Parasite Eve, those are series that are, for all intents and purposes, dead. And what I can definitely say is what's going on? Let's keep me informed. Oh, that's right. Comic Con is this weekend. I forgot that what is it? San Diego Comic Con is going on. I wonder if there are any good trailers, by the way. You have to let me know. This is gonna be off the cuff, by the way. I completely expect to be derailed by chat. This is going to be me talking over the playthrough. We're gonna watch all of the recaps of the Breath of Fire series, in order 1 through 5. And then afterwards, we're gonna have a little bit of analysis. We're gonna talk about in a very probably not constructive format, mostly from me. What do we think about the series? What do we think about the individual games? And then maybe on different aspects, not just which one do we like the most, we're going to rank them. Maybe if anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to ask them. But I think this will be a good way to remember the series. This is a memoriam. The series is dead. Even if you take away the dead Breath of Fire 6 mobile game that died in 2017, this series has been gone for 20 years. An entire generation has been born, grown up, and is old enough to vote and has never heard of this series. It's a bit sad when you think about it, but that is the reality of things. And just this opening screen right here on the very first Breath of Fire uh, is just enough to let you know how much this game had to just get going because it was developed by Capcom, licensed by Nintendo, and had to be published by SquareSoft in the West just to be in English. So it took those three companies together just to get the very first game out. Crazy when you think about it. But we'll see how the game has grown, or the series has grown. So let's get started.
Released by Capcom in the year 1993 on the Super Nintendo,
I think it's
Breath of
more
Fire
loud
would be
than I am.
Capcom's first and premier
I'm gonna
RPG
lower
series.
this. Alright,
Written
I
and
should be more
directed by
dominant now
Yoshinori
versus
Kowato,
the other
the
me.
game will be localized in English with
Let
help
me know
from
if it's too low.
For characters, the game features a boy named Ryu and a girl named Mina, which will become a
This
main
was back
character
during the
series to come,
days where
as
I
well as
used to do
establishing a
like the
world-setting
really
full
long
setting to
intros,
Genesis. For gameplay,
and
levels are turn-based
I
and
don't
all
do those
combat
anymore. If you
switch
probably
between
noticed,
enemies.
like I used to do a
Combat
minute
features every
intro
way from
where
spin. There are
I
8
would talk
playable
about
characters in
the
total, including
characters, I'd
Ryu,
talk about some of the
Mila,
mechanics, I'll talk
Mina,
about what made the game
who
unique,
eventually
I would
becomes a
add
core member
context
of the
to it, or
main
maybe
story,
interesting, a
along with
little bit like one or
resources.
two bits of trivia.
Also, there is a
What
day
made
and
this
night
game
cycle that affects enemy
unique?
spawns, as well as around
And
the
as
world,
it turns
he
out,
still
even though
finds
I
new
thought
ways
that
to
that
plant the
added
seeds of new
value to
characters and
preserving the
evolve
story of the
additional
game,
beings to
preserving the
become the
idea of
citizens
this
of the
game
world. The
to
story
people
often
that are
features
missing the
persons on
context of
both
it,
sides of the
go
Republic.
figure,
As the game
as
begins,
I've
Ryu finds
clearly
out that
learned,
many empires that rise and
nobody
fall, the
watches
Dragon
that.
Empire is one such
Like an
long ago.
incredibly small,
Though
minute
before the
version
Dark
of
Dragons, the
people
city
watch that.
lived in
Almost
a lost
everybody,
glory.
the overwhelming
Despite
majority of
constructed
people, according
history,
to
the
YouTube
Dark
data,
Dragons
skip over
began a
that part
campaign to take
because it's
over
just
the
like get to the
world and
story, get to the
power gained
story.
from
And
mysterious
so I'm like, when I
forces.
saw that, I'm
As
like,
they now turn
there's
their
no
attention
point in
to
me
the
doing that,
Aggregate
so I don't do them
village, a young
anymore.
warrior named Ryu is startled awake and surrounded by flames. With the other surviving villagers, he learns the Dark Dragon King Zog is plotting
This
to use
is
the other dragon families to join the
1994, by
White
the
Dragon
way.
clan here, perhaps unaware that they have lost
So
the
we have the
power
Dark
to evolve into
Dragons
a dragon. The villagers
that
are
are
prepared to
told by
give
their
up, but
goddess,
Ryu's sister and village princess
empowered by
Sakura
them,
instead
to
decide
go
to
and
follow
murder
suit,
everybody
as they
else and
resolve to
subjugate the
burn
world,
and
literally
erase
take
the
over
past
the
with no
world.
mission to fulfill. She draws the attention of the Dark Dragons away, but shows she is no pushover with her powerful magic. Unfortunately,
And
she
actually, I
causes the general
forgot that
fading
that
before
happened
Vader
where
attacks,
the Light
and
Dragons
she
said they
faces
couldn't turn
goddess
into
Sakura,
dragons
who soon
anymore.
overwhelms and captures her.
Because that
We now
comes up a
hear that
couple
when the
times in a
Dragon
couple other
family began to
games.
rule, the goddess Tyr appeared and
The
granted leadership to
Dragon
Zagreus,
family.
but promoted jealousy and
And
savage
Tyr
control
later
between races.
became
When the
Miria.
world was on the edge
They
of
just kind
ruin,
of use
Ryu
that word
stepped forward with
interchangeably.
7 allies and locked up Tyr with 6 keys. The 6 goddess keys were then scattered and hidden around the world, and the Light Dragons would soon bring balance and peace. Back with the villagers, Sarah's spell lit,
Kind of a
and the Light
save the
Dragons were
world kind of
rebuilt,
thing. Like, we've
but
seen
are
this
divided
before.
on whether to try and survive or fight and rescue Sarah. Ryu, however, has made up his decision to rescue his sister and waste no time moving out. He approaches the nearby castle town of Camelon, finding them recovering from Dark Dragon occupation as well. Helping the king there with the problem of monsters infesting his castle, Ryu removes the frog sitting on the throne and earns their trust. They tell him of a hidden palace in the
Using the
Dark Dragon
isometric
where the
turn-based
curse key
system
is
back in the
sealed, and
day
so he makes
was
his
a
way to
little
the
bit
night
unique.
next.
Not too many
At
games did
night,
that.
he sees the Laxicute
Most of them were
the
kind of
villagers
like
have left, and so Ryu is able to sneak
Dragon
behind a post. He
Quest,
indeed finds a
some
lightly guarded
variation of
machine
it.
within an eye
This one at
palace,
least you got
and
to
keys
see
that return
everything.
a strange stone tablet.
You're playing
Retrieving it
Live
is time
Alive
to
as you watch
overcome
this?
with a strange
Nice.
power, as he now hears an
The
ominous
HD
voice warning
2D
him to
looks
run while he
beautiful.
still can
Again,
before their arrival.
wish that Final
As
Fantasy
he
VI
escapes,
got
he
just a
covers nearly
remaster
the
like that,
entire
it's all.
town, as the machine was controlling the quakes as suspected. Returning to the king, he understands losing Nanai if it also meant destroying the Dark Dragon occupation, and directs him next to the kingdom of Winland. Traveling there, he sees
So
the
here we
future
have like the
and
Dark
also
Dragons
returns to
literally
confirm,
destroying
learning that the
entire
king has
cities.
refused to submit to the Dark
It comes up
Dragons,
as a theme
also
later
collapsed
where
recently.
the dragons
He
are just
overhears
deemed
the king
way
is
too
acting under
destructive,
poison,
and
his
even the
daughter
clash of them
visits
is way too
Nina, searching
destructive.
for a rare remedy for it on her own. It seems Zog is the one who poisoned him, but a wizard from Karma Tower has been known to use the same poison.
They do
Taking a
this
small
later
remedy from
too.
the
I think
treasure,
like
he
2 other
heads out
times where
towards
like the
Karma,
king
and
is just
finds along the
waylaid
way the
by a
same wizard
disease
that's been raising him
as
since
just
infants.
a sabotage
Finding
from
his
the
team
opposite
members fail
side.
him, the wizard releases a toxin called Xeon gas that specifically
Xeon
saps the strength
gas.
of the Wing Clan, and one guard is ordered to go seek help as Nina and the other guard are easily beaten and captured. They
The
think
sprite
to
art's
ask
pretty
Nina,
good,
who won't
I
be
want to
affected by the
say.
Xeon gas, for help,
At least
as
the
they
attempt for
rally the rescue
animation.
party and force their way to
The
the northern
individual
Dark
sprites for the
Dragon's control
characters,
tower.
we've seen better by
Ryu quickly
1994
strikes down the
standards, but this
wizard
is,
and rescues Nina,
getting the
who
job
finds a
done.
remedy for her father
There's a
after
good
he
emphasis on
collapses
trying to make the
inside.
individual
He
character more
recovers quickly
detailed.
with renewed vigor, and though Ryu is humble to ask for any reward, Nina volunteers to join him on his quest to oppose Zog. Heading out, their next destination is the river town of Tantar, home to the Forest Clan, and its sister town, Tuntar, who have had their chief and water taken from them by the Dark Dragons, who are hiding in the Forest of Despair nearby.
So pretty much the Dark
Fog
Dragons are
filled
just
dark
like
makes it
the
easy to get
evil
lost in these
empire,
woods,
but they're really out to
Ryu and Nina
conquer.
find a Dark
And
Dragon
quite frankly, they're
together.
strong enough to do
While
so.
defeating the
So
guards within,
when they have the
Ryu
might
stays
and the
sharp to
ability
his
to do
foes
so,
as
are
he is the
they
chief,
really
and the
so
team will
wrong?
take on the
You
general
know?
behind this. After his defeat, the general flees,
Granted, they are
and
kind of
Ryu
like,
joins the
killing
Emperor to
literally
become an enemy of
entire
Zog.
cities
Thanks
and
to
races
Bo's
of
tracking and
people.
traversal skills, they cut through the woods and focus on fixing the dried up river.
I actually never
The
liked
chief they
that,
rescued lets them
where
know there
you
is a
have to
Warlock
have a
nearby
certain
who
character
can
just to
remove
walk through
buffets from the
trees. I
river,
always thought that
they
was
need
really
the key from
inconvenient.
this
I did
old
not
vault
like that.
door. After helping purify the curse that plagues the small town of Romero, they gain a means to call down the floating
I thought
tower
the
of Lava
reference
and
to
use
Romero
which
zombies was
a
cute.
space key that can also control the robot. Entering the
This
stone
part was
robot,
cool
they find
though.
another
Having a
vault
giant
door
robot
within
is
it
always
and get the
cool.
stone heart of the robot pumping again.
Most of the
Finding another
dungeons in
stone
this game
tablet
weren't
is
very
what controls the
memorable, but
robot,
this one was
and
kind of
they
cool
reach
just
the
due to
rock
the
bottom of the
concept.
river
And
and
when we
destroy
got
it.
this early version of a
A single beam
cutscene,
from the robot
and then
blasts
like
through
that,
the
it was like,
wall,
wow,
rending the
super like laser.
saving both
That
towns.
was cool. That was
As
actually
Bennett, the leader of
really cool. You
Antar,
didn't
hopes to
get to
tell
see too many
Ryu and
in-game
raise how
cutscenes like
powerful
that
dark
back then,
dragons were holding
and
power
that was
against
pretty
Imperial
ambitious.
forces, and retrieving it easily, the group returns to find
So I
themselves
applaud the art
trapped
team for
before
trying
the
to make it like
festivities for
that.
a
That
wedding
was
in town.
cool.
Unfortunately, while this happens, a gremlin general steals the stone robot and uses its laser to destroy the entire town of Tuntar in a single blast. Before it can power up to destroy Tantar as
Just
well,
bodies on the
charge back
floor.
within the robot to
One thing that's a
destroy the
prevalent
enemy.
theme is just
They defeat it,
mass
but
murder
curiously, the stone
in Breath of
robot now
Fire.
moves
There's
on
a
its own to
body
the left
count.
nearby volcano, and the group gets out. As the robot steps into the
I think it's
volcano
funny
with
the
its
robot
mother,
feels
it destroys
bad
itself,
and kills
then says goodbye
itself.
and urges them not
It's
to
like,
make the same
wow,
mistake
what?
again. The lava overflows from the
Crazy when you think
volcano
about
and
it.
pools in the nearby river, and the group proceeds onward to the port city of Oria to the south. Along the way, they find a special dragon shrine where Ryu passes a trial by combat and unlocks his racial ability to transform into a powerful dragon of
And
various elements.
the early ones, it's kind of
However,
funny that
as
this
soon as they
mattered in
enter
like the
outflow of
first
city, they are
two
arrested
games,
and charged with
and then
fraud
it
and
really
burned to the
became
stake.
irrelevant in 3, 4, and
They
5
escape
was
without
like
a casualty
having
to
a
a
member
special
of
cave
each
full
of these
of caves,
demi-human
and learn that there is a
races,
town of bleak
where
nearby
humans are like
that the murderer's
almost
hand is full of
non-existent.
evil
Like
and
there's
dangerous
humans like
evil
that guy's a
creatures.
human,
As they
but the
spot
grand
four policemen
majority of people in
practicing
this
for their next
world
street fight, they
are
are asked by a
not
noble named Ross to rescue his
like
daughter from
demi-humans are
the
so
Serpent's Home.
populated, but it
The
seems like
best
through
man
all the warring,
practicing
like
would-be
most of them
villain
just get
named Karn is
destroyed,
currently
or
waiting in
humans just
prison back in the
outpopulate them
desert.
over time. Especially if we
Brave
go
and
through like
blistering heat in
how
the desert, they come across
like
the
a lot of
NPC
them are
town
just
of Aggregate
related.
and do a favor for the mayor to gain access to the crypt. The group gets caught in a flood of
Because there are some
Kingdra,
races
but
in this
fortunately
game,
Karn,
and then
knowing
Breath
that
of
they were
Fire
a
2 that just
courier,
don't
is
exist
there to free
anymore.
them.
They're just gone.
He agrees to
And then
help
by
with
the
the
time we get
warrior
to
task
3 and
and
then
help
4, like
Lambert
there's
start
so
Earth from
few.
Lisbon.
And then by the time we get to
There's
Breath of
no
Fire
warrior,
5, there's
but
only
it is
like
sad to leave
humans
Karn in
and
the
like a
lurch.
couple of beast
Thanks
people,
to
and like
Karn,
that's
they
it.
get past the locked
It's
door
like
to
as
the
as the
crypt,
series goes on,
only to
the
find a
emphasis on
broken
having
and
like
complex
different
gained along the way.
races with different
Freeing
racial
Ross's
abilities,
daughter, they learn the new
that
rules,
became like
using
such
the Aggregate key
a
to lure
low
dragons, and exchange for
aspect. That's
safety.
really not something that was
Going
part
into
of
the
the Breath of
trap,
Fire
she locks
identity.
herself
It
and the
seems
key.
that way from the first two games,
They
but it
learn the
really
dark
ended
key
up
is
not
still
being
in
the
Dark
case.
Tower, and climbing the aptly named tower to claim the key first, they are told the light and dark key form a pair. Persuading Ross to change his mind and not trust the Dark Dragons,
However,
they
this
also
part
meet
right
Wind
here,
and
where
Moon
they
from the
introduce
top
Karn
Dragon.
and like
Pushing
the
the dragons back,
fusion
the Aggregate take the
system,
moored ship in the
where
harbor
like you
and
could
get away
combine
peacefully
a
to
couple of
Ledge. The
different
townsfolk tell the
people
group of a
into
secret
each
plot
other.
and
The
believe that
fusion
once that
system was
plot is
something that I
successful,
genuinely kind of
Wind simply
missed
find the Dark Dragons and
throughout the
invite to
entire
set
thing,
sail on
because
their
once you
own.
could
But
fuse
before he
characters and
raids
you
the
would get
fort
new
and begins
characters
his
from
forces
fusing
on
those
Oria.
characters, that
Taking
was
the
really
ship back
effing
to
cool.
Oria, they thank Ross, rallying a sailing captain to
Geiger,
save the crew, and a fishman named
I'm
Cole asks them
honestly,
for
you're
a
probably
help
saying
to defeat
honestly
the Queen
sad
against the
or
Empire.
mad or
Agreeing to
something.
help, they
There
cast off
hasn't
on a
been a
new
real
vessel,
spiritual
where they
successor to these
accidentally run
games
into the
like
Dark
Suikoden
Dragons
is
and
getting
their
with Yuden,
reinforcements
because
and
I love the
surround
idea of a
Oria.
party of shape-shifting
They choose
heroes.
to stop the forces here, but are terribly
Yeah,
outnumbered. Gobi has the
Breath
idea
of
to blow
Fire,
the
even
ship up with an
conceptually, is
emergency
kind of dead,
fuel
but
and
maybe we should
overrun
discuss
before
that
joining
later,
the Supreme
because when
Commander
people
on the
say,
ship. Gobi's ready
like,
was
Breath
ready
of
just
Fire
as he
game,
eliminated
what do they
four enemy
really
ships, but
mean
now
by
stranded in
Breath
the
of
middle of
Fire
the ocean.
game? What
Proving the
defines a
magic
Breath of
orders of
Fire
the
game?
Dark
Is it
Desert by a cold
conventions?
pool
Is it
split up from a
storytelling?
deserted island.
What is it? I think we should
Optimistic,
kind of
Gobi
think
mentions
about that,
Prima
because
casually in a
even
chorus throughout
mechanically
the year, but
speaking,
mentions the group
all of the
defeating
games are
invading
different from
empires
each other in
and
very
leaving Prima
significant
there,
ways.
scalping it to the group with a cutthroat markup. As he goes to Prima to hold up his end of the deal, the merchant
This
sees
one, we're
Ross
kind of
meeting
like
many aggressive
every single
characters.
town, we're
Going
just
south
kind
to
of
London will
visiting
end up
the whole
costing the group's
menagerie
license to
of
do business here. As they
racial
push him towards the nearby town of
members.
Ghent,
Each
Ross
person
learns that the
kind of
monarch
has a
represents the
story, but
kingdom
it's
of the
really not that
barbarians.
important to the
He does a
overall
delivery job
story.
for the Prima
You
Guild,
just
but
kind of
when
like
his
doing
thanks
it
earn
because the
him wealth
prophecy
and
says you need to
prestige,
have
suddenly
8
news of the
people,
live there is being
one of
attacked
each
by dark
different race, like
dragons
it's
becomes
Noah's
so
Ark, and
important
every
that
one of them has
survivors
like a
need to have
unique
stores or
ability.
spirit of
But
death
they,
waiting to
during
reward
this
them.
time, like
As
everyone's
the guild
racial
leader wants
tribe had
information out
unique
of the
powers
port,
that
Gobi strikes a deal
mattered,
to
and
hire
like the
him and his
combination was
warriors to
better than
handle
the
the
sum of
work,
its parts,
and Gobi hurries back to the group with the job. Coming in, Ryu and team make short work of the ghost, saving the life of Ox, a burly metalsmith who made sure to escape the attack so he could warn them
But
off.
though, really,
He informs
having
them the
each of
Dark
these was
Dragons
just
are
kind of like
close,
you could
so
make them
he's
field
tough,
abilities
but
for
is
one
forcing them to
person if
make
you
a
really
secret
wanted
weapon
to.
while holding the
Making an
information
entire
hostage.
separate party member
Ryu
wasn't
reassures them
really
that their group has sworn
necessary,
to defeat Zog's forces, and so the Iron Ogre joins their party.
because as
His shield
history
strength
went
lets them
on,
smash their way to Nabal Dungeon.
having the
Though as
field
they head out
abilities
from
is
Ghent,
something
Karn
that
is met by a shaman from an
also
ancient clan
wasn't
who are
really
presumably blood relatives.
kind of got
On
dropped
Hint,
after for
You learn
Breath
some
of Fire
horrifying secret
3.
technique of fusion,
Because it mattered in
allowing you to
1,
combine
it
with
mattered
members
in
of the
2,
party to become
it
even more powerful
very
beings.
minimally mattered in 3, and then
Aiding
4 or
Denebolt
5
Fight,
field
they
abilities just
take out
don't
the
matter.
warden to free the other prisoners, but find their families and the weapon are still in a ball, including Ox's pregnant
It's
wife.
funny to me
Creating
that
a
for as
distraction
much as
using
people
the
hold
BoF
up
I,
3,
rescue the families
3
of the citizens,
destroyed a
while
lot
Ox's
of
wife
the
urges them to chase
quote
after a
unquote
regenerating
iconic
portable
elements
weapon
of the
using a
first 2
torpedo.
Breath of Fire
Onto a
games,
ship
just
headed
didn't
out
do
to
them.
destroy Prima.
It really didn't
It
encourage
was
them
rushed to
anymore.
ask Wisden's sorceress for aid to save Prima, though she lives in a
Like,
moving
your race
building in
doesn't
Wisdom.
matter, field abilities
As they
don't
come to the
matter,
Wandering Castle, they find the
abilities,
sorceress Prima still
transformations don't
sleeping,
really
and
matter.
learn she
Like,
has
yeah,
made
it had like
no
the
original
dragon
plans.
transformation for
But when
Ryu,
they
but
wait for her
just
to tell them
Ryu.
their plight,
No one
she
else
simply
did
hands them
really
a gold
anything
egg
else.
that
Well, I guess
slips through
Ray
the
could turn
hatches
into a
of the River
tiger.
Seagull Kingdom.
Amazing.
The
But
bug-eyed
like, no one
dragon
else
can
really
propel a
mattered.
typhoon and sink the Dark Dragon ships carrying the torpedo, and with that she returns to her rest. They quickly
Dees wasn't
find
even
out,
part of the
returning
party.
to urge her once more to come with them and quell the chaos engulfing the world. Reluctantly
Like, I would
agreeing,
say, I would
Ryu,
almost
also known
argue
as
that
Dees,
3
joins the
kind of
party and
did
hurried to intercept the Dark Dragon fleet. As they
debatably
surface, Groot's typhoon bug only
some
gets
of
the
the
job half
most,
done, and so the party,
I
supported
don't
by
know, it depends on
Ryu
how
and
we want to
Nina,
identify what is the
engage to
identity
rescue the
of
town
a
underwater.
um,
At the same time,
a
Ryu's
Breath of
orders
Fire
not
game.
gone unnoticed,
Because,
and
yeah,
Zog
the
orders
main
Ryu
connective
to bring the
tissue,
White
like you said
Dragon
right there,
back to
Gyogre, is
and
that
give him the
you have
blessed
Ryu, you
monsters.
have Nina, and the
Checking
ability to change
out
into a
Turnstone's
dragon.
Elite Four
Like,
Devas,
that's Breath of
Crow,
Fire.
Gobi,
Breath of
and
Fire is a
Zog.
guy named Ryu who
Back
can
with the
turn into a
group,
dragon,
Sea of Fuma
and
is
there's a
saved,
girl named
and as
Nina
thanks to Gobi
that he works
especially, the
with.
guild
Sometimes he
resets
saves
themselves
her,
and
sometimes she
brings
saves
back
him,
his
but
sphere,
it's
where
Ryu and
thousands
Nina
plan to
and turn
turn it
into a
into
dragon. Like,
illusion.
so far, that's the
With
criteria.
Gobi's help, the group traverses the deep ocean depths, and venturing onward they soon find the village of Gust, where they hear talk that something
This one, they
occurred in the
tried to
city
do what they
near
could
the
to make the world seem
undergrowths.
larger with,
Looking
like, the
into it, they
overworld
know that
map and
Quinn,
turning
a
into
strange
things like that.
flower whose pollen is blowing towards a town that makes the party a bit loopy themselves, as well as an odd laboratory nearby. Checking in, Court is within and slips away while
Look at that
Quinn uses
cutscene
a
cutaway.
formula on the group that shrinks them to the size of mice.
This was
The group
creative, though,
insects are
right
now a
here.
deadlier threat,
The whole
and as
idea
the
that you're
Rhinoceros bring
shrunk,
unexpected
that was
allies,
cool. Even though the
the
dungeon
party
was just
resolves
a
to
regular
search for
dungeon, the whole
scientists.
concept of you being
Chasing
shrunk
Court
like
again,
that
they learn some of the
was
monsters
clever
underground
context.
are actually missing townsfolk that became experiments. Catching Court outside, his flower has now grown to monstrous size, though after weeding out the terror, Court beats a quick escape as the madness infecting the town is dispelled. The townsfolk fix a nearby bridge for the group,
One thing I
allowing the
also
journey to
put
continue,
forth is
while
that
each
every Breath of
descends
Fire
into one
game
final breath
doesn't
of
really
wisdom from
have
the
a
party.
quote-unquote
Now
happy
moving in the
ending.
direction of the
Every
impending
Breath of Fire
Aggregate,
game
they find a
has
young girl
very
following
bittersweet
them down a
endings
detour to the underground
that
temple
leave a
of
lot
Dirty,
open-ended.
where they learn their
And
mother
it's
is lured
deliberately
from the gate and
open-ended
trapped in the dream
for
world
the
by one
purpose of the
Four
player to
Devas.
kind of like draw their own
An
conclusions.
item in tunneling can help them, so they venture back to the city of music, where they make a deal to get the item to help Mogu in exchange for changing them
I
into
almost
a
forgot
princess.
Mogu existed.
Speaking with Zog and wants to give him the time key.
He comes so late in the
The
game, he
princess is
doesn't even
convinced
matter.
Tyr will grant her and Zog eternal youth together, and after failing in their talks with her, they opt to steal the time key first. After Ryu spies on the princess while she bathes for research purposes, they
Classic
learn that the
research
time key is
purposes.
hidden. However, Curl of the Four Devas is one step ahead of them, stealing the key from right under their noses. As the princess was
I always
betrayed by
liked
Zog's
Dees.
forces
Just the
in
concept
Aggregate,
of like this
here,
really, really powerful
Quinn is allowed
character
the item to help
who
Mogu.
just is
Returning to it,
bored
they
and
jump into
decides to
Mogu's
help
dream
out.
world,
Like,
where his
not really
wishes
much
and thoughts
beyond
are
that.
made manifest. As they recombine his
I
fragments
also
into
feel
his
like Dees is kind of like the connective tissue, even though they dumped Dees
waking up
in.
real life to pledge his efforts to beating Zog as well.
They technically dumped
Nina
Dees
wakes
in
up in time
3, where
spring,
she's just kind of like
mostly covered in
a
snow.
side character,
Announcers say
and even
not
though in
only is the
4
sky
she
key
is
nearby
there,
Spire Tower, but some has cast a spell of winter on the area. Climbing
it
the
also
tower
sucks that
seems
she's
to be
not in
pretty
5.
straightforward, but waiting for them where the key would be is Moat, proclaiming he already got the key and they all walked into his trap. He warps them all into his own dream world, and wandering around they are surprised to find Moat's conscience hidden away, who is eager to help them defeat Moat.
Dungeoning is, or dungeoneering is also something that's very prominent in all 5 games.
Able to better define Moat within his own dream and defeat him from within.
That one was also kind of interesting as a boss thing. They were trying some interesting things with this. Not all of the dungeons had a gimmick, or a gimmick that really translated to something interesting with the gameplay, but they were trying to at least frame it in an interesting way for the very first Breath of Fire game. They really want to have it where like every dungeon had like a purpose, like a theme to it. I respect that.
Predictably, the person behind this mayhem is Curl, with the stolen time key.
Mazes, I never liked mazes, but at least the floor puzzle was there. Breath of Fire is always kind of light on puzzles. That's one thing I don't really care for in their dungeons, is that they have almost no puzzle solving mechanics. They're just really long hallways and sometimes mazes that you just get wandered through. Like, it really doesn't matter. You don't have to think too hard. The main exceptions, I think, would be 2 and a couple of the dungeons in 3. But really, you can kind of brute force your way through the entire experience.
She opens another distortion and shows them the townsfolk.
Like right here, like the whole time dungeon, you really don't have a time mechanic. You have like time being used as like a weapon, and it's like used in a cutscene here, but there's not really a time mechanic to the time dungeon. They really don't make it matter in a meaningful way.
As he explains when they were growing up, he and Curl were as close as
At least it's not the frog dungeon in Final Fantasy III. Hated that dungeon. At least it was creative. I forgot about that dungeon. One dungeon I always remember is in Final Fantasy IV, I think, where it's like you can't wear metal. I thought that was always kind of like simple but clever.
Taking the
Or
time
in
gate
Final
provides
Fantasy
no
9,
resistance,
the
and
whole
Jade
inverted
frequently
one,
attacks
where
Guard.
like the weaker
However, her
something is, the
betrayal of
stronger it
Zog
was. I always thought that was
she
actually
says she'll
really
buy
cool. I
time
thought
for
that
them
was
to
very
hold
clever.
off as they escape, and they take her offer, though Alan barges in to be with Curl again, right before the castle warps away. Setting things right and restoring time
I
to
kind of
Jade
don't know
and
why I
tablet
involved the
atop
Curl
tower,
story
something
so
goes
much.
wrong as the key seems stuck in
It
the
kind
loop.
of ultimately
Rena gets caught in the
results in
space-time
anything.
distortion loop,
Sometimes I'm looking at these
moving
videos
through
where
the
I'm like, I
gates
think I
towards the
should have edited
wasteland,
this out. It
and the
really didn't
group
add
tries to
anything.
follow when they
It was
find
just kind
her,
of
but she
fluff.
suddenly has amnesia of them all. Hurrying to craft a tonic to cure her ailment, she not only recovers her memory, but also has the vigor to use her clan's ability to transform into a great
And
bird
Nina's like,
and
oh, I
return to
remembered I
roam
can turn into a
elsewhere.
bird.
Now, with the keys in their possession and nothing
It's
to
like
do
you had the
between them
ability all
and
along, you
Zog,
just
who is in the
forgot.
imperial capital of Scan, the group makes the final preparations, including unlocking Ryu's most powerful dragon transformation.
And same thing here. It's like Ryu's
Ryu
dragon
already has Zog
transformations.
up the
Like he always
elevator,
had the power
locking
within him.
horns
He's
with
just
Zog.
either had to
Zog is
remember.
actually pleased to see the
You
power
know?
of a dragon at work, and agrees only the strongest should stand on top of the world. He assumes his true Dark Dragon form, challenging Ryu, and as both dragons clash, the lone Light Dragon warrior overwhelms and destroys the ambitious ruler of the Dark Dragons. Though he claims his
I think for
vision still
94
lives on,
standards,
he
like those
urges
battle
Ryu to
graphics
use
look
his
pretty
strength
good.
to build a new generation for dragons anyway, as he falls. With this, the floor collapses underfoot, and the party tumbles into a small dungeon, where Ryu is surprised and happy to see his sister Sarah once again. She congratulates Ryu and the others on their victory, saying the last step now is to destroy the Goddess Keys. She asks Ryu for the Goddess Keys now.
This is the part where we
Ryu
start
confirms
realizing
he
this
handed
is not
them
like a
over,
happy fun
though
time
Sarah
game.
then steps back, scoffing at how easy that was. A hooded man now appears, revealing
Where it's like,
himself
haha,
as
it's
General
actually
Jade,
taking control
as
of your
Sarah
sister's
quickly feeds
mind.
all the Goddess Keys over to him. He thanks Ryu for gathering the keys and handling Zog, explaining
Jade
that
should have
Sarah has
messed
been
with
under
Ryu
his
right then and started
unofficial
making out
spell.
with his sister just to
He
piss him
boasts he
off.
will now leave for Agua Tower to release Tyr, and teleports away from a trapped group. Fortunately, some friendly mole people that Ryu helped before burrow in to help Ryu escape underground, and make haste to Agua Tower as well. Unfortunately, by the time they get there, Jade has successfully released Tyr and now hurries to go meet her. The party moves to chase him again, but Sarah stands in their way. Even
And then by
while
the
she
time he
struggles
gets
to
there, the
break them
entire
free from
object
Jade.
of Ryu's
She
journey,
turns into a
saving
light
his
dragon
sister
that overwhelms
Sarah.
the group, and forced to defend themselves, they defeat her in this form.
Yeah.
Victorious over her, her mind control lifts, and she sincerely thanks Ryu.
He's
who
forced to
told the
kill the
Masters
object
too
and
much
purpose
she
of his
dies
mission. It's
before
kind of
him,
tragic.
reassuring him he did the right thing.
And,
They
and like
catch up to
she's not
Jade
even
and
mad.
walk
She's
their
like, you have
journey
to kill
through
me. And he's like, I
Sarah.
really don't want to.
He
It's like, you're
reveals
gonna
he
have
is
to.
all-powerful now thanks to Tyr, and strikes down the party in a single blast as the demonstration. Ryu himself wakes up 3 days later, delivered to care in his hometown thanks to the lingering will of Sarah, as Karn now bursts in, saying Jade has resurrected Obelisk, the buried home of Tyr that was underneath Scan this whole
Obelisk the
time. More
Tormentor.
determined than ever, they head to Obelisk before Jade can torment anyone else, and once inside,
That was a
they are
deliberate
soon
Yu-Gi-Oh
intercepted by
reference.
Yoda, bursting
I'll
through
always
the
laugh at
wall and
Yu-Gi-Oh
Ryu
references.
crushes
This
the
guy
wall.
looks like he's come straight out of
Mighty
Mega Man.
Stone Man still falls to the might of Ryu and team, and pressing on, the group finds Jade, still drunk on his newfound power. Ryu's vengeance for Sarah is swiftly dealt, as the monster's transformation granted to him by Tyr does little to save him from his own destruction.
You have to give him
Seated
credit.
to
That is a
Jade,
very
Jade said he
bizarre
knew he was going to lose anyway,
monster
ever since
design.
he released the goddess, labeling her the goddess of destruction as he falls. Meeting the goddess herself soon after, Tyr wonders what wish she can grant for Ryu.
And the
but
whole
he
concept
refuses
of
to
gods
listen,
throughout the entire Breath of Fire
choosing
series
instead
is
to
constantly
challenge
called
the
into
single
question.
Lion Maiden. Enraged at such
Because here you have
hostile
her
insolence, the masked
trying to
goddess
like
makes Tyr
sandbag and
unleashes
like
her
pretend that
full
she's like a
demonic
weak
fury
little
over the group.
girl, and then when
Guiding
Ryu
their
just like,
cause by
slaps her
revealing his
down, then she turns into
companions
this
across the
giant,
world, Nina,
clearly
Goku,
demonic
Karn,
form.
Gobi, Ox, Blue, and Mogu
Look at that
stand their
form. That
ground
is
and combine their
nuts.
strength to destroy the goddess that would see their world drown in chaos. As
That's
the
where like the
physical
art
world
team was
falls and melts
flexing.
away, Tyr proclaims the
Early
monster
on
not
already, the
truly
Capcom
alive,
sprite art
but
team was starting to
temporary,
flex at
promising to
times.
return. As Obelisk collapses as well, the group seems doomed, but fortunately the Bird Clan is there to swoop in and rescue the new saviors of the world. As the game ends, the spirit of Sarah appears before Ryu, proud of his deeds and impressed at the legend he and his companions have created. She disappears from him after
So
one
here's the
last
thing.
farewell, as now the
We
spirit of the
destroyed
Dragon Lord
we destroyed
will mark
that.
the journey from every
The Dragon
champion
Lord
to his
is in
weakest
no way
Zog,
better
who
off.
appears before the group.
His
He is
sister's
equally
dead.
oppressed, but reminds the group their job now is to help those who have lost the most during this war and begin their
And the
rebuilding.
answer to
Knowing there will
defeating
be
the
true
Dragon
celebration
Clan
here,
destruction of the
takes
Light
their time to
Dragons,
return to their
like
respective
basically
villages
the
work.
genocide of the
Mogu
Light
returns
Dragons
as a
was the
hero and champion
genocide
of
of
the
the
people,
Dark
gaining more
Dragons.
confidence in
That was the
himself.
solution
Ryu
that they
returns to
found.
sleep in her chambers as an immortal. Ox is greeted by his newborn child.
It's kind of
who
crazy
is
when
now
you think
their
about
father.
it.
Gobi sets up the largest shop in Prima.
Like, Asian people go back to their lives, which I
Bard
appreciate,
returns to his normal
but
life in
the
Elsa,
world is actually
as the
worse
full
off because like half the world population is basically
Mina's
dead.
returned safely to her father in Arcadia.
Um,
Ryu
we
leads
have a
the party to
goddess that's been
attack the destroyed
destroyed,
village.
or at least sealed
As the
away,
sun
because
sets
she
on
said
his
she'd come
legendary
back.
quest, Ryu
So he
pauses
didn't
to remember the
completely
sacrifice
win,
of his sister Sarah
and
as he looks
the rest of
forward
his
to the
village is
future
completely
still
dead,
ahead.
and he lost his
Breath of
purpose for
Fire has
going.
enjoyed the
Like,
success
Breath
of
of Fire
BoF
doesn't,
II
when you
with
stop and think
30,000
about it,
copies
doesn't end on a happy note. Thank you all the patrons, even then. Look at that, that was 2020. 2 years ago. My god, 2 years ago. Oh god. This is why I need to reduce the amount of open series I have. Tyr is basically an Eldritch Horror. Imagine what would happen if Dees became antagonist. That's what I'm saying. Okay, let's jump straight into Breath of Fire 2. This one was interesting because this is where I was,
Breath of Fire 2 would be a direct sequel to the first installment. Written and directed by Yoshinori Kawano, who
this
also
was the
played
one that
the
I
first
actually
game.
streamed.
The game would take place in
This
the
was when I
Development
started doing like
Universe and
pre-capitations. There's
continue
a few games I did
adventures of the
pre-capitation on.
series For story,
This
the
was
game
when I
features a
decided I
different
needed to
dragon
wrap
warrior
up the
named
Breath of
Ryu,
Fire
a different
series, was
winged
Breath of
girl
Fire
named
2.
Mina, returning character Blue, and 6 other playable demi-humans.
This version
all
I
from the
played
Human
on the
For
Switch at the
gameplay,
time.
combat is much the
Still
same as the
available.
original, though layout
Because
has
when Breath of
switched in
Fire
many
1 and 2
ways
came
to
out on the
replace
Switch,
combat.
that's when I decided,
Each
okay,
character
I
has
need
unique field
to
actions
go
as well
ahead
as
and do
combat
this.
action,
Like,
and
I have
activities
no
such as hunting
excuse.
and fishing return. The dragon transformation would be revamped, as well as fusion, in which any character other than Ryu can fuse with a variety of
And you
shamans
always
to
have that
ascend into
gambit
multiple
whenever you
powerful
have the
forms.
sequel of any
A player's
first
customized
game.
talent is
You have
created
two
and developed over
choices
the
that
course
can
of the game,
dramatically
and now
change the
with
direction of
equipment and
series.
item
Do you
synthesis,
stick
but a variety
to
of tenants may be recruited to unlock unique shops and services. In addition, 3
basically
different endings may be found, and
refinement
there are a few
or
key endings in the
innovation?
first game.
Do you
The story only gets
improve what
larger
was
from
done in the
resource
first
spent
game and
as the
just do
size
more
grows
of
in
it and
competition.
improve it?
As
Or
the
do
game
you do
begins,
something
it's been
different?
500 years since
You
the
know,
events of
because you have the
first game,
opportunity, you don't
as
have a
one day,
precedent
boy
yet.
named Ryu is asked by his father
So,
Painter to look for his sister Yua. His father is also
one thing
a
you'll
powerful
notice
mage
even
who helped
is
protect the
the
village alongside a
very
dragon that appeared to help several years ago.
very improved
While his
sprite
mother
art. Like
died
the
3
sprite art
years
from
ago,
1 to
the King
2,
Dragon
I know it's
has been
probably from
simply
NES to
protecting the outskirts of
SNES,
their village
but
in the
man,
game.
that's a big jump. Look
They
at the
find Yua
quality
and
and the
sleep in
detail of
Dragon,
these
where she
sprites.
claims she
Just
likes
even
to
on the
play, but she
overworld, like the
sees her
vibrant use of
mother
the
and her
colors,
peers
the
and
attention to
analyze the combat
detail.
live. Standing next
Sprites
to
are
the
okay
dragon's
for like the
well, Ryu
characters, but
closes
something
his
like the
eyes, and as
environment
he
and
stares
the
into a dark abyss, he
monsters,
is surprised to find
very
something
good.
staring back. Shaken, Ryu is shocked to return to
Like
town,
these environments
only
look
to find
very
his
good.
family gone, but no one in town
I think
remembers
it's
him either. He is
1995
taken in
is
by
when
the
this
local
game came
priest,
out.
Father Hulk of the St. Ava Church, though that night, another orphan and thief, a dogman named Bao, already knows
Bao,
more than a few
arguably
tricks
my
and solves
favorite
the
character in the
place.
entire
Running away
series.
together, the 2 boys head to the next town and take shelter from the storm, only to run into a large demon.
Based Bao.
The demon swats aside Bao and speaks to Ryu,
That's
calling him
smooth
a destined
animation.
child to open a gate,
That's a cool looking
envisioning
overworld
a
sprite
strange
too
tower
for
with
the
strange
thing.
brown
This
flagstones
font
around.
is so
10
hard
years
to read.
pass, and Ryu and Bao are now mercenaries called Rangers, working
And I know
on
people are like,
hunting
oh, it's
and homestead.
Bo. Like the
Ryu
first
hands them a
game, it's
job
like,
to
look,
find a pet.
I will admit
Bao,
the first
tasked with the
game, it
menial
was
task,
like
is
the dude
quickly
used a bow,
facility sees the
but
job comes from the
Bao, in
princess
my
of the
opinion, it
Indian
was much
kingdom,
more of a
Mina.
dog than a wolf. And
After
yes, he
making
used a
necessary
crossbow,
preparations, they
but
pray
I
to the
feel like
dragon
he's like
god, who appreciates the
Bao.
support since
And
the
that was the
gods
money
have saved
glitch that
Ava.
we did. So I will never
One
budge
day,
on
in a
Bao versus
derelict old
Bo.
house,
Like the
Ryu
first
meets
guy's
an old man
Bo,
named
this
Miro,
guy's
calling
Bao,
for
and
help
that's
to
it.
save him from giant man-eating roaches. He thanks them and invites
I
them to
always like
meet
the
this big alien
in-battle
named
sprites for
Apollo, and
Breath
Bao
of Fire
finds it is
2.
Mina's pet they were looking
Breath of Fire
for.
2 really
Returning the
did a
pet,
lot
Bao
of
was hoping for a more
ambitious
intimate reward from the
things.
princess, but she simply
Even to this
returns to
day,
the
the whole
kingdom of
concept
Mina,
of
though that night,
creating a
an
town
incredible
from
offer
scratch and
urges
having
Bao
it
to meet
grow over
her.
the course of the
Ryu
entire
catches
game,
wind of him hiding back and
customizing
breaks
it
into a house
to
to
how
retrieve
it
a
can
treasure that was
benefit you,
stolen from
even
him,
though towards the
Bao
very,
chooses to
very end
accept
it's
the
not
deal.
that important, but
Following,
just
Ryu bumps into a
unlocking the
bad
entire
girl
like
named
cooking
Angelica,
system
the man-eating
alone
scout, who accuses Bao of
was like
stealing the
really
treasure.
useful.
Finding
You
Bao,
had
it
that,
turns
you
out
had,
he was trying
I
to
would
get the
say an
treasure, but
improvement
Bao
on the
had well
fishing
stolen
minigame,
it
because the fishing
beforehand.
minigame in the very
Once
first
caught him at
game
the
was like
sea,
you
he accused
just
him being
throw
blamed.
the rod
He
and
figures
like
the
you
only way
you
to
catch it. It's
prove
like
his name is
Pokemon.
to
It's
find
like
the
a
real
one
culprit,
button
so they
tap,
leave
and
to
it
seek the
wasn't
girl,
terribly
using
exciting.
tactical espionage
And
action to
Breath of
suppress the
Fire
guard and visit
2
Miro,
tried to
also
have
a
like
tiny
the
boy here,
whole
in
skill
exchange for
based
Bao
thing with
helping
like
him defend
different
the place.
baits and
Thinking to investigate, the thief
timing climbing in and you have secret spots and secret merchants for it. And I didn't enjoy the fishing minigame, but I do respect that it was significantly, there was more effort put into it, even if it's effort that resulted in something I didn't care for.
Negotiates the option to replace him as an arena fighter. Thinking
Choosing the isometric view again, another interesting choice.
Learns his fight will be fixed in his favor. Concerned, he shares this with another gladiator and muscular member of the Shell clan, Rand, who works with
This is what I
to thwart
again
the
started
plans of
doubling
preemptive
down on
agents.
We need to have a
As the match
whole
begins, Ryu sees it's not the
multiracial
winged thief he was
force, and
chasing, but
every
instead a
person has
trusted
different
member
field
of the Boar clan
abilities.
named Cat.
A
Ryu
lot of
goes to
people
duck
loved
and knocks her
Cat.
out, but poison darts are
I
shot
get
down
it, she's
anyway, as
cute,
he
she's a
quickly
cat
pushes
girl.
Cat out of the way before
Uh,
shielding her with his body. Cat
and
thanks
I probably
Ryu,
would have used her
but
more, but I
joins
was
him
like,
in the ring,
whatever.
confronting the saboteur August. August claims the pain from the
She
blow
actually was
lines,
really
as well as the
not very
twisted
developed as
enjoys
a
of the
character.
audience, all add strength to his god,
She was just kind
turning
of
into a
there.
demon and attacking the trio. Banding together, Ryu, Ran, and Cat destroy him as he laughs while claiming they cannot stop his god's world from coming. Not sure what he means, Rand wishes to leave before the mess gets any larger, and Cat chooses to tag along to
I like
retrieve
also
the
that this is
Rand
500
takes the
years
fall to the
after the
secluded home of
first
Nino.
game to
Sarah
establish
says
that
to
this
his
is,
allies, since
in
Cat
the
is on the
same
simple
world.
side,
This is
advising she stick with
how the
Ryu and
world
keep her
has
the winged
evolved
thief
since
while
that
Rand
point,
helps
and the
with the
world since
revolution.
that point has
Rand
resulted
mentions
in
it's
a lot
hard
of
to raise a
races
woman in a
becoming
magic school in
significantly
hometown,
fewer in
and
population,
find a black
and a
root
lot of
member of the
races
Blue
losing their
tribe,
power.
Nina,
Like the
who
Bird
has
Clan,
the
they
right to
said,
the
oh,
bells, but
well,
is more than able to handle
the old
herself,
Nina
as she
married a
tries to lead them through a
non-bird
magical
person. That's why the
alchemy.
royal family can't
They
turn into
later
birds.
joke
But what
about
about
it, as
everybody
kidnap her
else?
sister
They
Mila
have
and
they have
escort her
wings, but they
hostage,
can't turn into a
demanding
bird.
games
It's like such
together,
an
and she complies.
exhaustive
Ryu and Cat follow her
process. Like
rival
there's a whole
plan to
ritual
rescue
you have to
Nina,
do for
while
it,
Nina buries Boss
and it's
trophy
so
by herself.
costly. It's
Hope
actually something
arrives
people
and
don't
emerges
want to
while
do.
revealing a demonic form, but is still no match for the group. Nina thanks
And
Ryu
then
for
doubling
tracking her
down on
down, but for
demons.
safety, they all
Demons
escort Nina
becoming
back to Windy
a
together.
prevalent
After they see
thing
Windy through its
in
dungeon
Breath of
entrance,
Fire.
seeing prisoners who knew too much about an ominous child with black wings being born into the royal family. Entering
Pretty
the
much in
castle
all
grounds, the group is
4
immediately surrounded
Breath of
by
Fire
guards, with
games,
Queen Hina waiting for
and then
them,
Dragon
and Nina
Quarter.
worries to the
Because I don't think Dragon
mother
Quarter,
saving
like
her older sister
they
to
never
save her.
say
However,
demons.
the queen publicly disavows
They
any
say
knowledge of the royal
Genix.
daughter,
So
understanding
you're
Nina
not really
has a
fighting
dog, but
demons
the group
in
is
Dragon
planning to be
Quarter.
escorted out.
And in
Nina
5
doesn't really want to talk
or in
about it,
4,
though the mood is lifted by a novel magic show in front of the castle. A member of the monkey clan named Sten uses Ryu in a
I don't know.
disappearing act to
I don't
impress
think
the
you're really
ladies,
fighting
but he
demons in
has
4
no style
either.
and has
I
no
guess we'll get
purpose
around
except
to that,
trying to
but the
lure
first
Ryu
3
away.
games, demons are a
He
prevalent thing.
apologizes and offers to
Again,
serve
3
Ryu
kind of
to the
does away with
residents,
a lot of
joining
it.
them as they check out a circus nearby, spotlighting a captured grassman. Continuing his journey, the
I thought
group
Spar
enters
was
the
so
Crossland
useless.
village of
The
Capitan,
character
where
fusion
the
system
several
in here
members of
was
the team have
cool
entered
to a
the well looking for a
degree.
lost child
Like it
figure,
made you
but
pick
not
and choose
returned.
which forms you
As they
wanted,
join the
but I
circus, they
didn't like
encounter a
that
policeman
because
away who says there are
I don't know,
dangerous
like
monsters
some of these
afoot,
side
but
characters
a
turning into their own
supernatural power as
characters
he
were really
single-handedly
cool, but they
holds
didn't
off the
create
town flooding, while
they didn't
Ryu
create
stays
forms
terrorized by
for
a strange
all of
beast
them.
named
Like not all of them
Parasites.
had tier 3
As
forms.
thanks, Ray offers to share a spell with them in Ryu's home, and returning back, Ryu sees Nero and the others have fixed the place up nicely and renamed the location.
So using the shamans of the fusion system was an
Venturing onward,
interesting
Ryu encounters a
turn,
pair of shamans who
and it's
volunteer
debatable
to be
whether or
guinea
not like
pigs
you
for the
like it or
fusion
not.
experiments.
But either
However,
way,
knowing
fusion
them
still
all, Ryu's
being
warlike
there
ability to turn
for
into
Ryu,
venomous
and
dragons.
the
Ryu's
problem is with Breath of
unforgivable
Fire 2 is that the
self
Ryu
set the
dragon
to
form was
destroy
actually
the
just
forest
kind
the
of
shamans
dumb.
live in, and while the
It
herd is
cost
small,
all of
there
your
are more impressed
MP,
that Ryu
and it
is
just did
remembered
like a
as the
static
dragon
amount of
king of
damage,
Alpha
and like the
Town.
most
With nowhere to go,
like
Ryu
DPS, like the
offers to
most
stay in
meta
township,
way
but
of doing
hides cover
damage
from
is
Poppy
just
Town to
having
limit and
characters
expand their growing
throw
As they wait, they find a
food
giant
and
frog
potions
named
into
Sean who
Ryu
acts
to
the
recover
helm,
his
looking for
magic so he could
presents
just
for
turn into a
Anya,
dragon, do
jilted
big
witch to the
damage
west.
numbers, and then rinse and
Talking to the
repeat. Just
witch
keep
Miko,
chucking them
they find she's a
potions.
bit self-absorbed and laments how only a frog loves her, but mentions
One
the
thing that
festival
is, I
Nino
think,
threw
really
to
cool
change
in
him
Breath
back
of
to
Fire 2
normal.
that it does is
Helping
that
Jean, it turns out
every
instead of the
single
giant
dungeon
frog,
tries
he's
a
actually
gimmick.
just a large
I
frog
think that's
man,
really
but
cool.
more importantly, the crown prince of Semafort. He wishes to thank them back at his castle, and along the way, the group drops by the Wildcat restaurant where only the strong are served, as they all
And this
check
right
out
here
Jean's
too, where
home
they
and
started
review
doing the
themselves.
concept of
Jean is a
you
very
can
friendly
learn
and
certain
laid-back
moves from
person,
certain
even as his brothers are
people.
served,
Like
and
other
he
than
tossed
Ryu
serves
just
first
learning like
almost
dragon
everyone
forms
in
in
the
1 and
castle,
2,
so
they
he
had it
ends
where
up
like
speaking
anybody could
others like
learn
Serpent and
certain
Tongue.
moves, and I think
To
that
help her
sort of
expose the
tutorial
imposter, the princess
system was
gives
actually
them a
kind of
tour,
cool.
enabling them to breathe underwater, and while breaking Jean out of jail, Ryu spots the winged thief he's been looking for also locked
I
up
think
there.
having move
Jean actually
tutorials
enjoys being
is
relieved of royal
something
duty
that
and
is
allowed to
prevalent
live a normal
in
life,
all of
but all the
them.
same, thinks the royal
In
duty
some
he
form,
to
like in
marry
some
her
form,
before
every
his
single game you
authenticity.
have a move tutor.
Unfortunately,
I
they
think we can
find the
definitively
victim
say
of the
that's
party
a
heaving in the back
Breath of
seat as
Fire
dropped in the pool.
realistic, so write that down, chat. We're writing down a list. We got Ryu and Nina, you have Dragon Transformation, and you have Move Tutors. All 5 games have that. They all have kind of rough endings too, bittersweet. Hey Sam, how's it going? I never understood why the blood of dragon people weakened the bird people. See, they never explicitly say the old Nina shacked up with Ryu. They just said it was a man that was not part of her tribe. It is, I think, heavily, suggested or at least wished for by the community, myself included, where we're just in our mind, our headcanon is that she married Ryu. But technically, they never say that. I like how that sword that was like causing the self-destruct system, which by the way, why do you have a self-destruct system in your castle? It's like revealed to be like
They
this
learn her name is
amazing
Patty, and
master
Jen takes
sword, and
Trout
it's
for the
not.
real
It's actually a piece
culprit
of
who
shit
got away,
sword.
but Patty accuses Trout of being the real
I
criminal and
appreciate the
hires
sense
Fleet
of
to be
humor in
police as
this.
well.
I
They
also
cannot
really
prove
felt
it
that
at this
Patty
time,
should
but
have
David
joined your
Kilgore once
party.
vowed to find evidence
Such an
on Trout in this game.
underutilized point
Al
here.
accepts a job, but this time Ryu joins him,
Like,
and
it ends up
together
being
the
your
friends
sister,
find
but they
Trout
do
in a
almost nothing
secret
with. Like,
dungeon where
towards the end, she's like,
suspicious
ah,
prisoners including
Ryu, my
Patty.
brother, and like, that's
Trout
it.
catches them down here and confronts him
Nothing
and reveals he
happens.
is also a demon in disguise, though the Ranger tag team destroys him and frees Patty. Reporting all this to Kilgore, Val adds it's awfully suspicious. They keep running into
Awfully
disguised demons in
suspicious.
positions of power, and Ryu's reminded of the evil eye that called him the destined child.
The demon designs
Elsewhere, lying
across the
around the town
series
of
in
Gate
this
begins to
one
decay
especially was really
rapidly,
good.
and
Like,
though other Rangers
again,
and
Breath of
prisoners
Fire
lose
2
sight of
doing
it,
really
they are
some
also
really
intimidated
ambitious
by the
stuff
idea of fighting
for
demons.
its time.
Val thinks of the demon he and Ryu encountered outside of Gate when they were kids, and hearing the description, knows it to be the same one. They are now asked to investigate Gate and the demon there, and mention the Grassman is able to talk to trees and can gain their insight from the great tree there.
This entire
Beginning a new
sequence
journey, they
was
find
a
themselves
waste
swallowed
of
by a giant
time
whale and free it from a cursed nightmare it's under. In return, the
because,
talking whale offers to
oh,
sail them
well,
across
you
the
want to
ocean,
talk to the
leaving Ryu
tree
to
to
carve
figure out
out
what's
the
happening in
Grassman
Gate.
to
Well,
make
talk
room
to the
for
tree and you
Trout
go
to
to
tame.
and find the person
Along
you
the
can
way,
talk to trees,
encounter
which is
heroes from
Spar.
centuries past,
And then to
leaving
go
behind
get,
isolation
Spar, you
and
need to go
leaving
travel
behind the
through the woods
archer,
to meet this
Karn the
old tree,
flute,
but this
and
old tree
even the
doesn't want
immortal
to talk
mage,
because he has
Ryu, who is up for her
nightmares.
back
So
and
you need to go
inspired to
to this
join
other
the
village
adventure.
of people
They
that can
find
only
the
speak through
carnival just in time to
music,
prevent the
and
Grassman
they
from
can't
taking
tell you
Ryu,
exactly how
but
to
refusing to
contact that
negotiate
person's
on
dream.
their
So you need to go
terms, it
over
turns out
and
he is
find a
the owner of
musical
the whole
instrument, which
tribe,
requires
which
you to go
intrigues
all the way
Ryu,
over
and the group
to
quickly
the
defeats it.
monkey fort, deal
Now
with the
free,
monkey
one
problems,
person
just to get
introduces
a flute,
himself
just
as
to come back
Spar
to the
and takes them
town,
through the
just to get a
Aggregate.
pillow,
The
just to
doors
go
to the
back
gate
to
are
a
shut,
tree,
but
just to
recommends
go
the
inside his
talking Great
memories
Wise
and
Tree
learn that he
taking them.
forgot everything he wanted to
Leaving
tell
them
you.
there, the Great Wise Tree
I
has
was
actually
like, this
forgotten
was
many
such a
important details for
stupid
some
side
reason.
quest.
It knows something is
This
wrong,
right
so it
here
has a therapy pillow for
is such
Grandma
a
to help
negative
with
point of the
things.
game. It's a series of
Unfortunately, residents
quests
of the city
that
have
are
an
just
understanding about the age of
filler,
specific
and
instruments,
they
such as the flute and
resolve
high flute.
nothing.
Seeing
As
Ryu
much as I
provide them into the
praise
fortress high atop the
um
cliffsides,
the
Sten
side quest
stretches
itself,
his
like this
arms to
part,
reach
the
out for
semaphore
Ryu,
part, I
but the
actually
group
really
sees him as
liked. I
inhabited by
liked
other
this
monkey
part. I
people.
liked the
Sten
storytelling, the
was once the
characters,
hero of the bunch, but
especially the
still
character
well known
development
as a
for
hero.
Sten, because between
Sten claims he was a coward in the face of a terrible
Sten
battle,
and
separated from the
Jean,
group for
they had
now.
the best character
Ryu
arcs this
overhears the new
entire
leader
game.
of
It's
the
not
high
even
fort,
close.
Shuke, attempting to rush
Nobody
the monkeys
else
into war with the ambitions
had
of
as
World's
much writing
domination,
or
but she
character
catches
arc
all of them
development
and
in their
tries to
individual
silence
stuff.
them.
Not even Nina with
At
like
the
her
same
whole
time, Sten
my
is met by his
sister
old friend
sacrificed
Trudeau,
herself.
who is upset they all
No.
thought Sten was dead
Look at
when
this
they catch
cool
him
ass
running away and
intro.
hiding.
How
More
epic is that?
importantly, Sten hurt their princess, who loves Sten, whom they now
And
need to rescue
yeah,
from Shuke.
even though this side quest
Knowing that
is
monkeys live
really
on
good,
Gate, but
it's
monkeys
part of a
together are
side quest
strong,
that's
Sten and
really
Trudeau
bad.
team up to infiltrate Shuke's forces, as Sten reveals to the princess he's finally back to kick
I was
Shuke's
more
tail.
invested in this
Though he's
storyline than the
delayed by another
actual
tough duel,
storyline of the
returns to
game.
Shuke, hooking the princess up to a machine that
And then like the
converts
whole
the
thing where
soul
it's like
into
we have
power and
technology
turns
that
it
can
into
like
energy.
convert life force
Shuke
into
reveals
energy.
she's a demon, but is
Kind of
not
interesting
happy
when you
to
think
see her.
about it.
She also reveals she was trying to turn the fortress into a flying one. However, the machinery goes haywire and Sten leads the group to safety as parts of the castle collapse.
Look at these
Afterwards,
cutscenes.
the princess thanks them with a famous flute. Taking their leave, Sten avoids saying goodbye to the princess as he explains to the group that as an ex-soldier who has lost most of his friends to war,
I'm
he
an
is not ready to deal
ex-soldier.
with things
I will
like
never
war.
forget you, Zach.
Returning with the flute, they find the holder of
Except the
therapy
time when I
pillow
forget
is
you
the queen,
immediately.
who is under a transformation effect that has so far made her
And
morbidly
this
obese.
dungeon itself was also
Being
kind of
shrunk
cool.
down
You
enough
go
to enter her
inside the
body,
body of
the group
something and
finds
you're
an evil
literally
fatty
killing
demon
things in her
Ozzy below,
bloodstream.
saving the queen and
Like that's
ending
actually
her
kind of cool.
purification.
Again,
Gaining the
the
therapy pillow as
ideas in
thanks, the
each of
group
these are
finally
really
returns to
good.
the great tree, and with the item they are able to enter
And this
its
whole thing where
remains
like,
secretly
it was like a
regardless.
puzzle. This is the only time I
Navigating
ever used
past the
Stan.
invisible maze,
And
they
never
find
used
yet
Stan the
another
entire
demon behind
time
the
of the
moon
game.
maze,
I
who
didn't
claims
like
the
it.
tree
His
knows something
ability didn't
and
really
bringing it
work
to life.
either. His like,
In fact,
I don't remember
demon
what it's called, but like a
recognized Ryu
geomancy
personally,
ability. It
as
never
it was
worked.
also the same demon
It
who
didn't
wiped
do
all of his
anything. It was
memories
such
of him
garbage.
in Gate when he was a child. Settling the score,
And then
the
what a
group destroys the demon
coincidence.
before every memory is gone, and the great tree shares what it
Which
can.
I appreciate them writing
The tree
away
confirms the
why
demon is sucking life
Ryu
force from the
was
fort,
forgotten
and
in
now
his own
people
village. It was
decide
this
that to
demon,
help
but
them
what a
find the
small
demon,
world we
leading
happen to
them
fight
Rand's
that exact
hometown of
demon.
Farmtown. In fact, they watch Rand's mother Daisy throw out a solicitation to build a St. Ava church on their land.
This could have been
despite their
interesting, where
son
they were
being
fighting the
on
St.
his
Ava
own
Church.
elsewhere.
I don't believe they
She
developed
puts
it
the group to
enough.
work in the field, but later they find her gone, and a soldier of St. Ava claims she has converted her faith and left suddenly for the Grand Church.
Because between
Rand
the
knows this
Ava
is a
Church
trick, but they
and
save the priest Ray
what's
again,
his
confirming
face,
this
the
to be
Dark
true
Dragon
and breaking
revealed
up the
guy,
invites.
Ray, I think
Rand
Ray.
insists they investigate their headquarters, but they would need a means
They
to
could have
fly
gone
over there.
somewhere with that, but
Discovering strange
I don't
machinery
know. I
on
feel like the
town's
beginning of this
island, they
arc
scout an
was not very
engineering
interesting. The ending arc was interesting, like where they showed like whole congregation and then like the mass murder and like showing the cult. That was actually kind of cool. But yeah, the beginning of this wasn't interesting. This part wasn't interesting. The Nina in this one is actually probably, I would say, I like her attitude as Nina. She's a very self confident, I don't need no man kind of lady, like very powered, but at the same time she feels the most detached from the rest of the story. Like her only involvement was because of her sister, Mina, and then here too, even though she's cursed, with a curse that doesn't even matter. Here's the king waylaid again, and then the resolution. This was cool, by the way. The fact that she had to solo this dungeon and solve puzzles, that was actually cool. I liked it. I also like that armor. That armor looks legit. And I have to still give a point where I love it. I love it when you meet the pro tags of previous games. I don't know why that always brings a smile on my face. That's always cool. And she's like, wow, all my descendants are shit. Amazing. Oh well, I got mine. Sucks to be you. Sucks to suck.
Intending to allow Nina to live and defeat the demons, and she will serve as the great bird instead. With Mina's help,
and then Mina sacrificing herself, like, kind of sad when you think about it. Mina should have joined the party and sacrificed herself and not Nina. But we have to have a Nina in the party. I did not like this being Kat's arc. Because the original part where we save Kat, she's like, oh, you saved my life now belongs to you. Oh, okay, sure. And then with this part where Taiga looks at her and she's like, I immediately want to bone you. And Taiga's such a shallow idiot here. I do not like Taiga. That dungeon was cool where you had the trapped panels. That was actually legit cool. Or like it could be a random bonus or a random detriment. Oh, that was actually really clever. That was another good dungeon. This game had a lot of good dungeons. And then he like declares that he wants to marry her, and then he just puts pressure on her for no reason. That was so dumb. This design was cool. One of my favorite designs for demons in the entire game. That was good. I like the presentation of this. This is a good presentation for a villain. You have the congregation, they're explaining everything, it's a public setting, it's automatically unnerving. You're in enemy territory behind enemy lines, and then he just straight up executes people, just effortlessly, and everybody's like cheering. Yeah, it's a very cool scene that if they ever like made this into like an animated feature, I think would be a very powerful scene. I like this scene. I also, again, don't like Taiga for this reason, because Taiga rushes in like a complete idiot. He only likes Clarice because Clarice says she loved him first, and he's like, oh, okay, I guess I love you back. And then they die together. Like, I feel bad for Clarice more than all. That's brutal. Calls over Ray to teach the group the strength of their god, and though Ray feels both he and Ryu have a unique understanding between them, he reluctantly. By the way, the dragon meter, the mood meter towards the side, useless mechanic. Like, interesting idea, useless mechanic. The new form here was cool. I didn't like how that's the only animation you had. And here again we have where the dark dragons are here, but it doesn't really matter that they're dark dragons. Like, the difference between a dark dragon and a light dragon doesn't matter. And then he dies, and he can just pass on the power to somebody else, I guess. This is the most preventable death. Rand sucks so much, his mother has to come in, push him out of the way, and gets crushed for him. First of all, how gruesome and terrible that his mother dies right there because he sucked, and he has to carry that burden that he sucks. Terrible. I actually feel bad, but it's like, ugh. He doesn't have a good arc, and his mom dies in a terrible way. Like I said, Breath of Fire games have body counts, man. People are dying left, right, and center. There's so many bodies in Breath of Fire games. People are just constantly dying. You just gotta deal with it. Cope. I like Ryu? My son Ryu? It's like there's only one Ryu in the entire world, I guess. Childhood memories, including his sister Yua, and Ryu sees it truly is his father. Gaynor explains that fateful day when they retrieved Yua from her nap, he ran into the demon who erased everyone's memory of him and kidnapped him as part of their plan. He learned firsthand the god he believed in was a demon trying to destroy the world, and furthermore, simply believing in I don't think we see this technology come back anywhere. The one where it's like we use life force and convert it into power. I don't think that ever comes back.
At this
Does
time, we
it?
get an update from Eiichi on the
We get a
mysterious
lot of
machine
mad
that
science. You
Eiichi
notice that that is something that I think is in
is powered by a strange
each of the
device.
Breath of Fire games, is you have like this mad science. It's very ethically gray science.
Church, and that it converts life energy from
At least in this one you do. Definitely in 4. Definitely in 5.
together, but is more than willing to give his
Actually, in 3 as well. Like, you have it in 3. Do we have it in 1?
enabling the entire town to rip itself from the ground.
We really don't have that much science in 1.
The group finds Father
Do
Hope
we?
preparing to kill the dragon under the
We don't really have mad
assumption
science in 1.
but as the bomb goes off, it only succeeds in slightly shifting.
Well, actually, no, we kind of do. We kind of do. Remember the village with the guy who was experimenting with the essence and the flowers and using zombies. So yeah, we have a mad science in each of the games. That's another thing that's common in Breath of Fire. All 5 Breath of Fire games have this mad science kind of character with like human experimentation. Look at that back shot of Yua. They knew what they were doing.
Father Hulk laughs, revealing he was Habaruku in disguise, and he quickly seizes Patty.
Habaruku.
The only way to break the
That does sound kind of villainous, doesn't it?
is by sacrificing the life of a dragon clansman. Since killing the large dragon did not work, that leaves Ryu or Patty, and Patty cries out to Ryu as her big brother, revealing she is his long-lost sister, Yua. Quickly, the large dragon moves to shield her, and Ryu battles the demon, defeating the head of Saint.
And he ends up just being like an octopus man. It's like, oh, okay. I think he had like ironically the weakest demon form. He's like, blue, 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 I'm an octopus man. Okay, sure.
Opening the gate, trusting Ryu to win. In the darkness beyond, the group finds a tall tower descending deep down.
And then this whole thing where the dragons, again, lose the ability to transform, which is a thing. The first game, I forgot that that was a thing. In the first game, they established that you could just not have the ability to transform. That's something that has to be jump-started, apparently. And they just moved underground to protect them from the demons, but why? And then this right here shows that the dragons were never going to win against Miria's final stand, which is, yo, I have the ability. It's like, as long as people fear and have darkness in their heart, I'm going to come back, or at least this remnant of mine. I never liked this part too, where it's like, Ryu, you're the chosen one. Why? Why am I the chosen one? Because you are. I was like, wow, amazing. Cool prophecy. Prophecies are kind of another thing that keep coming up. Because the first one as well, like, it was prophesied that the Dragon Warrior and 7 allies will get specifically 6 keys and assemble the Triforce and win the Battle Royale. It's like, oh my god, what are these? And then this one, we just have a prophecy. Okay. We just blindly follow the prophecy. Valerie here is also kind of dumb. She's like, oh, I came up, fell in love with this man, had a kid, and completely forgot my mission to prevent demonic takeover of the entire world. What? You had one job, Valerie. Literally one job, and you forgot it. Amazing. And her thing is like, oh no, the door's really big. I guess I'll turn into a dragon and fall asleep on it. That was your plan? You're married to the strongest mage in the entire world, and that was your best plan. You couldn't come up with anything else. You couldn't even push a big rock in front of it. Amazing. Valorie's so dumb. This was a cool little riddle too, where like you had to choose something to sacrifice, and the answer is yourself. And you're not like, the answer is you don't sacrifice anybody, not even yourself. Like, I think that was kind of a nice little play right there. This was also cool, where you could choose to battle him solo or not. And thanks to the wonderful reset ability, I was able to 1v1 him and win. That was cool. It felt good. Beyond is an elderly man by the name of Evan who declares his intent. The appearance of Evan was an interesting choice. Like, yes, he turns into a demon anyway, but like him being like this amazing entity of power and darkness. Look at this. Party members kill right in front of you, nothing you can do. The screaming of Ryu's heart, just visceral words here. This was cool, this scene was cool. Blam, look at that blood. This ain't for kids, this isn't Final Fantasy. Reaching deep within, Ryu clings to the bonds of his friends to summon. He feels the cosmos, restoring his allies back from their shattered remains. And that's another thing right here. Dragons restoring somebody to life from death.
Sten, Jean, Spar, and
And
Blue
look at that
worked
demon
together to
design.
create
That's
the
a
malicious
good
legacy
demon design.
stalking the
Like
planet.
the final boss demon
As
design
Death
here
Ever
was also
disappears,
good.
it says it will dream of destruction until its return, and Nina points out the power of the dragon was not for destroying things, but to unite friends who believe in each
No, the
other.
power of the dragon is for destroying things.
As the game ends, Ryu thinks about
Sorry,
the
Nina.
words and realizes the threat is not totally removed, only
And
slightly.
then here's how it ends.
The seal of
It
Gaia
ends
has to
with
be replaced.
the
He thinks
even
he
though you
transformed into a
defeated
giant
Evan,
dragon like his mother
he's just gonna
becomes
come
the
back
dragon
again.
himself,
It didn't
once
solve
left
anything.
pet, Gainer now
And then here's
comes
how
to
it
the
resolves.
town,
Your
seeing
father,
how
your only living
cognitive it
family,
was.
has to sacrifice
Dropping
himself,
friendship directly onto the cave, he adds this will
even though he
work
doesn't
until the
completely
next destined
follow it.
child is born,
And their
and
only
Ryu
guess
offers
is, well, I
himself
guess we'll just
that
hope
day.
until the next destined child is born.
As the fights
Wow,
go on
amazing
in
game
separate
plan.
ways, they spread
What
their
was our
positive
entire
beliefs
struggle
in an
for?
effort to never see this terror
And so the
again.
best thing they can come up
Breath of
with this
Fire 2
entire
was a great
team is
success of
hope
selling
for
over
the future.
360,000
That's
copies
it.
worldwide. Thank you for watching this recap. I hope it
60,000
helped.
copies is
If you
actually
liked
really
this,
good for
check out
back
the
then.
recap for the rest of the Breath of Fire
See, it
series,
seems nothing like
especially since
today.
most of
Like,
them
people
connect to
expect
each other in
multi-millions
some
all the
way.
time. You didn't have that many people playing
Subscribe
video
to
games
this,
back
share
then.
with someone who could use it, and shout out to
60,000 was a
for
big
channel
deal.
members. If you would like to support the show yourself, please follow the links in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next battlefield.
I just heard that and thought of Red 13's depiction in... I know what you're talking about. Mission Abridged, the Team 4-star Final Fantasy Mission Abridged. I didn't watch that because I watched like the very beginning of it. I thought it sucked, and so I hard bailed out. No offense to the whole Abridged series, but I liked the Dragon Ball one. I didn't like any of their other Abridged series. In my opinion, like all that humor was cringe and the writing was awful. I didn't find any of their jokes funny. But hey, that's humor. To each their own. Alright, so let's go with Breath of Fire 3 now. We're just cruising.
The franchise's first step into 3D, written and directed by Makoto Ikehara.
We're in the PS1 now, and look at, again, the improvement on the sprite art. Even using the 3D models, like these individual sprite arts look very good. Like the sprite artists on Capcom during this era were just flexing. They did such a good job.
For gameplay, combat is switched back to input-based, turn-based combat instead of traditional menus, and many features from previous games have been reworked or expanded, such as formations, learning new skills from NPCs, and town building. Dragon transformation has been over.
It was nice that they did a little nod to Mogu in the beginning here, even though that's just as much as you're gonna get.
And the masters around the world may influence stack growth.
And this whole thing where like the wall of the very first game was here, which directly ties this as like a very distant sequel to the very first game.
Interaction ability. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation.
1997 is when this is.
Die, their bodies turn into an ore known as Chrism, and dragons, who once tried to destroy the world in a terrible war, have become one such energy source in death after their mysterious extinction.
So, dragons once tried to destroy the world, which is true, and now all the dragons are dead. Look how big they could get, though. I like how this game begins. It begins with you murdering innocent people. Just, again, going on a murdering spree. Bodies on the floor. Breath of Fire just does not care. It just kills so many people.
Breaking free from his cage, Ryu reverts to a humanoid form and is saved by a man of the Warren Cat tribe named Ray. Figuring him to be another orphan, Ray takes Ryu home where he also cares for another orphan boy named Tipo. As he rests, Ryu sees a strange vision of an angry man and then a caring goddess, and waking up, finds that Ray and Tipo are...
I like the amount of sprites they did for each of the characters here. They went crazy with the amount of animations here, and I really like it. The music of 3, I think, is arguably among my favorite soundtracks. 5 actually has a really good soundtrack. 5 soundtrack is done by the same person who does the Ivalice games for Final Fantasy, so they did Final Fantasy 12, Revenant Wings, Tactics, and what was it, Vagrant Story, as well as dozens and dozens of other games. Like, they do a lot of good music, but it is very much very reminiscent of Ivalice. The amount of mini games in this was also good. I like how this game also leads off with, again, moral quandary of like, are we doing the right thing? This morally gray stuff. I like how it immediately starts on that. It sets the tone, which is, as we've seen already, very Breath of Fire, having very morally gray situations. An examination of the human condition. The battle theme of 3 is my favorite right here. For some reason, I could just keep listening to this. Look how smooth those battle sprites are. Just smooth as butter.
However, the townsfolk are
But
not
yeah,
happy
man, I'm
as
still
they
just
quickly give them
bobbing my. I
a
love the battle theme for
and as the
this.
group wonders why, Bunyan mentions Loki didn't know McNeil was working for a large crime organization that doesn't like being stolen from. As the realization of the consequences of their actions hits them, they hurry home only to find their house on fire, and two brothers named
Look at those
Caesar and
really
Galileo
ugly,
lead the
very
boys
early
in a
3D
swiftly beginning
graphics.
battle
3D
as
just
Celestia
never looked
optimistic
good in the
while
PS1
Tipo.
era.
As Ryu wakes up,
Sprites look
he
good,
appears in a
but
cave abundant, with
3D,
Ray and Tipo knowing where
ugh,
he's found.
3D in
Determined to find him,
PS1
he begins
era
a
just
search for
did
him in
not
the
look
city of
good.
Windia.
You are
However,
hard
along
pressed
the
to
way,
find a
he runs
good
into the
looking
brothers
3D
again,
sprites
who are
back then.
surprised to see Ryu somehow still alive, and run him through with a sword one more time to make sure
Look at
he's
this, they
dead.
just straight up kill Kid.
Strangely,
They
Ryu's
have
body
no
splits
problems.
out
Breath of
and
Fire
Ryu
does not
changes into a
care.
dragon,
It will
still alive,
absolutely
while the
kill a
soldiers and
kid in
brothers
broad
see a
daylight.
profit opportunity here. Taking Ryu to Castle Windia, they try to pass off their
Child
rescue to Ryu,
Nina
but by the time they do,
is right
Ryu turns
here,
back to being human.
debatably my
When she's
favorite
looking at the
Nina.
con, the king
It's
tells
a
her
shame that when
listen,
she grows up,
all
she
you do
loses
is
all
leave everything
interesting
behind,
aspects,
war and
her
t-shirts.
inquisitiveness, her energy,
The brothers drop
her
her and Ryu proceeds to
personality.
tear
All that
apart
for some
Nina
reason
and Kid
dies when she
before
becomes
killing
an
herself.
adult. But when she's a
She haunts a
Kid
town
Nina
called
is
Shelburne,
arguably my
where she breaks down
favorite
cellars
Nina.
and chases the
I
bandits
just
away,
love
leaving her to
her
her fate
sass.
as
I
fighting
love
for
her
forever, the kids
her
are all caught again by the
during
brothers.
conversations she's just kind of all
Taking her to the
fidgety.
city arena
I like
together, the
her
brothers aim to
smugness,
enter
her
a
energy,
protocol
her
contest,
dialogue.
and during their absence, the kids
Kid
escape
Nina
once
is
more.
so funny.
Once again, the brothers pursue the kids, and as they run to the mountains, Nina's quick thinking and potent magic help them narrowly
Like she's
separate.
so
However, as they tumble down a sheer
proactive
slope,
too.
Ryu unconsciously turns back into a dragon to shield her fall. She's grateful and not at all afraid of Ryu's
For
future
now,
fate.
until I
Seeing as they are now totally
watch the
alive,
rest of
the
this,
kids
I'm gonna
finally
go ahead
have
and say
friends they long
Child
forgotten
Nina
about.
and 3 is my favorite Nina.
Within, they find a scientist
I
researching a
also liked
prison
Momo.
guard and member of the Grassrunner clan named Momo, who after hearing them out, offers to take them to Windia herself. She is shocked to learn Nina is also Windia's princess, and also notices shady people
Even though,
kidnapping
again,
kids,
you
leaving
could
her
say
to
mad
choose
science,
to kill
but
or
mad
not.
science runs
Her
amok in
father
this
is a
one.
genius engineer who left
I mean,
everything
she is a
set up
scientist
perfectly
here,
to
and then her
take
dad
over
is
for
a
research purposes in his office, including a working model
potent
they use to launch out of the tower.
scientist himself.
Making their way to Windia, they learn the gang is blockading the main road and checking everything.
And here, right
as
here,
they
with the
pass,
whole
Nina runs
factory
into
thing,
Pallet, the former assistant
Pallet
of
himself,
Ryu,
being another mad
now director of
scientist,
the
just with
Friendship
his immortality
organization.
machine that's
Her
done
parents
later,
are the main
and
townsfolk
creating
she's involved
mutants. That's
also,
crazy.
as Momo explains they use Chrism to grow crops there at an accelerated rate. However, when she arrives,
Someone
the
told me
princess
that during the
actually learns
credits
to
of this
exterminate
game
giant
is a
mutants
scene where
to create so much
Yggdrasil,
Chrism energy, as well as
aka
another mutant race.
Peko,
Falling
is
into its
like
snare, they
plants
find a
himself in the
blockade with
desert to
robots that
try
can
to
eventually talk, and
save
one
the
of them
world in a
sends
way,
Pallet and
to try to
attacks him
stem off the
selflessly.
desertification.
After
And I
losing,
actually
he
completely
apologizes
missed
but
that.
begs them
It's
not
very
to
rare
use
that
her
I
to
miss
save
details
his
that
brothers,
important to
stating
the
that it should
story.
never have been created and created.
Here's another morally gray
She
situation.
is
You have
directed
something
to
as
look at
self-aware
everyone's
that it
second
should
thoughts,
not be,
wishing they could
and it
study it
gives you
instead,
permission to
leaving
kill
behind a
itself as
slippery
long as you
slope,
promise
as
not to
more
do any
knowledge
more
isn't
freakish
lost, but
experiments
rather
with
can
life
lead to
again.
the creation of
How
worse monsters.
interesting. This is all these are very
After
interesting
leaving
like
Windia, they
facets
meet
right
the
here.
magma, and just as Ryu moves to kill it, Momo insists they save
And
the
then we
spot,
have this
leaving
one
his
where like
troops to
he's
do there as they
Yggdrasil,
fight
but
the
he
mountain
comes out of that
gods.
thing. So was it always
Taking Ryu
Yggdrasil?
remembers
Was
being a
Yggdrasil the
Peko, they
source of
set them
life
to
on
a
all of
plan
these?
that as things
Because
progress
remember,
with
this
Gar,
Yggdrasil
Gar also
sap
learns
was
of the
what's used to
mysterious
create the
Yggdrasil.
mutants.
However,
So are
this is a
each of
plan
them
that Gar
aspects of
wishes to
Yggdrasil?
silence Momo about the mutant originating from his plant and is actually working with the Beast Brothers.
And then him doing
As
selfish
part of
stuff.
his capture, they are
The
brought
the
back to
writing
Windia,
in
but Nina
3 is
proposes
very
that
good.
they enter the contest of champions
I
between
know why a
Shiro
lot of people
and
like
Ryu,
3 the
and
most.
Ryu
They
will
like it
not
because of the
fight,
dragon
as well as ask
system.
for whatever
They
they
like
want.
because of the Value
Seeing their
brothers
profit
here,
opportunity
which
with this
admittedly they are
blockade,
pretty good,
the
like
brothers agree,
thugs.
and though the group makes it to the
Um,
finals, the brothers have no intention of honoring their deal.
music, of
For the
course.
final fight,
Music's
Ryu's
very
group
good.
against a powerful member of the mysterious Guardian race named Gar, and after Gar easily wins,
Gar's
he
sprite
requests
also looks
everyone,
really good.
asking for Ryu and his friends. With no choice but to comply, the group is brought under Gar's care and protection.
The battle
He
system for
forces Gar
3,
to
though,
take
I would
Summon's
say
Temple.
is not
The
that much
brothers
more
agree to do
evolved
it
than
seamlessly. On
2,
their way out, Nina asks Gar
technically.
why he helped them, and he replies it's simply because Ryu is actually a member of the ancient dragon
And
race.
even though the mentor system really
Besides,
determines like
Ryu
your
wants to
options
know
in
more
battle,
about
but
them,
really more of
and finds
your
Gar who is called
your
Ryu of
strength
Power.
with your stats.
First things first,
I think the
as
battle
soon as they
system is
get to
not my
Windia,
favorite.
Galileo and Sunder scheme to gather as many of their men as they can to surround, exhaust,
It's
and
it's just
destroy
very
the
plain.
Gaunt's
It's
mark.
very basic. It's very
When
generic.
Gar arrives, not
It's the
only
sort of
does he
turn-based
win,
system
but
you see
chooses to lead the
anywhere.
old boss and join Ryu users.
There's nothing really memorable
Ryu
about Breath of
forges the
Fire
Beast Brothers
3's battle
fuse together
system.
into an Ultra form, and even their utmost fails
I like the
before
Ultraman reference, that was always cool.
After the battle, Nina informs Gar Ryu is also searching for his lost friends, Tipo and Rei, but Gar isn't confident they're alive as Ryu only survived the gang's attack because of his racist toughness. Escorting Nina back home safely, the princess recounts her adventure to the king, though Gar conceals the key detail that Ryu is a dragon. After the celebration feast, Nina
She actually kicks her legs. I kind of like that. And then she like sprawls out like a kid does when they're taking a nap. It's kind of funny.
chasing
I
her
wish
seems
they
to
and I
find
wish they did more with
slips and
Honey
falls
for
on
being
her,
like a relic of
where the
like the
dragon
past and
cannot
having
fall
this.
without any
And this whole
assist.
scene right
Fight
here where
with
like
fly, but fall with style.
uses its
All of his
power
targets
to
seem weak,
save her life.
but
It's like, well, what
rage
was that?
accidentally
Did it do
erased
anything?
the
For a second when I
campfire
first
and
saw it,
causes
I
Honey to
thought they were
stumble against
empowering
it.
Nina to
At the same time, Gar
like
warns
have the
Ryu that
ability
there's a
to
chance he
fly
might
because
die
none of
before
her race
leveling
can
without the
fly.
brood,
Like
though
their
Hero,
wings are
Tina's
completely
sister, and
cosmetic at
Gar
this
make
point.
sure he
They
doesn't.
don't do
Gar
anything.
doesn't mind this, observing Ryu tends to draw out more power to protect Nina, and while she's glad to hear it, she also swears to get stronger so he won't have to. Along their journey eastward,
This
the timid man
I
finds
thought
a
was just
lighthouse
again filler
filled with
city
energy with a powerful
because
monster
you got to go
lurking
get a boat,
inside.
but you can't go get a goat because
Returning to the
the
lighthouse prompts a panic,
daughter
and Gar
of
is set
the
off and demands a
boating
visit from
guild
their
is
village in the
being
Aggregate. Once they
betrothed to this
return,
dude
Gar
who's a
plots to
jerk, and
kill
you have to
all
help
the
the other guy
locals
who
to get
actually loves her and
revenge
she
for
loves
Gar's
him, and
death.
so you have to go
As Ryu
and then
continues
help
taking
him in a
revenge,
battle to
Ryu's
make
anger
him look good,
grows
to
when he
get
learns that the village is
her
being
to ditch
tracked
the
by
other guy,
Gar.
to then get a
Learning their
permission to then go
superpower
get a
weapons, they
go
are able
to
to
the
prevent the
lighthouse,
bandit who
and then to
uses
the
the sword
lighthouse you
when he
have
attacks them, leading
to
to a
beat this
raise to
giant
death.
dungeon with this
But
giant eye, which
investigate
saves a
further and
fairy,
find
which
a
then the
loophole
fairy
where
you
he
have to
can
go
get
to
over
their
to the
village and
palace
rescue
and
them from this
become kind of
dolphin, all to come back and get to a boat. It's like,
Ryu very
oh
much
my god.
questions Gar's next move,
You have
not
to do the
because he
thing to
expects the
go to the
zombie to
thing to
turn
do
into
the
real
thing to
people,
do the
only
original
because
thing
he
you
loves
wanted to do.
Sarah.
Like, I
Soon
don't
enough, Ryu
like
arrives at the
filler
hotel,
quests like
where
that that are
Garcia
just
discovers a woman
MacGuffins.
with blue hair sleeping within a barrier of light. Insisting they go on
This was the
foot,
90s.
Gar
We were
leads
wild.
Ryu
We
to
were
the
allowed to have like
lighthouse, where he
sprite
shows them a
nudity.
group of
Imagine that.
curious Urkon warriors called Guardians like him,
This is where I
surrounded by
spoke in a
Gar's
manner
group of
where I
dragon
felt
slayers.
actually that can be
Though he had
interpreted a different
countless
way, so I
skeletal
added the
warriors
yellow
of the
text there to
hundreds and
clarify.
hundreds of dragons he and his clan have killed in the war, many of which their souls still burn. Turning to Ryu, Gar now shares the eternally retold story of the Brood, a tale transcending
I'll tell you
history
guys right now, all
that
this is a
before his
giant Soul
youth,
Calibur
many believed he
reference.
would
It's like
conquer the
Soul Calibur
world.
reference after Soul Calibur
Upon
reference,
Eagle
and almost
fulfilling Gar's
nobody in the comments
protection,
got it.
bestowed upon him a
I'm
BoF
like,
III
brutal.
brood.
Nobody knows Soul
Reveling his
Calibur.
power and reaching for victory, the
Harsh.
grueling battle ended with the
I know
victory
Soul
of the
Calibur is not
Guardians.
very popular these
Declaring
days,
Ryu the
but
last
still
of the brood,
brutal.
Gar states his purpose will be fulfilled once Ryu is killed here.
The twist
They
here was
come
kind of
together
cool,
to arrange their battle as the
but
two
man,
souls
Gar
fiercely
just
entangled,
sucks
and
at his
Ryu
job.
desire to win.
You kill hundreds of dragons, you can't handle
Fortunately,
this
the
one.
souls of the
Okay.
dragons around Ryu speak out and tell him not to, claiming Gar is not his enemy. Suddenly, uncontrollable power erupts.
And then him
from
going
Ryu,
berserk and
transforming
turning
him
into a
into
dragon
living
is
tiger
interesting.
dragon as he escapes through the roof, though within his mind, Ryu continues to be driven mad by
And then we have a
voices
time
that
skip,
hurt
which I
him.
thought was actually kind of cool.
In this state of mind, Ryu returns to the mines he was first found in, where Gar finds and defeats him. Ryu turns back into a human form, but a young man this time, where Gar explains many years have passed since their last encounter, and he has searched for him all the while. He asks forgiveness for slaying
When you think
Sarah,
about it, the entire
asking him
point
to
of the first
despise
arc
her.
was just them getting
However,
to Angel
most of the
Tower.
brood did not
That's all the
even
entire
fight
journey
back, as they
was.
were slaughtered despite
To
Ryu's
ask a
efforts.
question that they never got
Gar
answers
wonders why to
to.
this day, and believes his life is still forfeit to Ryu, asking to be allowed to live until he learns
And then
more.
Gar has his crisis of faith, and
Inside,
that's his
Urkon
purpose for the
reclaims
entire
their
second
authority
half of the
over them,
journey is,
but
I'm gonna go
Ryu
ahead and
rejects
travel
them.
to try to
Gar
ask the
proving that Ryu
goddess,
allowing
like,
Gar to live,
why?
killing himself
What
to
did we do? What
avenge
was
the
right?
zombie. It scoffs as Gar explains he is taking Ryu to see his god and learn if the Dragon War was justified. Another voice urges Ryu not to give in to hate, and the zombie hears this voice too, angered at the interference and attacking the duo. Defeating the ghoul, it compresses into a malevolent dark orb that Ryu claims the power of, and suddenly a light shines out and a winged woman speaks to them that the zombie
A lot of people
killed.
theorize that that's Ryu's
It
mother,
comes to
and
Ryu
maybe
as a
that's true,
feedback
but
that
at the
orders
same
Ryu to
time, she
turn
becomes a
as
green
well,
orb he
and the
absorbs,
results of what
just like
Ryu
the
did.
dragon zombie, just like
Not
everything
sure what that
else,
was all
and that's
about,
what
Ryu
enables
head out now
fusion.
and as
So
Ryu
quite frankly,
searches
like
for
the
Urkon,
other
he
dragon
makes
wasn't
sure the
wrong.
Dragon Lord
He's
once
just
again is killed by
represents the
evil
rage of the
warriors.
dragons, while the other
On the
lady
road,
was kind of
Alto's
representing we
Aggregate,
should
Hera
forgive
attacked by a
things.
fearsome were-tiger, but strangely
And then
decides
Ray
that Ryu
discovering he's
is
a
the bad
were-tiger
guy.
all of a sudden is
Later,
just
it
kind of
turns
like,
out Ryu
okay,
being
I guess he
an
always had the
investigation
ability.
of corruption,
Loki,
as
by the
Gar
way,
was
his
overheard
instigation
Ryu
goes
try to see
nowhere.
Ray again.
Gets off
Not
scot-free,
only
get
is he
used
the
to that.
Lord after all, but an equally surprised Ray mentions he was also the were-tiger they just fought, impressed
He's
by
like, hey
Ryu's
man,
strength.
you grew up
Ray
really
adds
well.
he's
By
been
the way,
there,
I'm a
though, keeping an
were-tiger.
eye on the Black
Anyway,
Market,
I'm off to kill
tracking
an
down
entire
and
ton of
defeating
people.
those who
See
tried
ya.
to kill them all those
And
years
that's what
ago.
happens.
He's glad Ryu's alive, but admits he cannot stop now, still hungry for revenge.
He's like, yeah, I end up murdering like dozens of people, and you know, once you're just on that murder trip, you just can't stop.
As well as Nina, who was shocked to see both
Here's one one thing, I like Nina's sprite design. It looks nothing like her portrait. Her portrait and the status screen looks nothing like that. She also has like big poofy shoulders. I don't like the shoulders being so poofy.
They follow his trail of blood to catch him cornering the Dawn and slashing him, but it turns out the Dawn is actually a powerful demon in disguise.
When they showed that the demons were in disguise being humans of influence, I thought they were going to call back Breath of Fire 2. And it still kind of does. But it really doesn't go anywhere.
He then questions why the brood, Ryu included, wields such massive power to begin with.
So like the demons aren't really a plot point here.
Asks the same question to his god.
And Ray's like, I wonder why I have the ability to transfer or transform into like a powerful tiger. And so that's his I'm gonna off to see the wizard thing. And here we go into the mad scientist part.
Mutants are now reappearing, and the Chrism reactor is on the verge of overloading. Picking up Peko near the legendary tree Yggdrasil, they investigate the plant, finding a hidden research lab underground.
I also appreciate that Momo uses guns and cannons and a rocket launcher.
Mutants going on, and further in, Pallet is found to be working on a process to revive his dead mother. Momo correctly deduces Pallet is actually responsible for the creation of the mutants in the first place, and while the
yeah, go figure that like the bioengineering they use to make food to keep everyone alive, so it's actually doing a public service. He's doing more good than bad. Also creates mutants that are running around, and yeah, they're being a nuisance, but it also creates jobs for people to kill these mutants. Or become points for experimentation for creating an immortality serum that, you know, it's like that could really be useful in a lot of ways. Like this is all, yeah, it's mad science, but it's kind of like paved to hell with good intentions. And again, it's that morally gray stuff where like these are things that are actually a benefit, but they're doing very morally flexible things. So it's a very interesting examination. I kind of like them putting that in this fantasy setting.
Nina tries to explain Ryu as a good person, and
I like that they don't directly toe the this is good, this is bad, just polarization, like the smooth brain sort of plot points you would get in other RPGs. They have it to where like it's deliberately framed like in a gray thing, like these are bad things. They can be seen as bad things, but they also can be used for good things, and they kind of are. But they can also be used for selfish reasons, so it's like it goes all around. I like that. It's more complicated than that.
Her, and Gar recognizes her as Dees. Learning an older guardian named Geist has a key they need.
It is a bummer that Dees was just relegated to exposition side character.
Geist mentions the world thinks the brood started the war, but reveals they didn't.
This is another thing where the world is controlled through misinformation. Very relatable to the real world.
So he knows where he's coming from.
And unfortunately, because the world's controlled through misinformation, their actions right now don't change that fact. The world still is highly misinformed.
He took, Geist says the power God fears may be Ryu's ability to make friends of foes.
And again, we watch people die right before our eyes. Breath of Fire doesn't care.
Returning to Angel
Deal with it.
Dees, who wakes up and sucker punches Gar for being bound for 500 years. Still, she presumes they are now ready to hear what she has to say, meeting them at a volcano nearby where she regains more of her power and her true serpentine form. She is not yet strong enough to take them to God directly right now by herself, but she can show them the way, opening Ryu's inner eye to allow him to see the path as well. A ball of light called Prana. And
in this one, it's like Dees is shown to be like so powerful and everything like that throughout the games, mostly because she is a goddess this entire time. So the Dees from 1 and the Dees from 2 has always been a goddess. The mini games that were here for the both were actually kind of cool. Oh, I also want to point out that Breath of Fire 3 kind of has, I would argue has like the best fishing.
All the same, he tells them to seek out the
I think Breath of Fire 3 has the best fishing minigame for the series. 5 unfortunately didn't have one, and 3 took a step back in my opinion. It made things a little bit less interesting and interactive, but the fishing minigame for 3 was well done. It had the right amount of interactivity, the right amount of challenge, the right amount of incentive to do it, and reward to where it's like this was fun to do, and it didn't feel like just ham-fisted. It didn't feel like it was just shoehorned in. The part right there you saw earlier where we were moving crates to navigate this warehouse, that's about as much complexity you got in the dungeons in this game. The dungeons in this game were not very well, they're not very interesting. They were, most of them, almost all of them, were just labyrinths, which I immediately hate. And other than being visually distinct, you don't really do anything interesting in almost any of them. They're just really long monster hallways. I appreciate the texture details, I appreciate the times to try to do something different, but they really didn't. The dungeons in 3 were not as good as 2. They did not have as much creativity, or strive to do as much. And here we have the Brood who, you know, they say they gave up their powers, but a lot of them didn't have their powers to begin with if we go by 2's continuity.
to survive, the brood either gave up their
And it's
power
amazing that
from the
they can
guardians,
fly under the radar of the people that are literally designed to hunt and kill them
once
down just
Gonzalo
by
produced children
giving up
in
their
his sleep,
powers. I guess
people
maybe
of the
their
brood
quote
could
unquote
emerge once
energy
again.
signatures make them
Until
identical to
Ryu began
humans
to develop
because they can't turn
succeeds
into
became
dragons.
Miria,
Which
early
again
to
begs
Ryu
that
with
question,
sheer
which is
power and
what
complete
really
dominance.
are the
To the
metahumans
side,
or
Peko points out a point
demi-humans in this?
Ryu's
Are they
village
humans
has
with
built
extra
around
abilities like
secret
this?
knowledge,
Does being a
and they
dragon
also
matter, or
point
were
out
they
that
always
section
humans that could
drawn
just turn into
across the land
dragons?
used to be called Ladin, the dragon god, but
And
its
here we go, the
power
dragon
actually
god
rested
again,
on
relegated to
Ryu
being a
and his
save point.
siblings.
He's like, I used to be
Naturally,
important. You were
Ryu,
never
just like any
important.
like
You
god,
were always a
knows
save
his limit,
statue.
but when
Deal
he
with
was
it.
actually there during the war, still lingers and invites him to talk. Meeting the elder, Jono, he tells Ryu the history of his people, since even before the Great
Jono's
War,
Bizarre
he
Adventure.
refers to a mural nearby. With each age, a warrior appears among the brood, and
And
alongside
this part I,
allies
I
clash
don't
against
care
the evil
for
that Miria
in a way,
is,
because even though it
Jono,
directly
on the
ties
other hand,
together
is
all
repelled.
three
Not
Breath of
just
Fire
as the
games in one
guardian gods,
continuity
but
right
under
here,
separate
it
answers,
also
Jono
says
adds
that
he does not
all
want
of
to
it
show
was
his
fated to
powers
happen.
despite
All
what
these
he's done.
prophecies are true.
Continuing, he states the
The
brood of
emphasis
Miria
that
have developed for
prophecies are
ages, and
true
it's true the power the brood
is
gained
another
before,
part that's
but
part
the
of every
one they
Breath of
lost in
Fire
the war
game.
was the choice not to use their power, as the force of their full might was more a danger to the world than the war.
Jono's correct here, though. If the
However, it's not
dragons
what the
did use
dragons
all
were
their
fighting
power to
for
fight
to
back,
be
it probably would have
illegal,
ruined the
or
world,
whether
like
the
which is what we
reasons,
saw
but
in the first
regardless,
Breath of Fire.
Yuzuno's
He's
time
not
to
wrong.
point the power of the brood to Ryu.
But it is
After
still
that,
weird. It's like,
Jono
why do
lets
they
Ryu
roll
know
over and
that
just
in order to
die?
receive the hidden essence, Ryu must strike him down with all of his might, and only then will his training be complete.
And I like how he
Educated,
says,
Ryu
well, we
closes
weren't
the
doing
brood
it on
and
behalf of the
penetrates
world
both
either.
and leaves behind an orb that is absorbed by Ryu.
We were
Stronger
just
than
kind of
before,
doing it.
Ryu is then
You know,
told
it's
that
just
Peko
choices and
agreed to his last
consequences.
step, and powered up for more, he does not look back
The
and sacrifice
infamous
whatever he can
desert
to make sure the group makes it to face the
navigation
crisis
maze.
together. As
I
Ryu
like that
approaches
the
the
answer
spot
was you
where
have to
Peko
cut all
died,
ties and move
he hears
forward. That
nearby
was
Ryu
ballsy.
calling
But
Shenmue.
man,
Listen,
navigating that maze
full of
even
robots
one
in
part
space,
off was rough.
including some that look
And then you come
alive.
here where like it's like a technological
Although they have
future. I like
advanced
this part where
technology
like
still
the world
operational,
you think you
Sora
know
built
is
the
not
Miria
true.
station, the same name as
Just
God.
breaking
He
that
finally
that
takes them
frame
flying
of
to the skeletal
reality.
orbital station.
This part I feel was
However,
very
as they
rushed
announce
though.
as they
I
arrive
did
at
not
the
like how
station
rushed
reveals the
this
doors,
last
notice the
section
man in
was.
purple from Ryu's visions already there, who welcomes
Tipo
Ryu
being
with
here
joy.
also makes no
Telling,
sense.
he adds he already knows Ryu is brood and is unsurprised that his
Like, yeah, he
people
bought
are
into
alive.
he drank the
Ryu
Kool-Aid,
is shocked to recognize the
but
young man as Tipo,
I don't know.
overcome with relief to see him alive, but Tipo cuts him off to focus on Ryu.
If Tipo
He
really
speaks
cares
about
about
the
family as
order
much as he
form
claims he
and
did, he
starts
really,
explaining
I don't
after
know.
the
I don't
ceremony
believe that
that
he would
BoF
have been as
II
callous as he
brood
was
was the
here
organ
to
of
him,
restoration.
much less Ray.
Like
Like,
Ryu,
yeah, I get that
experienced the long
he
and
values
bloody
himself as a
trip between the
dragon, and
dragon
maybe
of the
that's it.
heaven and the
But
medicine.
even if his
He
dying
does
breath,
not
he's like, I
believe
really
that
want to
Ryu
be
will
with
cause
you
a chain
guys.
of
Well,
conflict
when
and
we
loss
were
in the
literally right in
power
front of
between
you,
the
both of
brood.
us are right here, you don't
He
do
clarifies he does
anything?
not
I
yet
don't know
know
if I believe
if the
that.
goddess also feels there is only a threat if the brood are left unchecked and
Also, I
uncontrolled.
don't like Tipo's
However,
haircut.
he
He has
insists
just a
Ryu
giant
stay
mullet.
with him and Miria,
It doesn't look
sends
good on
him
him.
away to a manifestation of his mind where he can not only dive inside his own heart but also connect to the hearts of his friends as well. For
And then he's
Ryu,
like, Ryu,
it's
I
not
would
just another
never
son of
hurt
the
you.
brood, out from
I
the
don't want to
sperm
go
of
with you,
his mother,
Tipo. Alright,
wishing
Ryu,
to
I guess I'm gonna have
redeem
to kill
himself
you.
and
Well,
become
that
the father
flip-flopped
to the
quickly.
princess, who bears
Jesus.
the lingering guilt of a
Again, they
second
rushed
fatherless
Tipo
son.
here. I don't care
For
for
Ryu,
it.
he is torn between having a unique power that pales in comparison to the brood
I
and
like this
having
part
to
though,
rely
where we
on
kind of see what's
his
going on
power
in the mind of our
responsibility.
teammates.
For a
I
moment, they watch the
appreciate
pathway
those
of Peko
insightful
unfold,
moments,
and the weight
those
of Ishimon's
introspective
body
moments,
rolls a
especially
bit over
in
Ryu,
case like Momo,
especially
where Momo's
since
like,
the
I
Yggdrasil
really don't know
was
anything about all these
activated.
gods and stuff. I'm just here for the
Power still
science, man.
undergoing a crisis of faith, wondering if obeying God's orders was saving the world or not. Surprisingly, Peko appears
And then
before
Peko
Ryu
here's
as
being a
well,
dick.
not only
He's like,
articulating his views,
surprise,
but
I'm
revealing that he is
Yggdrasil.
observing Ryu this whole
Lol, I
time,
knew this entire
ensuring he will
time. I've
stay
just been
course
watching
until he
you.
feels is right.
I'm actually a
Finally, Ryu
god.
comes face to face with his own
I've just
self-reflection
been
and
playing
comments
dumb
that
this
if they
entire
have the power
time.
to change the world, then they should take responsibility for the world as well. It
I don't know why
insists
I wrote the
Ryu is
pun
the
up there
only
in the
one
joke.
who
I
can
guess I
kill her,
really
and
feel like
Ryu surrender
I
himself to her.
made it clear that
To
I'm
do
making a
so,
pun
he
here.
walks past his image, only to
I kind of
realize
feel like I
later,
shouldn't have done
he was
that.
surprised
Whatever.
to learn Peko was actually the legendary Yggdrasil. Regardless,
I like
Tipo
how he's like,
focuses on
oh, you have the legendary god on your side.
Just thinking of themselves,
Well, anyway.
small selfish desires, and Miria is the only one worthy of their might. When Ryu
He's not wrong, though. Miria is keeping the world alive, though.
killing him, but when this fails, sees no other choice but to take down his old childhood friend.
And Ryu is willing to completely disregard the safety of everyone else on the planet. Yes, she's keeping everyone in a birdcage. And yes, they should be free to explore on their own, but the cost of liberty is destroying the only tether to actual survivability in this world that's going to kill you. This I thought was interesting, where like they had the clones of everything. I was like, were they all bioengineered here and put in the world? It's interesting. And then what's the form of this lady? Why is she designed this way?
Life was being sucked out by its inhabitants.
It's so
Seeing
interesting.
this, Miria
I kind
divided
of like. There's a lot. I have a lot of
one being the
questions.
desert of death where they are now, and the other being the land they just came from, overflowing with life. Miria divided the two lands by the wide outer sea to protect life from the desert and safeguard.
See, they're learning all this. That the only reason they're even alive is because Miri's magic's keeping them alive. And yes, she's controlling technology, and yes, she's controlling the narrative, but it is quote unquote for the greater good. And quite frankly, the kingdoms are existing and thriving with no real issues because of it, and she's pointing that out. This is also a part that I kind of love. It's very Breath of Fire. All of them come up, they all voice their opinions, they all voice their questions to Miria, and she doesn't answer any of them. She ignores all of them. Brutal. And then when they just aren't satisfied with that, she just snaps them out of existence. And then she's afraid of Pekka, which really makes you wonder about the dynamic of gods here.
Asking him to make a choice to either give up his power and allow the world to continue as it has under her protection, or challenge fate with his power that is too large for her world, like the other brood.
And she gives him a choice, to be fair.
And his own values, Ryu chooses to make his own path, and Miria warns him that to go against her is to go against.
I love her boss design here, by the way. Straight up nightmare fueled. I think it's so good. It's so well done. The sprite artist here again, just ace job. And again, Peko and Miria, and even, you know, Ryu, they're not wrong. None of them are wrong. It's just about choices or consequences. It's all very gray. It's not black and white. Again, we keep coming across that theme in the writing. And then Gar just kills himself because he knows his time's up anyway. And here's the part where I think where it's like she's a goddess, but she's calling out to God. She's not even sure herself. Like, she's a powerful person, but people call her a god, but even she feels that she's like so limited in her power and calls out herself to a greater god for answers or power or salvation. It's such a small but very significant moment.
Of an overprotective goddess as they look forward to an unshackled future of their own making. Breath of Fire 3
and again, okay, yeah, right there. Okay, so that is Yggdrasil then. I did include it. I didn't say it was Yggdrasil, but it looks like that is how we end it. I didn't grab that. I didn't grab that sprout of life was Yggdrasil. I just thought it was just a sprout showing hope. I took it for the symbolism. Okay, so didn't completely dodge the bullet, but I did at least get away with it a little bit. I didn't lose the significant part.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next battlefield.
Yeah. Aggregate makes you wonder what Dees and Tyr really are, what their origins are. Exactly. Some more clarification would be nice. And here's the video that started all of it. Breath of Fire 4 was the very first recap I did for this. So this is like the oldest of them. I think it was back in 2018, 2017. We'll see.
Released by Capcom in the year 2000 on the PlayStation.
You can hear the quality of my mic difference.
Installment in Capcom's premier RPG series. Written and directed by Makoto Ikuhara, who also
and I love the art aesthetic change here. I think the art change here was really good.
A tradition of the main protagonists featuring a boy named Ryu and girl named Nina. For gameplay, battles are turn-based, and if certain effects are used in succession, powerful combos can be executed. Not to mention,
it's unfortunately these FMVs are so old, so there's no way to upscale them. It'd be nice if they came back. It makes me wish for an animated series. Ursula, remember her name.
Like Breath of Fire 3, certain skills can be learned from monsters, and others can be learned by mentor.
I like this opening music too. 4 had some good music.
Also, there is a village building micromanagement minigame, as well as the series staple.
Like the concept of dragons and what they mean to this world is examined as such a fascinating part. So this came out in 2000.
Woman named Nina, alongside a catman named Cray, heading to the desert town of Sinesta, looking.
I said catman. I didn't know they were called Warren.
Giant desert dragon erupts out and gives chase.
So in this world, people know about dragons. It's pretty common.
Crashing safely, they agree to split up, with Cray looking after their sandflyer.
I like the watercolor with like muted colors here. That looks really good.
She falls into a pit where she encounters a strange dragon that doesn't seem hostile as it flies away and leaves behind.
And like the way the dragons look, they look so different than like European type dragons. I like that.
Encountering some monsters and winning a great victory, it turns out Nina is
the battle sprites in this game are among the best animation for sprites I've seen in almost any game, not just Breath of Fire. They are so smooth with the animation. It is amazing. This is what I call A to possibly
Still,
like A
Ryu is
tier
empowered to
like
command the Uni to
sprites. Like
transform into
Breath
his
of Fire
form,
4 is
cutting generally through
amazing with its
Foo,
sprite
although his intent of
animation.
killing him in his
Not
weakest
the 3D
state.
sprites, but the 2D
Back with
ones.
Ryu and Nina, they make it to Sarai, get some spare parts, but run into some
Fo Lu, by the
unexpected
way, the
enemies
story of Fo
as Ryu
Lu,
breaks the
I'm
king's
gonna tell you
protocol
right
to
now,
defeat them.
Fo Lu's
As
character
Nina takes them
story
back to the Sandy
is
Mine, their paths
the
blood and
best
Satan
character
Wars as
story in the
Nicole
entire
appears.
Breath of Fire
With the help
series.
of a local
I
purifier,
challenge
Nina
any of you to bring up a
manipulates spiritual
character that has a
beings and brings
better,
them past him.
well-told story,
Meet Ursha, a
dynamic
quirky
arc as
purifier
Fo
who
Lu.
offers to show them the
Fo
way.
Lu
While
has the
dodging enemy
best
monsters and
character
seeming
writing in the
vulnerable to enemies
entire
with intense,
series.
they safely make it back to Cray. Between them, Ryu is gaining new powers thanks to Fo Lu
Because there's a
unknowingly.
lot of
Nina
characters in this
insists that Ryu are
franchise,
princesses of
and a
Luna,
handful of them
priests
have
she
really
can
good
control.
writing for them,
Ursha
much less
defeats and
character
never
arcs.
steps out of her
None of
armor.
them are as good as Fo Lu.
That night, Ryu has a dream of rescuing Alina, but curiously, they all have the same dream.
Feel free to,
Cray,
to
who has
throw a
always been
suggestions
closest to
chat, but
Ryu,
none of
explains that
them
he has
have
power
as good
to
as Fo
avoid
Lu.
with his dragon's eye. Working on that information, they continue on their way
I
to
like the
Sandy
clever way
Mine.
they disguised
They learn of
Dees into
Alina's
Urshin here.
whereabouts,
I actually kind of like
but
that.
she's been taken straight to the Empire's capital itself.
Even though I don't
Finding
love the
scoundrels who
portraits,
killed her there, they get smuggled across
because
the
not all of them
border
get
to
portraits in
Sicily.
the game, by the way.
At the
At some
same
point in the
time,
game,
Fo
some of
Lu
them don't get
recovers from
portraits.
grave injuries,
But
but is soon discovered by the same general again, who remarks how Fo
I
Lu
appreciate that the
is
portraits
still
actually match their character art.
trying to
Something
gain
that
control
2
of
and 3 did not
Fo Lu
do.
reveals he knows that while Fo Lu is regaining his might steadily, his other half was only born recently and is likely much weaker and easier to kill by comparison. Fo Lu knows
Because
this
Fo
to be
Lu,
true, and now
you know,
uses his
he
brain
comes
to
from an
reverse
age where
the
he
path
made
of
everything
Fo Lu's
great again. He's the great
He
emperor.
transforms
Everyone
into a
loved him. He
gigantic
built an
dragon,
amazing
and while the
dynasty,
dragon
and he
senses his
left it in the
weakness,
care of
Fo
other
successfully
people.
knocks
And
him out
other
of the
people
sky.
failed him, and now he's
Back
trying to
with Ryu,
correct it, while
Fo
there's other
uses
people
the
trying to
help of
kill
Nina
him.
and
And
lays
while
the
doing
pieces of the
so,
capital
he's
solid
trying to
to match the
dissuade
one
like
of the
this
Syrian.
fate that he's apparently
It turns
bound
out the
to,
bridge is really
while
important to
also
Li's side. They
like
get to it
appreciating the
just
new
as planned.
world and learning new like human
Despite the
emotions
ceasefire
because
and
of it and
conflict between the
appreciating the
two
world as
nations, the
is.
cod here would still be
The
safe to
visual
trade with
aesthetics, by the way,
Sandy.
the very eastern look
Finding
of it,
Ryu
very
on the edge of
nice.
hell, they are unfortunately caught by a sorceress man named Lord Yuna. Cray reveals they're here looking for
Yuna,
Ryu,
our mad
and Yuna
scientist right
claims she
here.
came here on a goodwill mission, but is now no longer with them. Capturing and escorting them back to Levant to the kingdom of Ludia, the group is scolded by the king there, and Cray is even sent in for questioning on his actions.
The battle music in this game was also good.
Trouble is Sias, a tall, shaggy
I
dwarf.
like Sias's
Unsure how to
design.
meet Cray, they
I
travel
don't
to
like
the city
Sias
of
as a
Levant,
character.
and they urge him to seek his mother.
He's just kind of
She's
vacant. He's just kind of there.
as Ryu journeys out to find her on Saddleback, Sias is intrigued at the lake the party's willing to go to for Cray. Meanwhile, the tribunal grills Cray on his actions as a national leader, doesn't care about Alina so much
Cray
as about
getting
the
played by the
politics.
politics here was kind of cool. It's one of those where like you can be right, you can mean well, you still won't get what you want.
Returning it would take a lot of heat off
That's
Cray,
brutal.
but they need to get a new one forged quickly. She knows
I see Cray's mother is just human. She's not Warren.
deep inside a volcano. Venturing there, it turns out that Smithy was the man who made the king's sword originally, so after gathering the necessary materials, he's able to make another one very quickly. However, when they return to Cray's tribunal, the tribunal claims the Empire returned the king's
I
sword
like this
to the
too because it's like you can be right and still
including
not
changes
be
to the treaty,
correct,
so Cray's
I guess you could
punishment
say.
will still be harsher to reflect it. Sias is also scolded for letting them make a fake sword, but Sias replies he was only assigned to watch them, not to stop them. With no faith in the system anymore, Nina thinks now to
Wesley
use
Fo Lu
Cray
is that
to
Chad in the
use
MVP?
Sias'
Oh,
sword.
for real.
Sneaking in
Fo Lu
after
is the real
the
MVP
guards,
here.
they meet Cray, who is ready to leave since no one else cares
This
what
game also has the worst case of body horror. I know, and we've seen a lot of really
Don't attack the Alliance with
messed
the
up stuff already.
It dawns on Nina that
Like
the
every
Empire
single Breath of
managed to
Fire game
control
has
the
messed
Emperor
up
magic,
stuff, but
and
this
that
game
last
really
week,
has messed
given
up
his experience
stuff.
with Kirito
And that's
power,
these dark themes are in
to
all the
make
Breath of
his
Fires. You seeing it? When people say, "Oh, this Breath of Fire doesn't feel like Breath of Fire," I have to question: do you even know what's kind of a prevalent thing among all the Breath of Fires? Because I don't think you do. Horrific science and body horror is present in all of them. Terrible things happen to a lot of people, including good people, in all these Breath of Fire games. I hope you know that. If you don't say that, you're telling me you didn't really either A, play all the Breath of Fire games, or B, you weren't paying attention well enough. They're so bittersweet. They're so macabre. Bleak is a word that comes up a lot. A lot of these games, especially 5, very bleak. They're very bleak in their tone, and those are harder to win the masses with because people sometimes want to play a game and just feel good. And if you have a game like this that makes you think, and also makes you think about things that are challenging your morals or challenging your perspective on life, politics, society, like friendship, races, all that sort of stuff. Breath of Fire touches on all of those in very mature and advanced ways that still are relevant today. They're fascinating conversation points.
Defeating the assassins and
Like the
welcoming
writing
Sarah's
here
mom,
is very
Sarah
intelligent,
decided immediately
despite the
to
overall general themes of like,
recognize
okay, we'll,
Ryu as Ray.
save the world or
He
something like
claims
that.
Ryu is one of the Endless race and also a dragon, so basically a god.
These dragon designs are very unique, though. I will give them that. I don't love all of them, but I will give them that they're very unique. Also, this is the part where, like, you have this kind of not great looking 3D model right next to these amazing looking 2D sprites. This is that age. The PS2 age was there where, like, the sprites look amazing and the 3D art was looking better. But PS1 games, like, 3D art never looked as good as sprite art. Never. They were just better relegated to architecture like this.
Puzzling as Ryu was not summoned by them. The Elder pulls Ryu into a dream world to speak with him personally, but somehow Urshan is able to enter as well. As it turns out, Urshan is also a god, albeit
Dragon Age Broodmother.
concealed within her armor. The next day,
Man, I haven't seen that reference in a while. I really wonder how Dragon Age 4 is coming
Still
along.
all enter Urshan's mind to now break the seal binding her.
Because this was my very first Breath of Fire game that I didn't connect that she's Dees or Blue. And now looking at it, it's, it's pretty obvious, but it's kind of cool that once again we see Dees. And this is where it's like, this is probably in a separate world, because Dees comes from another world. Dees and Ryu are summoned from another world. And I almost, like, I don't like fan theories, but one theory I'm willing to believe is that this Ryu and this Dees are from their, original world that we're familiar with from Breath of Fire 1 through 3, and then they are called into this world of Breath of Fire 4. This is another music track I like. 4 had a lot of good music too. I'm stuck between 3 or 4 having my favorite soundtracks. 3, 4, and 5 all have really good soundtracks. It's hard to tell because they both have very distinct styles. 3 has a lot of good energy. 4 has like such like good almost cultural ethnic tracks. I really like it. And then 5 has it's the chords they use that just remind me of like the adventure and like the world setting of Ivalice, especially, just so good. Has really good dungeon themes. Speaking of dungeons, I don't remember this game really having dungeons. Like you had environments, but you didn't really have dungeons in the traditional sense. A lot of them were very small areas. You didn't have long dungeons in this game, and I think I kind of liked it for that.
The golem asserts itself over Folu, who is forced to destroy it, noting the side
4 kind of changed that up. I kind of forgot about that. 4 didn't really have long dungeons.
Villagers are now suspicious of him and soon call Imperial guards to the village. Mommy insists on defending him, confessing she was hoping he would
Look at all these unique sprites in each of these scenes that are never used again.
General Yom arrives,
And then she's thrown in this cannon that's used directly to kill him. Oh, the tragedy in this is so palpable. There's so much tragedy here. Like, you have to have an appetite for it. Each of the avatar sprites for the dragons, by the way, look very cool. I like their avatar sprites. They all look very cool. I like them. Very creative.
She states she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life as a dragon watching over this world.
And she's right. Dees is like, I was summoned here against my will to watch over this world I don't even care about. Don't any of you agree with me? He's like, no, you're selfish. Don't you know your duty? She's like, F that duty. I didn't ask for this. Yeah, that's another thing. You can't move against fate. Fate and prophecy is another prevalent theme in all the Breath of Dragon. I'm gonna just keep messing that up. Breath of Fire games that keeps coming up.
Though he is eventually overwhelmed. As the group arrives, the Elder is saved, though Urshan is severely damaged. Dee says her power could restore him, but she doesn't want to live in the armor anymore, so Urshan dies, thankful for at least being granted the chance to experience life. The rest of the villagers are in hiding in another hidden village nearby, and the rest of the group moves to check on them, but that night, Dee questions how humans can have such an attachment to life.
One thing that's kind of rough in this game, though, is that I feel the party cohesion in 4 is among the weakest, because the relationship binding Ryu and Nina, and even Nina to Cray, and even Cray to Ryu, is so bare bones and thin. they're all like
forces Ryu to transform
partners
into the Demon King.
of
Ryu
circumstance,
relaxes the
but they're
summon,
not really
but suddenly Ryu
friends.
goes totally berserk, attacking all the Imperial officers around, and only Nina's cries seem to calm him down for now. Over with Fo Lu, he
Like
learns
Nina
Lord
is
Yuna
like almost
rested his
caring for
teeth
Ryu
away,
like a
the same
lost
mob in the
puppy.
middle of a
That's kind of the
sacrificial circle
relationship
prepared by
here.
Lord Yuna.
Like
The Lord
Ryu's
Yuna
writing
noticed
here
Yuna's
is
giant
so
magic using both
absent
aim and
that that's
fire
one of the things
attacks
that, even though I love Breath of
as it
Fire
turns
4,
out
I
his
have to
giant
admit is a
magic
very weak part
creates
of
and fires
storytelling.
the malevolent hex plaguing the land,
It's really Fo
also
Lu that
light just like the
carries the
rest of Earth.
storytelling.
Fo Lu is hit
They put
directly by
all
the
the
flame,
writing into Fo
and as he
Lu and almost
collapses, a
nothing
shiny
for
trinket
Ryu.
once belonging to Mami falls next to him, causing him to laugh now in despair. Back with Ryu, they capture Ursula, and Nina thinks the sooner they get
Ursula
Ryu,
too, like I
the
wanted
better,
to like
since he might be
Ursula.
out of control,
Ursula
presenting
had good
evidence of his
character
ability.
motivation, but they
They allow
introduced her
Ursula
so
alone as well,
late,
and ask
and
for the
she's just
colleagues
there
of
again
Empire
because of
to join their
circumstance. She's
mission
like,
to
I'm
protect
only going to join you to
civilians.
make sure you guys aren't
Going
terrorists.
out to retrieve Dees, they find she changed her stance and chose to now attach herself to Urshan again, who comes back to life as well as
Everyone likes
Ursula.
the robot.
Needing a new sand flyer, they approach the same smuggler as before, who helps them out as a future
I like how the
investment.
fishmen just became
They now
pirates
travel and gain
because
more
there's
power
no
with both
real
Sand
water
Dragon,
anymore.
Mud
Like,
Dragon, Grass Dragon, Tree Dragon, Rock Dragon, and Sea Dragon. The gate they used to enter
I
her
like the
second
dragon,
house
so that's
is
why I
no
did that
longer
part.
functioning,
There was
so
really no
Ursula
other
now
reason.
goes to advance by sea instead. While this is going on, Fo Lu
Wesley, I would
notices
say
that
Fo Lu is the real main
Unicorn
character of
understands
Breath
his
of Fire
journey
4.
to
I would
Urshan.
agree. This is
While
Fo
his
Lu's
ancient partners
story.
recognize
Ryu
him,
is
he
just a
protects against
secondary
the
support
tyranny of this world
character.
and its people.
I
Since none of
was
his
so
successors
much more
achieved
invested in
Ryo's
Fo
purpose
Lu.
or legacy, he announces his new objective of destroying the
And
current
just
Stone
the
Empire
utter
and launching
sadness
services
and
starting
the
from Atlas.
strive against
He
fate for
surprises
Fo
General Yang,
Lu.
who
Oh my
explains that
god,
he's
the
only part of the
tragedy.
assassination orders of the current
The
Empress Cell,
tragedy. And
and
even
no
this guy who's
no more
like,
need for
look, I
gods.
recognize and I actually
Destroying
really
all known
respect you as my
legacy
emperor.
demons,
I
no one understands
obey
even Yo's
you,
arduous
but I
mission,
am just
and he tells
obligated by
himself
my
he's strong
current
enough to do
emperor
more.
to do what I
Urging
had
the
to do.
throne
I was
armor
under
and turns to
orders,
his Stone
and he's
Emperor
willingly
Ryu,
sacrificed
thinks the
himself
Demon weak and a
just to
coward,
avoid
and
dishonor.
tries to
And even
backstab
this
Fo
guy
Lu
who
to
tries to
defeat him in
backstab
the process, thus
his
stopping
literal
Ryu from claiming the
ancestor,
throne.
the progenitor of his empire,
Back
and
with
just
Ryu, he
beheads
reaches
him.
mainland and finally
Unfortunately, that
finds
was
himself
clipped
in
from
the
the
BoF
US
zone,
version, so I didn't
which
have a clip here. I should have grabbed it from a
intimidating
Japanese
enemies.
playthrough.
Getting
But
closer
yeah,
to
what
the
happens
capital,
is Fo Lu
however,
takes a sword out
Ryu's
of him and
movement
just
freezes,
beheads at
so
the
he seems
emperor
stuck on moving
for just
forward
being
to
such an
further Ursula's
idiot and
mission
just
to the
useless and
planet,
ruining
or
his own
Ryu's quest to
empire.
meet his other half, or even what happened to
I love that
Alina.
Fo Lu is
Leaving their
constantly
throne armor
traveling
to
a
prepare
path
their
of
way might
consistent
override their motives
disappointment with
instead.
everything
Heading
around
into the
him.
basement, they find things
And then
strange
this
and
part
revolting
itself,
everywhere.
this turned things
They're
around.
shocked to find Princess Alina
Like
died
Cray
hanging from
having
the
to deal
wall,
with
and
this
she asks him to
heavy
get the
shit
Dragon
right
Slayer sword
here.
from Lord
Oh
Yuna
my
and cut her
god.
down. Finding Yuna, he claims to be a pacifist and drops the Dragon Slayer before
Like
fleeing.
Yuna's
However,
thing
they
with like
return
with
to the Imperial
Alina, oh my
headquarters only to find it
goodness.
blighted with hex now. With the Dragon Slayer in hand, they cut off one of the bizarre organs in the basement and move on ahead, only to run into Yuna again. He taunts them once more before
And he's
leaving
not
and
wrong, where he's like, if I can create
she
endless,
thanks them for coming to
then what?
rescue her, but
Why are we
informs them
worshiping
they
these
cannot leave,
people?
now
We
wishing
we
to
view
cease
these people as
communication.
gods, but science can
Asks if
actually
they will ask him
exceed
to
them.
leave, and Yuna
This
now
part was
believes he
so
has no
tragic.
hex, explaining it's because he transformed her into one of the Endless.
I like how he just
Unfortunately,
kind of
at first,
whoops
he was
in here
going to
like a
sacrifice
ghost.
her to the Carinade, as the more
Because he is
attached to the
technically a
Endless,
metahuman. I
she
didn't
was
really
harder to
realize, again,
control
because this is my
than the
first
hexes.
Breath of Fire game that I
Problem is, the
finished
sacrifice must first
for
be completed
recap,
by bringing
and
a negative emotion
I didn't
to
realize
the
it was
tortured
basically another,
suffering,
like,
but usually they die
I
from
really
it.
don't know what he is, like a fox, I
So
guess.
Yuna thought to try to make an immortal body instead, revealing the grotesque experimental body he made out of Alina. In fact, the organs they passed on the way in are also part of her, as she somehow grew in power and became part of the structure. Given how
Like, she's
she can
part
live
of the
under
building.
any
She's not even,
without
like, just
dying,
that thing you
Yuna is
see.
convinced he's
She's
made a god
literally
with
a
his own
part of the
hands.
building. Look at this
Enraged, Ray
gross
moves to kill
thing.
Yuna, but the mad scientist runs away yet
And the
again.
whole reason you got
Now
this
wishing
sword
to
was
separate
literally
them,
so you can
he
have a
asks
means
Ray
to
to end her
kill
with the
her.
Dragon
She was
Slayer,
literally
as his
begging
love
to
for her
die
is the
because
last
she
thing she
can't
wants to see.
die. She
That
was made
night, Yuna
immortal
warns
into,
them
like,
the
such a
designs for the
horrible
next
form.
Endless.
And
They
this
learn
dude
Yuna
has to,
well,
like,
and
literally
also
kill the
Ursula's
entire
son
reason he was
surveys the organs of the
journeying.
capital
And just like the
lighthouse.
very first game,
But with
where the
Ryu
whole reason
saying
you're
his own
journeying is to
path,
save your
they can
sister,
tackle the next
and
destination
you're
head on.
forced to kill her. Same thing
Finding
happens here.
devastation everywhere, they
Cray's
encounter
traveling
Fo
this
Lu's
entire
army
distance
guarding an
just to
immortal
be brought to
Ryu.
the point where
At the
he's
doors of
forced
the
to kill the
castle,
object
Ursula
of
finds
his
the wounded General
journey.
Gun and
Very
presents Ryu
tragic.
to him. He then apologizes to them them all. Not
Yeah,
realizing
Cray
that
can't catch a
Ryu was
break.
planning to try
He's
and
the
take
leader of
down
his
Cell,
clan,
but
gets
also wants
thrown
to
out,
kill Will
accused of
Palmer.
war
But knowing
crimes,
this is too late,
accused of
Zero is
international
delusional
peace
and decides he
disruption,
asks Ryu to show mercy to
falsely,
at least the children.
has to kill the
As they
woman of
move
his
on,
dreams that he's
Explosive's advice
sacrificing
in
all of
general
that
turns
position
out to have been
for, and
grandfathered.
he's left with
Preparing themselves
nothing.
and entering
He's
the
left
battle,
with
BoF
nothing to
begin
show
right where
for
the
it.
halves of
So
first member
brutal.
Will Liu and Ryu finally meet. Lu easily knocks aside the rest of the party, claiming they cannot
And then
work.
Nina's just kind of there.
He tries to
That's
attack
the thing, is like
Ryu,
Nina's kind of like
but
irrelevant to the
urging him to
story.
sever these ties and ascend with
She
him,
literally
he tells
doesn't
Ryu
matter.
to
She
put the
just
weight on
finds
his
Ryu
head.
and takes
As
care
their
of him like a
final
little
boys
dog.
war, Ryu leaves
And this
Ryu
part's
nearby,
fascinating too, because
and moves out to
Ryu and
defend
Fo
Ryu.
Lu, it
As he
doesn't
stands
matter
before
who
the point, he
wins
sends
in
Ryu
this
thoughts and
battle. They
memories back
both
to his journey,
lose,
and
because when
tells
they
him he
fuse,
needs
they
to stay
become an entirely
focused.
different person, the
Flashing,
Yore
Fo Lu
Dragon.
reminds Ryu he
It's
must
not even
protect
like
the
a whole
ones
thing
who
where
are
I
alive
become a
today
dominant
while his
personality.
vision
It
cannot
doesn't
be.
matter.
In their minds, Fo Lu exposes his
So
own
in
and
this,
Ryu's
they
terrible
both,
experiences of
yeah,
foolishness
like they
and
both
betrayal
understand each
publicly.
other mentally.
However, Ryu holds his ground, pointing out the good in mortals
And the
and
whole point of their
praises the
struggle
bond they had
is
struck
not to
years
determine
ago.
who survives.
Confusion
It's
emerged on
basically
Ryu's
to
terms,
determine
Ryu
like
looking into the future,
whose
eager
philosophy
for
on the
justice to
perspective of
prevail.
this world is
Ryu, the
correct.
warlord,
That's the purpose of
urging
their
Ryu to
fight.
honor
It's
the
not for
gods
the
he
fate of
used
the
to
world.
alongside his
It's
son
literally to
Ryu's.
be like, are these
Merciless, feared
people worth
captive, challenged the
saving?
first god
And
emperor
it
for his
doesn't
fate.
even matter the
He
outcome of
defeated
the
Fo
fight,
without realizing
because
that
when
while
they
he
fuse, they
feared,
become the Yori
Fo Lu
Dragon, which
became
doesn't even
unwilling and
matter.
still
And so when
accomplishing
they
great feats,
reconcile,
as
it's
he
the
is
most
suddenly
peaceful
absorbed into
outcome.
Ryu, and the resulting man is neither Fo
And I
Lu
kind of
nor
like that,
Ryu.
because
The
it's
Yori
the whole
Dragon now
quote
has
unquote
a
fate of the
name,
world isn't
claiming that
hinged
Fo
on
Lu
this
also
battle
believes
between
this
two
world does
people,
not need a
because the
god.
battle between two
At
people are
inside
for
of him
personal
lies the
reasons that
power
have
of
nothing to
returning
do
to
with
it,
anyone else.
just as Dees wanted
It's
anyway.
just two people with
Returning
like a
gives the
different
party an instant
worldview, neither of
redemption
which is
purpose,
technically
and the
incorrect.
remaining dragons will live under
And
their new
the
mortal
Yori
lives.
Dragon's like,
Now
oh, you're
smart
right. I
Ryu
think the
knows
Endless
his
should
place in
peace
the
out of
war
this world. And
isn't
so they
over,
do.
as he's confident he can make
And
more
then the guy
advances
who's
this
like,
way.
yeah, I can make more endless.
As
I
the
can do
game
my mad
ends, the Yori
science on my
Dragon
own. And he
reveals his role
does.
and leaves with the other gods.
Again, you get
And
that
Ryu will
bittersweet
survive,
ending where
now
what
a
you
lone
did
mortal.
did not
This
actually
defense
change
isn't fair after
society.
all.
You
Left Ryu
destroyed more
fighting his own
society than you
functionality.
helped. That's
Ursula
a
returns
very
to the
common
demolished
thing in
empire,
all of
ready to
these,
rebuild
where
it as the
Ryu is
gods
actually pretty
please.
selfish when you
For
think
the
about
rest,
it.
they now move ahead,
Ryu's
Ryu's world
struggle, like
unguided by
when they
gods,
talk about in
confident
Breath
in
of
the war
Fire 3
outcome.
how the
In
conflict
Breath
and
of
the
Fire
struggle of
4,
dragons is more
Six
harmful than
successful
helpful,
560,000
they're
copies were
kind of
deployed.
right.
This
All right,
recapitation was sponsored by BoF III. Thanks a
2017.
lot for supporting the show as a patron. You're Ross? If you
2017
want
is
to
when I
help support
started
the
the
show
Breath of
yourself,
Fire
please follow
journey,
the link
and
in
it's
the
been
description
5 years.
below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see
The
you
convictions of
next week.
philosophy is strong. That's what I love about this game. The philosophical writing for Breath of Fire is so uniquely good. You don't see that level of deep thinking in a lot of RPG series. A lot of them are very cut and paste, very simplified plot
Released by
points.
Capcom in 2000.
All right, so before we begin this, we're in Breath of Fire 5. Breath of Fire 5, I'm going to go ahead and be frank with you guys. A lot of people give Breath of Fire 5 grief because to them it was quote unquote not a real Breath of Fire game. Some people even try to be apologetic and say, well, it was a fun game, but it didn't feel like Breath of Fire. Are you sure about that? Are you sure it doesn't have a character named Ryu, a character named Nina, dragon transformations, a very bleak outlook on the philosophies of society and the world, a constant story of struggle and futility about sometimes the greater world changing events, the sacrifice of society by Ryu to accomplish a very selfish goal, the bittersweet ending where the triumphs you gain individually are not actually impacting um the greater intent of the world. You're not really helping so much as you're helping yourself. Are we sure those aren't prevalent here in this game? Because as far as I can tell, when we've just seen with all the four Breath of Fire games from a writing, story, and character perspective, on top of the other things such as mad science and things like that, that may not be as mad. It's like for the greater good, that morally gray area. Are we sure that's not here? It's interesting. So let's continue watching. I will say this though, the fact that this was a tactical strategy game surprised me as much as it surprised anyone else, but I love that type of gameplay. So to me, I'm going to say right now, I love the battle system of Breath of Fire 5 more than any other Breath of Fire games. The other Breath of Fire games are just like pretty generic, not very different battle systems you can see in almost any RPG system, but a tactical strategy game that's actually done in the map in real time, ooh baby, now we're talking. One thing I'll also say too about the art style, and a lot of this is going to be, if you are subscribed to me or you're a part of the patrons, you already probably may have an access to the deep cut of this. So a lot of this is going to like share those thoughts here. There's going to be a lot of parallels. But one of the things I love about Ryu's design here is he's so visually distinct. Say what you will about the fact that all 3D art is a step down from Sprite, which it is. The art style in this game is very visually distinct. Like when you line up all 5 Ryus next to each other, not gonna lie, the first 4 Ryus look very similar, but Breath of Fire 5 Ryu sticks out. You immediately identify him, and to me, that's a success of the design.
Speaks with a regent named Cupid, upset to learn about the method of atmospheric cleansing being developed.
And here we already have the preface where everyone's underground, society sucks, and we have to come up with some means to survive. I like Lyn, but Lyn is very much not really needed in this story. She's just kind of there to talk to Ryu because Nina can't talk, which is very different because normally Ryu doesn't talk.
Relieved to see Ryu, calling him a friend and glad to finally realize their dream of returning to the sky.
5 is intentionally broken up in storytelling, but the problem is even with all the complete storytelling that it provides, there are a lot of holes. When I first saw that, I thought it was like Odin, which I'm sure a lot of people thought. I'm like, oh, the J's probably like a Y, which is like an I, so it's like Odin. It's not. It's Adin, and I didn't realize it was Russian, so I tried my best to speak those Russian numbers.
Returns fire with a mounted machine gun, only for the assailant to blow up the trap.
Look at us, we have guns and machine guns and rocket launchers here. I mean, we had it in 3, but it's nice to see them come back. Like military-grade technology. The design of the dragons, by the way, I think looks good here, even though I really only see 2 of them. They're just so very chunky, and I kind of like that. They look very beefy. And once again, we're fighting fate. That is something that is in all of the Breath of Fire games. We have this giant prophecy that is not only correct, no one can do anything about it. It's just, it all come true. Prophecies in Breath of Fire all come true. They're 100% true prophecies. And nobody can fight fate. Take that as you will.
Working together, the duo navigate through an old waste shaft as Ryu faces off against the woman.
I did not love the dungeons in this game because they didn't do anything interesting with any of them. They were just monster hallways. They were just there to get from point A to point B and get stats and items from. They were not that interesting, unfortunately. I like the battling, but the fact that we're just going from hallway to hallway, monster hall to monster hall was not interesting. There was like no puzzles whatsoever. I thought that was a step down. Captain Xeno looking pretty thick though, I'm gonna say. They definitely did that. Like Hortensia, Lyn, and Captain Xeno were definitely like the 3D eye candy, as polygonal as they are. They knew what they were drawing. Hey Lyn, how are you? I'm drinking water along the way because I've been talking for 2 hours. This part's interesting too, how Bash is already ready to compromise any, like he already wasn't really friends with Ryu. He was already saying, yo, help me and I'll help you. He was like, Ryu was already a pawn. Once again, Breath of Fire does not give a damn. They will kill children right in front of you. They have no problem with bodies on the floor. That's something that is very good. The unapologetic violence that's in Breath of Fire. All 5 of them. All 5 of them do not care.
When he wakes up, Lyn demands to know what he is, and Ryu isn't sure of that himself. He then remembers Bosch's mission and asks Lyn what Trinity intends to do with Nina, but she dodges the question as Nina expresses...
Like, Breath of Fire is surprisingly more mature than people would really give it credit for. I think they look at, like, the cartoony designs and they just kind of dismiss it.
At the same time, Bosch reports his failure again to Captain Xeno, blaming it on Ryu's strange power, but she tells him not to worry as D ratio is...
It's lower in this, the sound balance is, but I do like the dungeon crawling themes that are in here. Again, the composer for here did a fantastic job.
Complete this mission, so the captain relieves him of it, though Bosch refuses to accept the shame.
By the way, Lyn, how do you like the setup for the format for the stream? That kind of just chatting thing where you're watching the thing, but like you see chat on the side. I normally don't put chat up, but it's actually kind of nice.
Timing was not, especially since the one that is activated is doing so after its cycle has already ended.
Talking a lot for a long time is exhausting, by the way. This is the first time we're trying something so weird.
Sealing Ryu away before the reactivation of the dragon he's linked to becomes a problem. However, the man in charge called Origin...
The fact that, I like that the game, especially since the director said, when they was designing battles, said that all the previous Breath of Fire games are all too easy. I want to have one that's more challenging. I think that's true because you can actually go through this entire game using just tactics, even if you're woefully underleveled, your tactics will outplay the game, and I love that. It's very good. Hey Javier, how are you?
Nina rushes to his side and reveals she has
Uh,
the ability to completely purify the polluted air.
and the fact that they use the
Everyone is
game over
safe,
system
but
that's
Nina
used in
suffers
Dead
a
Rising,
great
it's so
cost. She
amazing because
wants
in
to
Dead
know what's
Rising,
going on with Nina and finds
everyone loves
exactly
that
all
if you
secret
go
pieces
far
of
or
the
you
map.
die or you
Now,
get to like the end of one
as
of
they
the different
rest, Nina is still
endings,
weakened from
you
using the
can't beat the game
powers
on
that
your
the
first
Silicon
try. You
Imperium
have to
had
go
to
back, play the
offer.
game again, but
There
you
was a
keep
rule on
everything
Panda's
and you
rewind
unlock
to
more
preserve the
scenes,
past,
more
because Nina needs to
bosses,
learn the
and you can
Pacific
get the
plan
true
before
ending
Panda's
from
zero
that.
revolution.
And that's how it is with
She
this
keeps quiet
game
on this
to a
discovery, but
degree.
nearby, Nina
And I
recognizes
like
something
that.
wherein she was
I think that's
tested
cool,
on
but it's
and
so
then used her ability
I
to
get where
save.
people say they weren't
She
expecting
trembles
that
in
and
fear as
because
they are
it's something
spotted
that
by
they
the
weren't
Head
used
Inquisitor,
to,
who
because it was
identified
very
Nina as an
new. I
experimental
think they kind
gene
of
that was
rejected it
supposed to
because
have
of
been
it.
shipped out already. He sees the problem at hand,
The
explaining that
time
Nina
limit
is a
thing
mental
is
illness that
always hit or
applied
miss
too
with
dirty,
people. I
revealing he
know
is a
I love
scientist
Majora's
that
Mask for
bioengineered
Zelda,
and grew
and I
her to
love
the best
Lightning Returns Final
anti-pollution
Fantasy
model developed
13.
yet.
But
You
and
know,
Dead
when
Rising
Ryu's
as
power
well.
begins to
All three of
weaken,
those
the
games have
scientist
time
then
limits, and I
explains
know a
once
lot of
our internal
people are
stage begins to
uncomfortable being
inflate,
on
the
the
natural
clock like
model is
that.
not built for
They just kind of
durability
want to,
and failure is inevitable.
smell the
Ryu
roses and take the
suggests
time
getting
on
her to
stuff. They don't
somewhere
like
where
being
the air is
pressured.
clean so that she doesn't need to filter.
Sometimes it
The
doesn't work,
scientist
like Shenmue
explains the air
3,
gets
but a lot of
worse
things
every
didn't work
day,
in
and the
Shenmue
longer she
3.
stays
But in
here, the
these games, I
sooner she'll
felt it was
die.
okay.
Nina calms Ryu down,
Also,
and
quite
contradictingly,
frankly,
he
there's
states
not
the
much to really
side
stop
must
and look
be where
about
the
in
air
this
is
game.
clean and can
When
cleanse
people
her
say it hurts
facility by tampering
exploration,
with
there's
air.
not really exploration in this
Escaping out
game.
through some nearby ice caves, they pause to rest
Unfortunately.
as Ryu reflects how this world is killing Nina no matter where they go. Though Link counters, he doesn't
Right
even know if the
here,
sky
this
even
part is very
exists.
weird to me. This part
Further on,
is
Link
played up a
says they're
little bit
approaching the
because
industrial zone, but they soon find
because
themselves
Zeno
surrounded
is
by
right to
Bosch and
accuse
forced into
Ryu
hiding
of
as they
thinking,
protest
hey,
what
you're
Captain
not right
Zeno
in the
has said.
head. We know you came in contact with
Nick,
a
experimental
dragon, and that
tests have
thing's messing
demonstrated
with
that
your head. You're
contact with it
having crazy
unreliable, and
thoughts.
as
You're
source
having
of the strange
hallucinations.
hallucinations he's
You're
been having,
strangely
as Nina
attached to
is
this
not
girl you
behaving
just
as she's
met. You're
according
willing
to
to
training,
burn the
Link
world
turns to
down
leave.
for this girl
She
that's
offers him a chance to
dying.
surrender, but the voice in
What are you
Ryu's head
doing?
shouts that she's
And
lying. Bosch
I like
points
how the
out that
voice in
Ryu
his
has
head, like
already
she's like, you're
tried,
hearing voices in your
warning
head,
Link that
aren't
having
you? And the
saved
voice in
Ryu
his
was
head's
too
going,
much and
no,
could
shut
not
up,
be
she
allowed to
lies.
leave.
It's like, she's
Passing the
kind of
further
right.
reporter, Ryu
And
stands his
it brings up
ground,
that
as if the
whole
intimidating
question
tone
of
of the
how much
approaching
is
Zeno will
Ryu
repeat the experience
doing
as Link
free
disappointed and
will
has
or
admitted to
illusion of
free will.
choice?
Dueling with the
Because even
captain, Ryu
he
then
is
tries
not
again,
sure.
killing her in the
He's constantly
pursuit,
struggling
despite
with,
Bosch running away
I
scared.
think I care about
Exhausted,
this,
Ryu hears the voice
but
of
I don't
Elaine again,
know.
stating he is the destroyer of 1,000 years, and Ryu has
This
to
was a
choose
missed
who to
opportunity
believe
when it
him
said
right
Thousand
now.
Year Story to be like
At this
Millennium
time,
Dragon
Link
or Your
suggests
Age
they go to
Dragon again.
Trinity as the
They
next
could have
move,
called it
and at
that
the same
again.
time, Origin reflects on a meeting he had with the Dean, who did not appreciate his visit. Origin knew there was not
But the
much
lack
time
of
left to
exploration to
offer,
me is
but
also
now
fine.
has people
Same
demanding
thing like with
answers
the
from him
first
to
part of
avoid
Final
the
Fantasy
assassins
13 that
taking
people always
Ryu out.
bitch about, where it's like,
Later, Link
it's just a
contacts Trinity's
hallway. It's like,
leader,
you're not
updating
there
him
to
on the
explore,
mission
you idiot.
status,
You're
and warning
wanted
him to question
fugitives. Everyone's out to
questions
kill
between Ryu
you.
outside
The fact
instead.
that you're running forward is the
However, the leader shakes
point.
his head, reminding
And
him
yes,
that
when
Link
you're not
cannot
on the
leave.
run
This is
anymore,
why
that's
the
when the game
organization
opens up. Gee, it's
exists.
almost like it was designed
Meanwhile,
that
Link is
way.
met by one of the elite
Oh my
assassins
god.
who has
It's
no
like,
regard for other rangers
that
and
was
will
when the
fight.
gameplay
After
tied
he
into
defeats
the
it, Link shares
storytelling
his
and people
courage
just
looking for
didn't,
hitmen
they
to
didn't
assemble
like it
with a
even though
number
it
of
worked.
rangers.
And it was on purpose.
However, the assassin was sandbagging on purpose as the Council of Regents learned Captain Zeno and the Rangers have failed, and the order now comes to send the Dark
The
Rangers.
whole thing with Origin is also
After
kind of
defeating,
weird
people
too
question
because
his usage of the
all
Dark
the
Rangers,
regions
and the leader of
are
the
weird
Regents,
in some
Elion,
way.
also
You
notices
have
the change.
Origin, who
Elion
ordered
replies
a
that part of
dean
him
to
wants to send
find
mankind
the next
to destroy
chosen
the
because
Dark,
when
as
he
that
was
is
up
the
there on the
Reaper's
surface,
harmony,
made the
and so
decision for
wishes to
some reason
continue
that they
serving
also
the
don't tell
directive.
you in this game
Although with
to
Bosch, he
lock up
reflects how ever
everyone
since he was a
else.
little boy, his father,
So he made that
Regent
call.
Vespasian, pitted him
And
and
he told
5
everyone
soldiers
else
against
the
the chosen
chosen are
force to take the
extinct,
goose
but
box
he
straight,
himself
which led the
told
Lord to become
his
his sense of
dragon
power and
that he
recognition.
already doesn't get along
Back
with.
at
You need to
HQ,
choose the
Bosch
next
is followed out
chosen.
as a
He's going to be the
coward
next
by
chosen
another
one.
ranger,
And then you have
claiming to
two
know
people
how
who
to
can see
protect
the
the future
future on
king
this
like
council.
Ryu.
And as we know,
Ryu
prophecies
turns
are
out to
100%
know the plan
true.
of
Both of
retaliation,
them know the
making Link
chosen one's
lose this
coming,
time.
but both of them deny Ryu being it because of his D ratio, even though everyone knows D ratio isn't a guarantee of anything, it's just a chance, and even a low chance is still a chance. I don't even know why the society cares about D ratio. It's not like everyone here is going to link to a dragon, so why do people place so much emphasis on D ratio? It's not really made clear. And then you have Bosch's father, who thinks that he can push Bosch to becoming as strong as he can to become the next chosen one. He actually believes that. He sacrifices his fatherhood and his boy's future on a lie, because you can't work to become the chosen one. The chosen one's already predetermined. So Bosch and his father are tragically wrong. They're doomed to fail since the beginning. It feels bad. And then you have the other guy who can turn invisible, who also fights against the notion of D ratios don't matter. Why do we place so much focus on a society? And he dies like a dog, even though he was right. And nobody was around to hear him. It's so funny that the guy who has the most poignant things to say is invisible, and that's his power is invisibility. The theming in this game again, Breath of Fire is so smart with its writing if you just stop and think about it. And that's just it. You have to stop and think about it, and I like that.
Literally consuming his life. He also doesn't feel any closer to figuring out the purpose of it either, but all of this is interrupted when they hear the cry of Nina. Rushing to her, they are shocked to see Trinity Soul.
It's also interesting that Nina is not actually a bird person. She's a human, and as you see, the overwhelming majority of people by the time Breath of Fire is here are human. It's very rare to have beast people like Lyn. And I'm not even sure what Lyn is. I think she's a cat. I don't know. I don't like her hood. Her hood looks goofy. I kind of wish like she wasn't wearing it. I think she would look better with it. I don't know.
Ryu states this is not the way to seek justice and declares he would rather take his chances going to the sky than stay here.
But the fact that she's bioengineered, like those wings are grafted on her to be something that will kill her, she's a disposable air filter. Oh man.
He says Ryu will need 3 more like this in order to see the sky.
It's crazy. Hey Drip God, how are you?
Upwards through the lifeline tunnel systems, the group is intercepted by Bosch, rebuilt into a
Wesley, D ratio is a caste system equivalent. It really is. That's literally what it is.
Relentlessly chasing the group, Bosch cannot be reasoned with, nor does he feel pity, remorse, or fear.
The whole thing of why they called Chitiri a deconstruct is also interesting to me, because when they first saw Odin, they thought he was a genic experiment, but it's like, are dragons naturally occurring here, or are they artificial? Are they controlled, or are they beings of power that can also clearly resurrect people from the dead? So clearly they're very powerful. But then at what point, like, do we not have them because they're so powerful? Why are we keeping the desiccated corpse of Odin alive and captured? Can we not destroy them? Clearly we can. So it's like, there's a lot of questions that I felt should have been fleshed out more. This world makes me want to know more, and it really is such a shame that the storytelling in here has so many holes that I just keep asking questions.
Until he failed to stop the first dragon, losing his eye as well as his position in the council.
What bums me out is that, yeah, no, it would be cool if Capcom would take an interest in Breath of Fire, but to be fair, it's been 20 years. It's been 20 years. This series is dead, man. We just got to put a headstone, put an F on that headstone. But the writing in each of these games is so fascinating, so discussion worthy, all of them. Some more than others, but all of them to some degree, that I really do question if we have the capacity of if that would be well received in today's day and age. Not to sound like, you know, an angry old man, but I really do question if even today people would be receptive to the philosophical themes that Breath of Fire examines, if it would be appreciated, because it's not spoon-fed, visually impressive distractions, you know? Like, the strength of Breath of Fire games have actually been in the writing, more so than the gameplay. People said the same about Bleach anime, but it's coming back, you gotta believe. Yeah. I appreciate your vote of faith. I'm not holding my breath. My Breath of Fire. That was a terrible one.
He's willing to believe Ryu may be the one to take wing and reclaim the sky, and wants to verify.
Here's my suggestion. Here's what I think would work. First off, they should have called this game Breath of Fire Tactics. Second, they should call the next game Breath of Fire Tactics and do the same thing. I think another tactical strategy game would be great. There's not really much purpose to the way they did the old battle formats. Even back then, outside of probably 3, maybe, there isn't much advancement. Like, they didn't do very much in terms of like the turn-based battle, so there's not a point to being turn-based even back then. It's just what was popular, and these days it's not popular, and I do agree they shouldn't do it. That's why I'm very curious how Valkyrie Elysium is going to turn out.
He knows what he does is for the greater good and looks down at orders from his superiors.
Oh, I missed a message earlier. Are there any other series that we're over with we're going to do this on? Technically, we finished Parasite Eve, and we did not do Memoriam for Parasite Eve. Should we do one for Parasite Eve? Are you guys enjoying this? Me talking for like 2 hours straight about each of the recaps?
quicker than they can
I'm just
follow,
trying something
appears
new.
among
I
them
just
and
I just felt like
introduces
doing this on the
himself to
fly.
Origin, whose mission
But if you
for
guys are
today
liking
is
this,
to
I wouldn't mind
eliminate
doing it
Ryu
for
from
the other
Ryu's purpose of
series.
destruction.
This is like a medium
He says
between
the time
what
has
you
come to
get when you
reopen the
listen to a
speaking to his
deep cut
old ally
rant
Dean,
on my
and
side
offers up that
channel.
noting
If
Ryu
you are
does not
subscribed as
have
a
much more
Patreon
time
or
left.
subscribed as a
As he
YouTube
not only
member,
went against
get
the
access to
leader of
those
the
videos.
Regents, Ryu feels Origin is familiar,
Uh,
and he admits that he
and
was
it's
his
just kind of fun to
inspiration.
just kind of voice my perspective on these
Elliot has
things.
failed but has no regrets as he was just following what he felt was his destiny.
And here's
As he
another thing,
watches the group move
Origin,
on, he
it's not
believes
about
Ryu's
good or
own
evil.
strength
That's
and
never
accomplishments
been what
he
the
could
fight's
not,
about.
but his son
The
was
fight is
still
simply
behind.
about A, realizing your
Turning
fate,
around,
and
Elion
B,
recognizes Chitiri has awakened as he dies,
there's
assassinating
he's
his
simply
own path.
testing Ryu,
Arriving
which
at
is
BoF
to me a little
Alpha,
weird because if he knows he's the
Ryu
chosen
feels
one,
movement
then why are you
behind
fighting
him,
him?
but
Shouldn't you be
Launch
helping
shut them back to
him?
normal.
So,
The two former partners face each other, but in a split second,
and then he gets
shows both,
murdered.
and Ryu wins the
Brutal.
exchange. Undeterred, Bosch now reveals
I like how
true
Bosch is doing
motivation.
everything he can.
Again, the raw
Everything he
level is
can.
still too much to overcome.
He tried so hard and
Staggering
got so
Bosch with his
far, but
riches,
in the end,
Ryu
it
leaves
didn't
nothing to
even
chance as
matter.
Bosch accepts his defeat, and Ryu impales him with a final blow. With
So,
his death, Bosch's Link Dragon Chitiri
and it just gets
reveals itself,
impaled,
telling
just
Dean to claim
fatality,
side
Mortal
with Sora.
Kombat, his spine
Dean
ripped
replies
out.
that mankind
Breath of
will
Fire
claim
does
the
not
sky
care.
as
They are
further
okay
running,
with violence
as
in
Ryu
front of
goes
you.
even further beyond the mortal limits of the deep
This is so
and
Dragon Ball
pours
Z.
every ounce of his life into saving Nina
Just the
and Link,
beam battle.
pushing back Chitiri
It's straight
into
up
the
Dragon Ball
pseudo,
Z.
destroying both. As the game ends, the light from the sky pours down as Ryu
And they
sees
clearly have a
sunlight for the first
facility
time.
designed to bring
Exhausted,
people
he
up to the
asks Link
surface
if he knows
very
topside plan,
easily.
and sensing
Anybody
his
can do
Launch
it.
agrees.
But why did he not do it? Did Origin just not check every now and then? He says that like we haven't gone up there in eons. Well, how long is that? How long have you not checked that everything's cool on the surface? Why are we down here? Is it a control complex? There's so many questions I have. And then this thing right here. Dean tells Ryu he had his own free will the entire time, but then right after he dies, he says, we're just programs fulfilling our roles. So was Dean lying? Because he didn't directly say, no, Ryu, you are in control of your thoughts. He just kind of said, you are doing what you want. But did what he want, did he choose for himself? Or was Dean playing off that passion to accomplish his own themes? It's not clear, and that's kind of fascinating in its own way. Same thing here. Ryu has burned down all of society just to save a girl that's gonna die anyway. Nina's gonna die. She's terminal. She's gonna die. And yes, you helped this dying girl you just met, but you literally burned all of society to do so. That is such a Ryu thing to do that we see in all the Breath of Fires. Ryu ruins society to win a fight. It's so tragic because that's never the point. It's not about saving the world, especially in this one. It's not you're saving the world at all. It's very interesting in that way. Okay. Here we are now. Wow, exactly 2 hours. Exactly 2 hours for all 5 recaps, by the way. You guys are liking it so far? Nice. Having this watch along is actually pretty fun. Are you going to leave this up so I can hear the rest? Yeah, this is going to be up. If you missed it earlier, if you just want to watch it over again or just listen to me ramble, literally for 2 hours straight. The closest I always wondered if I could do a podcast, and I always thought, I can't talk for hours straight. That's really tiresome, but stay hydrated. I've been drinking this water the entire time. I'm going to go refill it. So we're going to take a break. And do we want to discuss Breath of Fire for a little bit and then do some discussion / debates about where we rank these things? Or do we just want to, because I almost feel bad about it, do we want to do Parasite Eve, or should we leave Parasite Eve as a watch along next week? That one's going to be a lot shorter because there's only 3 Parasite Eve ones and none of them are long. I almost feel like we could watch Parasite Eve right now and we would still be under 3 hours. Should we do a Parasite Eve exclusive watch along next week? Or should we argue about rankings for a little bit? Go ahead and post that in chat. I will be right back. And everyone stay hydrated. Okay, and I'm back. All right, so sorry, I just had a phone call while I was on Rick, and it was a ridiculous notion of somebody who doesn't understand technology messing up something horribly and asking me to troubleshoot something that I am not present for, like doing IT tech support over the phone for something that they messed up. And it's hard when you're talking with someone who just literally doesn't understand the device that they're with. And you try to be patient, but you know it's a useless battle because they still are not going to understand it. I do not like troubleshooting. I don't like doing it for other people. I used to be paid for that sort of thing, and I only did it because I was paid for it. All right, so let's see. Looks like rankings are the vote, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. I enjoy the chill chatting. Quick plug, if you like this sort of stuff, if you like to hear me just do chill chatting slash ranting for at least $1, you can become a Patreon supporter, and for every single recap that comes out, you get a second video very soon after called the Deep Cut, in which you get a deep dive kind of like this. So if you like this sort of stuff, hey, you have options for that. You can get this for every single video. And let's see. Next week for Parasite Eve, I think we should do a short Parasite Eve one because Parasite Eve is also a dead series. And I know I also said that I'm going to do a t-shirt design for every series that we just finished up. And we just finished up two, so I probably will go ahead and reach out to a couple people to see if we can get some cool designs on t-shirts to expand that. Because so far I only have the two, which is the Final Fantasy themed one and the Resident Evil one. I actually like the Resident Evil one a lot. I wear that one. I think it looks cool. And we will see about getting the Parasite Eve and Breath of Fire ones as soon as possible. So when those are out, I might put out another quick little advert for it. I'm terrible with marketing, so don't expect it to be terribly exciting or sexy. Anyway, doing some rankings now. How should we do this? I don't want to do necessarily tier maker itself because you can't really put multiple things like that. Like here's what I'm thinking. Uh I kind of want to discuss each of the pillars for Breath of Fire games, like the ones that they all have in common, so we can have an apples to apples talk. And then the final one will be the one where we think, okay, overall, which would I rather play? And that could be the final one. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know what I could put this up on. I think I'm just going to put up like a really basic notepad because we're doing this on fly. I don't have anything fancy. And unfortunately, you can't do multiple tier makers at the same time, I believe. Excuse me. Uh, Let me look up tier maker real fast. I'm sure they have a Breath of Fire one. They have nonsense tiers for just about everything. Yep, here we go. They have Breath of Fire and Breath of Fire characters. How do you rank the Breath of Fire characters? That just seems like such a dumb, arbitrary thing. Anyway, let's put this up here. Let's put this up here. What are the pillars of Breath of Fire, do you feel? I feel story is obviously one. I feel battle is another. And then gameplay that doesn't include battle is another thing. And what else? What else do we think? Hold on, let me get this up on screen. Let's do window capture. Let's see. Oh, that's really big. Yoink. Yoink. All right, that's close enough. All right, so Story, battle, gameplay. I kind of want. I wish you could like put the ranks on each of these, but we'll just come up with that in general. What else is a major pillar of Breath of Fire? Because to me, it's not as simple as like, oh well, I'm gonna say this is the worst because I don't like it, and I'm gonna say this is the best because I like. It's not that simple. There's only five options here. In terms of each of these, I feel that some of them are better than others. Like when it comes to story, the battle, the gameplay, maybe characters. I think characters is a big part. And then D for dragon, maybe. You do have to have the dragon system. Are we missing anything? What do we think of this? Story's important, battle's important, gameplay that you're doing otherwise. The dragon transformations. We got dragon transformations. I wish you could have like unique instances of each of these. View community rank? No, I don't want to be biased. I don't want to look at what other people are thinking. This is our discussion. We'll check this out though at the end of this. Alignment chart. Oh, that's not what I want to do. What am I doing? Hold on. How do I go back? Exit full screen. You guys are seeing all my amazing folders right now. Crap. Okay, here we go. I don't have ad block on because I support incredibly spammy ads. Yeah. But I feel like those are like the five major pillars, wouldn't you say? Like the characters themselves, the dragon transformations, the stuff that's discussed in the story, the actual minute to minute gameplay. For a vacuum cleaner. Yeah, I know, right? Thanks, Best Buy. I did have a vacuum cleaner break actually the other day. I'm not in the market for a TV. So ignore the Best Buy stuff to the side. I kind of wish I could clip that out. But in terms of story, should we go there first, or maybe we should do characters? Let's do characters. Actually, we'll do battle first. And then we could do dragon. Because to me, like, those are the ones that are the easiest to figure out. I'm going to leave story for last, because I feel like that's a really big supporting pillar. So for battle, and I'm going to go ahead and say, like, left is, like, good, and we're just kind of going down the row. We're getting, like, least favorable. Can I do this? Make it even bigger? Yeah, I can. Cool. Get out of here. Nobody cares about you. All right. So when it comes to battle, in my opinion, I already said this. I think Dragon Quarter is like the best. The I know that I'm speaking for myself when I say that I really prefer tactical strategy games. But this is not only well done here, this really sets itself apart. The rest of these are so similar in terms of them trying to refine the turn based system they have. And I feel 3 did it best next of it, followed very closely by 4 and then 2 and then 3. I do feel like they've gotten better over the series. I feel 4 simplified things from what 3 tried to do, but I think the skill system they used in 3 was better done in 4, which is more of a gameplay thing, but really impacted battle. But the skill system as well as the actual battle system itself, I would take 5. I would prefer to play 5's battle system over any of the other 4. Easy, any day of the week. So when it comes to battle, take a screenshot. I'm going 5 first, then 3, then 4, then 2, then 1. And
They're all functional. None of them have bad combat systems. They all work. I wouldn't say any of them have a bad battle system, but I would say these three are very much on the very simple side. This one tried to add a lot of character options, I feel. Um, Options that were less important here. Two, I really felt should have done better, but a lot of the characters just did not matter. Like they were so warped in terms of how each character was used in battle. Like blatantly, some were like tanks, some were glass cannons. That everyone was relegated to a role, and the game also forced you in many sections to use a character. So you did not get the freedom of battle in two, despite the fact that you had the option, especially with um the what is it, the not the position but the uh I don't remember what they call it, but it's how you can arrange them in battle. Like they have different formations. I think it's just called formations. But the different formations you could do in two were very important, and that was really good. But unfortunately, it sucked that you always had to worry about the characters that you could um really work with, and that was such an artificial limiter on what already could have been a little bit more freedom in the battle system. And the battles themselves weren't all that interesting, especially since when it came to battles of like big bosses, it came down to spamming the most powerful attack, spamming the dragon form until you ran out of terms. When you brute force the game, that is that is generic. That is C-level grade stuff. When you can just mash the most powerful attack and smooth brain your way through the game. You can smooth brain your game or your way through the game on one, absolutely, and two, for the most part, and four. Three, you had to worry about a lot of setups and how interactions worked and your special skills. So three, you had to do a little bit of work, but you could still brute force. Five, I love. You cannot brute force this game. And even if you think you can, like, I'll just turn it into a dragon, you know that costs you. Your dragon gauge is a penalty for you using your brute force stuff, trying to out muscle your way through using your tactics in your brain. So when it comes to the sheer design quality, Dragon Quarter has everything else beat because you actually have to rub your brain cells together. And I respect that. Now, when it comes to the yeah, you super fuse in two and steamroll enemies. That's another thing too, is that the fusion in two was so cool, but also so because two of those, especially one that you need for Ultimate Fusion, was completely missable. And so you couldn't even get some of that. You had to experiment with it. And the problem with the fusion, though, is that if you ever went to half health, you immediately lost your fusion, and you would have to go all the way back to Township just to refuse, just to go all the way back to the big ass dungeon you just left. That is a pain in the ass. I don't know if they changed it in the Game Boy Advance one, but in the original version, it is a pain in the ass. Um, again, the fusion system was cool, but they limited how much you could use it, and they limited how the characters you can use it with. And I didn't feel that was cool. Also, a lot of the abilities you use were kind of redundant. Like Ultimate Nina was just there just to make like some battles easier to skip past. It's like, okay, whatever. Either way, it came down to creating the biggest beat stick, and that's not fundamentally interesting. Some of these forms were really freaking cool, though. Some of the designs on in the fusion forms are really cool, but I felt like it was a good step in the right direction, wasn't realized well enough, and they didn't touch it again. Like fusion in one was way better than fusion in two, but you were more limited in two. Yeah, you could easily miss Earth Shaman way easier than Dark
Learning
One.
is all about potential. Potential for students to excel not just in school but in
Shut
life.
up. One of the ads is talking. I don't need you. Um, Dragon Transformation 3 takes the cake. It's not even close. Like, the advent of creating such a variety of dragons, each with their own forms, their own attacks, their own animations, and you could do that dynamically on the fly, allowed you to really play with a lot of it. And there was no penalty for using it. And you honestly could go the entire game without even fusing once. I actually forgot I could fuse most of the time for Ryu because I was just using him and other characters so much to do other things. You do transform into a different character, which can mess up the way you set up Ryu if you're investing with him in a certain skills for certain teachers. But still, like the dragon system in 3 is without a doubt the best one. Not even close. After that,
Do you even transform into a dragon in 4 during battle? I literally, it's been years. I don't remember. I think you do, but you just generate like an attack. Like it's kind of like 2, where you just kind of like do an animation, and that's basically it. So Breath of Fire 1 was cool because the advancements of the dragons felt like progress, and I think it kind of mattered which ones. There were also optional dragon transformations too. Like fusion and dragon transformations in 1 were more just fundamentally useful. Like in Breath of Fire 1, the fact that you can fuse, and I'm gonna go ahead and say dragon slash fusion, honestly, because really fusion is just kind of like your dragon option for your teammates that are sitting around doing nothing. And the fact that you can have your teammates be so much more useful in the dragon fusion in 1 is so good because it meant that nobody had to be benched. That was really cool. And the fusions were really good too. They felt useful, they felt relevant. You think in 4 they could turn into Dragon Soul Tech? It's weird that I don't remember 4 very much, and I loved it so much and I don't remember it. Here's the thing, I barely used Dragon Form in almost all the Breath of Fire games. Like in Dragon Quarter, I went in knowing that you had to preserve your D gauge, and I actually almost never transformed for pretty much any boss through the entire game. I went to the dungeon with so much dragon ratio ready to just steamroll past that part. Because again, you can get by on your tactics. You did not have to brute force it. And the fusions in Breath of Fire 1 were cool, except for the fact that you had to use field abilities a little bit more in that game, and that was a bit of a counterintuitive thing. So I'm going to go ahead and say. Oof. I don't know if I want to reward Dragon Quarter's approach to the dragon system, because yes, you have a draconic form, you don't specifically turn into a dragon. Because here's the thing, if you ever max out your D gauge, it shows you a screen where Ryu dies and a D literally bursts out of his body, shredding Ryu apart and becoming a full dragon. So becoming a full dragon is actually a death sentence in Dragon Quarter, but that's thematically the whole point. Bethfar Wiki says you use Dragon Gems transform into a Dragon Human hybrid, and you only saw the full dragon when you use the form breath attack. That's what I thought. It's like I remember there being like cutscenes and stuff. I don't remember for your Dragon transformations being that interesting or all that impactful. Again, I think I use them just for the big bang damage, and that's just about it. Which is kind of what we use for 2. It kind of doesn't matter. Like all 3 of these are like, it's like 3, then 1, and then everybody else. Because the problem with 2 and Dragon Quarter is your Dragon transformation is so incredibly powerful that it makes everyone else useless. Like they are so left behind in damage. It's so overwhelmingly powerful. Your Dragon transformation in 2 and 3. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that 2, then Dragon Quarter, and then 4. Because if 4, honestly, I'm so forgetting. I literally don't even remember its existence. That tells you how relevant and important it was. So hate to say it, but 4 did not have good Dragon transformation. Like this one at least had story impact and element impact. This one at least also had impact and I don't want to say importance, but it was a viable strategy. It was also a sustainable one too. Um, I could easily do this too though. Actually, I think I will because I think Dragon Quarter, the story relevance gets an extra little bit of point because the story relevance of the dragon forms, like all of them have importance. Like, oh, you can turn into a dragon; it's an important thing. But this actually had mechanical repercussions. This was a tactical choice, which I think fed into the other parts of it. Actually, no, hold on. I'm revising my statement. I'm going to put it back because these games didn't really have a fusion system. This at least had a fusion system. So at the very least, even if you weren't using a dragon, you could use a character that you could fuse. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that's pretty much the best of dragon fusion system. 3, then 1, then 2, then 5, and then 4. I'm probably forgetting all my orders already, so I hope somebody's taking notes because I'm really not remembering. So Drip God battle, it's 3, 5, 4, 2. No, it was 5, 5. Oh god, I'm already forgetting. Yeah, it was 5, 3, 4, 2, and 1. And then for dragons, it's 3, 1, 2, 5, and 4. Yes. All right, for characters. Let's start from the beginning. So, Breath of Fire 1, you have the largest cast of characters. You have 8 characters. You have pretty much one of every single race. While that is the largest one, they everybody gets an arc in Breath of Fire 1, which is nice. So everybody has a little bit of time to shine narratively. Nobody matters on the greater scheme of things though. Um it comes down to Ryu. Ryu is a central character, everyone else is a support character. But everyone at least gets a little bit of a story bit. Everyone also has field actions that are kind of necessary. Nobody's quote unquote dead weight in Breath of Fire 1. I kind of feel Mogu is, but whatever. um, Same thing for the fish guy, but whatever. You still need them for like their relevant portions. Like there are dungeons themed around their mechanics. I think Bo's thing of just like I walk through trees, amazing, wow, cool ability. But he could also hunt as well, even though hunting wasn't really that important. Ryu's fishing was stupid in Breath of Fire 1. It's literally as brain dead as Pokemon fishing. You just wait for the prompt to happen and you get it. Even though you did get the best armor and weapons in that, but they did that in 2 as well. So that one I'm gonna say, we're just gonna put this down here as a placeholder, but at least with this one, they had a large cast. They made everyone in the cast sort of matter even though Ryu's still the main character. So, okay use of character, even though narratively none of them are strong. Like, yes, they all were used, but none of them were like that impactful. None of the character stories were that interesting. Like Mogu's whole thing, Bo's whole thing, even Nina, like a lot of them had just very forgettable stories. None of them were very emotionally weighted. Ox, I barely remember even what his problem was. Gobi, I think, is like the one that I think was probably the most interesting just because he was kind of funny. He's just constantly ripping everybody off, including the party. And then Karn, it's like, I'm a shapeshifter. Cool, we're using it for fusion system. That's literally your entire purpose. So, I'm going to put it middle of the crowd because you have a good character size, but, there's a lot of variety there, but not really relevant. Breath of Fire 2, more character focus on each of them. Breath of Fire 2 is very distinct for how like separated the gap is in terms of characters that have really good story arcs and characters they do nothing with. Right off the bat, I will tell you, um, I said this, uh, Sten, the monkey man, and uh, Jean, the frog guy, had the most interesting uh, character arcs for not only how they were written, but the discussions you can have about it for the values that were there, their conflicts, their struggles, the resolutions, and the actual missions themselves were there was a lot of effort put in for their side quest missions, for their miniature story arcs. They are absolutely the strongest ones. And then you have um like the useless ones like Spar. Spar's completely useless. The character arc's actually almost non-existent. It's practically a waste of time. And you have Cat, who is a fan favorite only because she's like the cat girl. But story-wise, she's completely useless. No impact whatsoever. Nina Nina is in the middle because Nina, um, you she's only relevant because of her sister. Her sister has more of a story than she does. She's just kind of there. Decent Bao. Bao actually is front loaded. Bao's setup, which gets the story started, is fun and interesting. But what I like about Bao is that Bao sticks by Ryu the entire story. Like he's a bro the entire way. He's also a professional killer, and I respect that. Dude is cold blooded. That's why I kind of think he's my favorite character in the entire Breath of Fire series. That's why I have him as an emoji in my Discord because brutal Bao is just he's just hardcore. He's just brutal like that. Uh, so they're middle of the ground. And same thing for Ryu. Ryu's story is very middle of the ground. Uh, you really don't feel like even though it ends up about him having to make this choice about being the chosen one. I do not like that whole everybody's telling him he's the chosen one. No one tells him why he's the chosen one. No one tells him what he's supposed to do, the chosen one. He's just doing what he's already doing, which is killing demons that keep popping their heads up. They keep popping up, he keeps chopping them down. Him and Bao. And that it's like I feel like anybody could be doing that, you know? That's not really that impactful. They didn't really come across anything, and the whole thing where it's like, oh, he's rediscovering his family, his long lost sister. His sister ended up not being an interesting character point. They don't do anything with Yua. His dad could have been interesting, but he's kind of an idiot like his mother. His mother's absolutely an idiot. They both do the things at the very end that create the ending that doesn't really resolve anything. And just through sheer anime power of friendship, Ryu can break past the bonds of death and bring people back to life and cut down a negative source that nobody can actually kill. Ugh. The field abilities were probably also. Oh, that's right. I almost forgot about the armadillo guy. I Rand. Wait, like again, super forgettable, not impactful, doesn't even matter. He gets a very brutal scene. Like, damn, your mom died in a terrible, horrible way. That's unfortunate. But at the same time, like, who cares? Like, he was just a dude who's a gladiator looking for a job, and he happened to come around because he had nowhere else to go. He just ran because he didn't want to be framed for a murder. It's so irrelevant. His rolling ability was kind of cool on the field, but yeah, no. Breath of Fire 2, you have two really, really good character writing, a couple of really mediocre, and everyone else is useless. So I'm gonna at least put that ahead of Breath of Fire 1, because everyone was mediocre in Breath of Fire 1. You have quantity, you don't have quality. Here you have. Oh, and Dees is there, but Dees was an optional character, so I excuse the fact they didn't write for her. They did give her some bonus dialogue at the end. Um, they have good quality here, even though it's offset by a lot of mediocrity. Breath of Fire 3. Breath of Fire 3 is nice for a couple of reasons. With the exception of Yggdrasil being a troll at the very end, every one of the characters had an interesting story. The stronger characters in this story are absolutely going to be Gar. Gar's story is the strongest story in that entire story. I can't help saying story redundantly because Gar's story, his entire purpose for being, his entire quest, he makes the moves that move everyone else. If you think about it, Gar's almost the main character because the entire point of the first arc when they're kids is Gar leading everybody to Angel Tower, and then he's the one who gets Ryu back, and then the entire journey is over to meeting the goddess, which is what Gar wanted to do anyway. Gar's literally leading the entire party, and his story, his conflict of his faith being broken, even though its entire purpose for being, going to the very end, meeting the wizard, seeing the man behind the curtain, realizing you don't get an answer, you don't get even a bad answer, you get a non-answer. And then he's forced to die because his entire support for a living goes away. And he has to just accept that. He has to accept that he doesn't get answers in life. He has to accept that he has to, at the very end, he's like, I want to believe that what I did was right, but I have no way of knowing, and I'm just going to have to deal with that. And that is such a grounded take on just like how sometimes powerless you can be in the greatest sphere of life where just shit just happens. You just gotta deal with it. There are so many things beyond your control, and sometimes you die not knowing. You can just hope that you did the best. Gar's has the strongest character writing in that game. Uh, After that, I said this before earlier. Childhood Nina was the most delightful character. I really liked her, which is why it broke my heart that when she became an adult, they suddenly stopped writing for her. She didn't have any arc. She didn't have any relevance. She was just there to be a plot MacGuffin, to be like, hey, Ryu, long time no see. By the way, let's go see Momo at the factory. By the way, let's go investigate these mysterious murders that Ray happens to be found in. By the way, let's go over to my castle where there's ancient technology. She's just there to be a MacGuffin guide. Like, she doesn't serve a purpose. It's a really weak usage of Nina, which is such a shame because, again, child Nina is so smart, inquisitive, her interactions, her animations, her dialogue is so good and so much fun. I don't know why they stopped putting any effort to her when she grew up. It's kind of depressing. Where sometimes people are more interesting when they're younger and they grow up become a boring adult in a way that's kind of relevant. It still bothers me that her character portrait does not match her in-game character art. Then you have Ryu. Ryu is a backseat driver in Breath of Fire 3 more than any of the other Breath of Fires, arguably even 4. He goes with the flow with everyone else's story. Ryu has no motivation in Breath of Fire 3. He's arguably the weakest Ryu. He's not that motivated to seek out the goddess. He's not that motivated to learn about the dragons. He's not that motivated to save any of his friends. Like, he does. He makes that choice ultimately at the end, but they give the choice and the burden of responsibility to the least interesting and impactful character. Like, he's strong and he can turn into a dragon. That's great. He's important because he's rare. Tipo was right about Ryu the entire time. That Ryu is wasted potential, and he really was. Ryu was wasted potential in this game. Tipo was correct. And so you can't blame Tipo for trying to, like, bag that hustle. Because he's like, yo, we're like the only living dragons who have anything. And then everybody putting so much faith into Ryu being the chosen one was another hilarious thing. And even they weren't sure. It's like, well, you might as well be the chosen one because I'm old and I'm about to die. It's like, well, thanks, Jono, appreciate it. And then even the other dragons was like, Ryu, your biggest power is somehow you get people to follow you like friends. We don't know why, but that seems to be your real power. And maybe that is it. Ryu's power is friendship. Somehow he's just a likable guy. Very unoffensive, but also very boring. And then you have Ray, who I like his conflict of what he's doing with his life. He has that sort of midlife crisis, like, what am I doing with my life? Everything I built my life on ended up being a lie. And again, he doesn't really have a reason for being there, and he admits this. And he goes along because he wants to be a friend of Ryu, but ultimately doesn't serve a purpose. And he doesn't get his answers either. Momo at least is straight up like, hey, I'm here to learn old world technology, and I don't really know all this crap about Destiny and dragons and gods. I'm just here to figure out this tech, man. I'm just here for the tech. She's only there. She's only used, again, as a MacGuffin device. She's there to fix the machine. She's there to explain technology to the rest of the group. They don't give her an arc. Even though she's there to, like, learn more about her father and follow in his footsteps and make discoveries, I like Momo conceptually. They don't do anything interesting with her. So it's a weight of, you have one good story, a couple of mediocre ones, and a couple of non-existent ones. I kind of have to put that, like, below one. Because yes, everybody's mediocre, but at least you have arcs for every one of them. This you have more useless than you have good. Gar is good. Gar does not carry the entire story, even though he does lead the entire story. Um, 4, Folu is the main character. He should be. I'm glad he's on this cover. He is the main character. Folu does carry the entire story of Breath of Fire 4. Every scene he's in is captivating, is interesting, and drives everything else forward. From the moment he comes in to the moment he leaves, Folu is a charismatic force. And that is, he's so interesting. His character interactions with other people, the conversations he has with both people that are both his allies and his enemies, he has interesting dialogue with. They write him and the people he's with so well. The people around Ryu are also written like, Cray doesn't catch a break. Cray has so much shit thrown on his plate, and the reason why he's dealing with all of it, also he has to kill. That's tragic. And that just feels heavy. Nina is a non-existent relevant part. Sias is so forgettable. He's just there to be a dog. He's a dog samurai. Like, that's cool. They don't do anything with him. And I mean, you have Dees and Urshan, and yeah, Urshan's like a likable robot, and like Dees being a brat, but also being like exposition dump, and also being part of the endless struggle. I like her philosophy and her perspective on things. She has a good character arc that I think resolves well. There's also a bit of character redemption when she's like, I don't give a shit about this tin bot, whatever. And then when the robot dies, the toaster, literally she dies. She's like, I do feel bad for this toaster, so okay, I'll go possess the toaster again. And so, like, you kind of feel like, okay, maybe I can deal with these. I like how Deece like lives in her own little dream world where she's like hand tended to um by like totally strapped shirtless dudes like feeding her grapes and fanning her. It's so funny. She's like, hey, she's just living her fantasy, man. Like she's like, I didn't ask for any of this. F all this endless crap. I just want to live my own life. Screw you. I would say four is probably the best in terms of the characters because there's a fewer cast, and even though there are some absolutely vacant characters, the strength of both Folu and Deece and Cray even are more than enough to carry a lot of the discussion, the story, the drama, and the big emotional hits of Breath of Fire 4. They absolutely knock it out of the park multiple times with those characters. Breath of Fire 5. You only got three characters. And you would think with three characters, that is much more effort placed on the character writing. That is not the case. Nina is only used as a plot device. That's literally it. They wrote her to where she doesn't speak, which is a waste of potential because even without a speaking character, you can still convey story and emotions, and they don't do a very interesting job with her. The regents get more camera time and attention than she does, and even though a lot of them are all played for fools and it's a tragic comedy of errors, um, Ryu himself is a driving force. I like the constant mental and physical conflict he's constantly experiencing. He is the most interesting Ryu out of all of them because he's the only one that's written with dialogue. That's meaningful dialogue. None of the other Ryus get meaningful dialogue. They're all like vacant blank protagonist. This Ryu is written, and almost by proxy, he becomes like an active agent in his own story, which is fundamentally more useful. He is the best written Ryu out of all of them, even though a lot of them are like have like Breath of Fire 4's Ryu has very weighty choices to deal with, but and same thing for 1. But out of all the Ryus, he is the most developed one, only because everyone else is not developed. But his conflict is real, and his choices feel real too. And then you have Lyn. Lyn is woefully underused. Lyn is only exists to A, be eye candy, but B, also be someone where you can talk to, because even though he can talk at Nina, she's not going to talk back, so they can't have a meaningful conversation. So Lyn is horribly underutilized, Nina's non existent, and Ryu's literally carrying the story. I'm gonna have to place that probably behind 2, because 2 at least had more than one character that were interesting. It's good that the main character is like the moving force of it, but when it comes to characters, uh, you really had a lack of effort when you had so much potential, unfortunately. So I'm kind of divided on these character things, but this is the closest I can come to, and I rationalized it in a way that makes sense. So I would say for characters 4, then 2, then 5, then 1, then 3 for usage of the cast and characters. The theming across all of them, though, we'll get to that in the story. So I'll pause. If you can, somebody in chat write that down, please. Our characters 42513. Thank you, Drip God. Gameplay. All right, so when it comes to gameplay, we are not including battle because we just talked about battle. Gameplay is going to be everything else you do. It's going to be exploration. It's going to be the mini games. It's going to be the dungeons. It's going to be the moment to moment gameplay, the balance of it, like, leveling and things like that. The stuff you can do in this game. I'm going to go ahead and say, Dragon Quarter, you are last on this. I hate to say it, but this is a game that is very. I heard that they ran out of time and budget on this game and they couldn't do anywhere near the amount of stuff they wanted to do with this, and that's unfortunate. Because outside of just. And I feel it's part of where the timer mechanic helps cover up that fact. Because, like, oh, you don't have time to do all this other stuff. But that's also apart from the fact that there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do in this game. Other than drive the story and replay it to beginning to end. So the core critical path for Dragon Quarter, there's like 1 or 2 side quests you can do, but even then they don't ultimately matter. There's just nothing to do in Dragon Quarter 1. Dragon Quarter 1, like there's only one Dragon Quarter. Breath of Fire 1, that is where they went with a very traditional RPG formula. You explore, you have a couple of optional things you do. You're mostly going from town to town, learning the main story that's there, do the dungeon, move on. You don't look back. Excuse me. In Breath of Fire 1, you don't look back. And
I feel it's sufficient. Like it does an adequate job. I feel like that's the benchmark we should be measuring the rest against. You do have activities for everyone to do. Like you have hunting, but you don't have to do it. You have fishing, which outside of the ultimate gear you don't have to do. Um, Trying to think if there were optional dungeons in this game. Not too much, to be honest with you. And even then, the dungeons had a couple of good ideas. I'm gonna put it above this because Dragon Quarter, yeah. The Dragon Quarter dungeons were also weak. They were just straight up weak. They were just monster closets and hallways. Breath of Fire 1 leaned on mazes and didn't have very much creativity, even though the context of some of them were kind of interesting, so I put them slightly above normal. 2 straight up knocked it out of the park. All these dungeons were trying something interesting. There were gimmicks, there were puzzles, there were mini games to do. You had the cooking system they implemented, the town building system that even though 3 and 4 and 5 brought back, I forgot that there was town building in here. It's not that interesting. Even though it's town building and the other ones, I still think it's done the best in 2 because the vendors you can do, yes, you can get shafted and get garbage ones, but you can get ones that are beneficial throughout the entirety of the game, including unlocking the cooking. You can even get vendors that bypass the activities you don't want to do. Like, so you don't want to do the fishing minigame, which is not my favorite in 2. You can get a vendor that sells you all the fish. So you don't want to grind for like certain activities or elements. You can just get a vendor that does it for you. It's like 2 did such a solid job of giving you interesting things to do besides the main story. And even when you're doing the main story, the dungeons themselves were actually well done. Little bit on the long grindy side, but other than that, I have to say 2 did a solid job. Following it up with 3, 3 has the best fishing minigame. I hate to say it, but I'm going to give you a solid point for that, only because of bias. Uh, Breath of Fire 3, in terms of the gameplay, though, the dungeons themselves were all mazes. And I hate mazes. They're just a bunch of winding corridors that lead to a bunch of dead ends, sometimes a chest. They're just there to waste your time to make you do more random battles. And the encounter rates in both 2 and 3 are high. Just gonna say that right now. They are very high. I know you could adjust them later in 2 on the re-release, but they are high in 3 and 2. You are constantly doing this, and it's not fundamentally interesting. There are a couple of mini games though in 3 that do break up the formula, like um, in the harbor or even in the lab when you're finding Momo for the first time. They do a couple of things where like, okay, let's try to have like a little quick mini game, and a couple of like the box moving things are slightly like puzzles. So they make some effort. It's more than 1, but definitely less than 2. So that's where I would safely put 3. The world itself did not leave much. Actually, the world did have a lot in exploration because you could go find hidden things such as hidden genes, ultimate weapons. I think there were some side dungeons you could do, so you did have extra stuff to do in 3. The bonus stuff in 2, though, like the side dungeons, like even like the chop chop move quest or stuff like that, was really cool and rewarding, you know? Or doing some of the stuff that gave you bonus spells. You could find secret characters and teachers in 3. Like the mentor system is better than in 2. More important too, but I think 2 still did a better job. It kept it more focused. 3 bloated things out a little bit too much, and also was a little weaker on some of those things. 4, unfortunately, also suffers the same thing as 1, where yes, you have things you can do on the side. They're not fundamentally important or interesting. 4 is unfortunately weak on that. The dungeons are actually not even dungeons. They're just kind of like small areas you go through, you battle through them, you fight a boss at the end, and that's it. You never go back. Um, there's not much of an overworld to speak of, although the locations you go to in 4 are beautifully designed. These cities feel like cities. Um, these areas you go to feel very well fleshed out. The architecture and design and a lot of the environments in 4 are arguably the best in the series. They do a best job of like world building in 4. The fishing's okay. uh, I'm trying to think if there were other mini games in 4. There were. I know there wasn't like the docks, and they had a couple of very humorous side quests as well. The building in this one wasn't as relevant, but it was a nice thing to do. I'm gonna say that 4 is below 3, but ahead of 1, honestly. So when it comes to gameplay,
Outside of battle, it's going to be 2 followed by 3 followed by 4 followed by 1 followed by 5. Interesting. I'm actually surprised by those results myself. Go ahead. Thank you, Larry Lunchline, for taking note of that. Here's the next one's story. This one is juicy. Because here's the thing, all of them have good stories, and it's not the basic premise that you're thinking of. As we've already discussed, if you hopefully took the time to watch all of this and you're here at this point, what I love about Breath of Fire's fighting is how unapologetic it is about looking at the morally gray and questioning philosophically, intelligently, not trying to be edgy, questioning aspects about society, about status, what's important, priorities, personalization when it comes to what really matters to you, what you're willing to sacrifice, how much your effort and how that results realistically, interactions you have with people, bonds, um, why we justify our emotions. Like, there's a lot of very heavy material discussed. And that's just, again, going into where none of it's very cleanly decided or told to you. You get to determine a lot of this for you, for yourself. It's left open ended for the player to think about. Again, they don't even disguise violence. Like, tons of people die in these stories. It's not just edgy for that. When people in games have body counts, some people like to think that's an act of evil. That's not. The good guys, quote unquote, do that too. Like in Breath of Fire 1, you're responsible for genocide. You answer genocide with genocide. You have a lot of very morally questionable things happening the entire series in each of these. Like in Breath of Fire 1, like I said, you have the genocide of your species that's countered with a genocide in another species, and even though you're fighting against a goddess who, in the end, isn't completely defeated, your answer to a lot of that, your purpose for going is just to rescue your sister, who you end up having to be forced to kill to begin with, just to entertain the notion of this fate that you didn't ask for. You don't ultimately resolve anything. Ryu doesn't gain anything, but he does kill world orders and empires and cost the entire I think he's like excluded. I think he's like banned from his village at some point. I think he goes back to it, but I think they kick him out at some point um because of like the choices he makes. Like Ryu does not end up like the winner or the hero here. Like he makes friends along the way, but even like everyone goes their own separate way afterwards. Like everyone meets up to do the mission, and after the mission, everyone goes on their life. Like nobody's like BFFs. Nobody is. Everyone's like, hey, thanks, we did the thing together. All right, we all have our own lives to live. See you, Ryu. And then Ryu goes home sad, alone, and the lives of hundreds on his hands. But the realization of that's pretty important. I think they do a good job of that. Also, the fact that the Dragon God is like this wheel-handed, where it's like I'm important, and then ends up not being important. Breath of Fire 2, same thing. The corruption of society is examined in greater detail, where a lot of the times it thinks that's what's best for people, what's best for society. Yes, it can be fueled by very selfish, borderline demonic things that like should be illegal, but it is the thing where it's like the things that everyone likes, you would think that morally we wouldn't be approving it if we knew the source of where it came from. It's the whole thing of like you're looking at how your sausage is made, that analogy. Where it's like, yeah, sausage is delicious. Everyone loves bacon, but if you really look at the process from the very beginning to how you got that end product, would you really be so appetized by it? That whole concept. Like Breath of Fire 2 keeps doing that again, where like let's look at how the sausage is made. Let's look at these things where like all these established areas, what is really going on to keep these social structures, these kingdoms, these towns in line. How can we interact with each other? Sometimes we even have quests where a lot of these people are just making very selfish moves. Like I'm making a choice for myself in my position of power to benefit myself, or many times it's not. Many times you see times where they're making the best choices for the people. Like the general public are directly benefiting for it, but at what cost? And at that point, too, you also get the point where, yes, a lot of people are benefiting, and people don't want that to change. They don't care what the cost is because it doesn't affect them at their day to day life. Who cares if the boss of this guy is in the leader of his town's like a demon? Whatever. I'm living great. So what difference does it make?
And so it comes down to that whole thing where it's like, are you doing the right thing? Are you doing the right thing by you? Are you doing the right thing by the world? Are you doing the right thing by morals? Who are you being right by? Where is your sense of justice? Because there are 1,001 senses of justice, and every one of them cry out that they're right. Breath of Fire 2 repeatedly takes a look at that during many of its arcs, especially as the characters themselves, each of them, especially during Jean and Sten, especially, really look at like what's best for the goose and or the gander and or myself, you know? They really do look at that. It's such a fascinating examination. I really do think they knock it out of the park with the story for that. The ending too is just like if you even if you want to don't look at it smooth brain, let's look at the overall premise. Killing all the demons, ridding the world, finding a prophecy, discovering the underground dragons, and then sealing it up again in an unsure way. I think that was a nice gray way of ending the story, a little bit more than one did. Three has the side quest being more interesting than the end. Miria ends up being one of the most fascinating examinations because she is portrayed by many to be this goddess who, by the way, is doing what she actually thinks is right. She's presented a problem. I have the power to help the people of this world, but I can't help the whole world. There's not enough magic to go around. So I need to do a couple of different things. Number one, and I wish they did this in the game, but they didn't directly say this was a thing, but I think they should have said this. Miria killing the dragons and using them as a source for magic kills two birds with one stone because it kills the biggest threat to your contained ecosystem, number one. And number two, they become the battery for which that ecosystem can thrive. They literally are built on the bodies of the entire dragon race. That's two birds with one stone. That's very smart. She doesn't say that's what her motive is, but the actions kind of they show that result, and I think that's very smart. And she's not wrong. Everybody's thriving and surviving in this small, secluded, like, continent, and they're okay with it. People are like, don't go to the greater ocean. It sucks. Don't go through the desert of death because, it's called the desert of death because people die in that desert of death. That's why it's called the desert of death. Nobody likes the desert. And people are okay with that. People are okay with their bioengineered food. Yeah, it may not taste as good. Gluten-free food never tastes good. But people are eating, people are thriving, commerce is flourishing, people's day-to-day problems are being solved because of this. And you're going to throw all that away because you think the birdcage needs to be opened. And you have no plan for the future. You allow the desert to take over the world. You allow people to be limited in their understanding of fundamental technology that was used to ruin things. She saw this world when the excess of dangerous technology was ruining things, and you thinking you know better, remove that, and now people are set to make the same mistake again. Ryu literally embodies not learning from your history and being doomed to repeat it, and he chose that for the sake of personal liberty. Think about that. That is such an impactful thought when you think, and you're like, wow, did I play the same game? Yeah. It's crazy like that. Javier, I used to work in a slaughterhouse. I like sausages and bacon. I mean, I still like sausages and bacon. I know how the sausage is made, but you know the moral I'm trying to say. Most people don't. That's the whole thing, is that they think if they understand the process, they don't get it. Most people are probably too bored and don't feel like learning. They don't want to know. It's not necessarily they don't care, it's just they don't care to know. And I already talked about how Gar's journey was already so strong and perpetuated that the questions each of the people have, it was very much like the Wizard of Oz, where everyone's like, we have all these questions about the world, ourselves, and what we can do to change and understand more about our world. We're off to see the wizard. And so they do go to see the wizard. And the wizard is like, wow, F all of you guys. I don't care about any of you. This is how the real world is, and this is how little you matter. I can literally snap you out of existence and nobody would care. And she was right. However, they had Idrisil there, who happens to be playing his own game. He's literally a shark this entire time. He's pretending he's this dumb onion baby. And at the end, he's like, lol, I'm actually this really powerful god. In fact, I'm more powerful than you, Miria, and when you die, I directly benefit from the new world. Thanks for being played. Congratulations, you played yourself. And he totally subverts her and gets what he wants. And yes, maybe he's sacrificing himself to create new life in the desert. Maybe he succeeds. We don't know. It's again left very open ended. The point is, it's not about good or bad. It's about choices and consequences. That happens a lot, but especially in three. Three does that very, very well. I
think I'm gonna place it higher than 2 on that. I went to the wizard for a heart, but all he gave me was a tomato. Yeah, I know, basically, right? Like just like that, it's like the Wizard of Oz was just a fast talker and a scammer. And Miri wasn't scamming anybody. She really did mean well. And like at the very end, when she's about to die, and Dees comes in and she's her sister, and Miri's like, if there's a god out there, which by the way is interesting, which because even that shows that she has a crisis of faith for herself, someone who's regarded as a god who believes in a higher power, is crying out for help for some sort of answer or salvation. She's like, if I could have done better, please let me know, because I didn't know what else I could do. And Dees is like, look, you weren't wrong, technically, but the way you went around it, you have to understand that they didn't like it. Like, you're trying to save this wounded wild animal. The wild animal's struggling and scratching. It doesn't want to be saved by you, even though you think you know what's better for it. You're like, stop struggling. I want to help you. But it doesn't want your help. And sometimes you just have to let that go. And that really harsh reality is what literally costs her life. And technically the life of everyone else around, because now we don't have magic sustaining us anymore. Wow, great job, Ryu. You literally fucked everyone over because you wanted personal liberty. Tipo as well. You killed Tipo, man. You didn't have to kill Tipo. I know Tipo was out to kill you, but you couldn't hold back just a little bit. The man clearly listens to reason. He tried reasoning with you, and just because it was a crisis in that reason, you went up and murdered him. What the hell, man? Damn. Uh, the story Breath of Fire 4, I have to say, is is a fascinating journey because of the it's a series of constant tragedies. It is such a depressing tale when you think about Breath of Fire 4. There's almost no arc in Breath of Fire 4 that ends up in a happy ending. Like even in the very beginning, just trying to um with Ryu journeying, and it's mostly Prey kind of leading it, him trying to unite the kingdoms, failing, him trying to get the hero sword back, succeeding, but then it not mattering, him just getting screwed over politically, and then them trying to rescue like Nina's sister. They're banding together for that. They go through, they find she's the victim of a horrible accident because a guy wants to make Endless, which Ryu is suspected of being a dragon, which is like an Endless, and then the whole purpose of Dragon and Endless being a moot point in this world. They don't even want to do it. They take a tone of isolation. They're like, we're summoned here, we serve a purpose. After that, we just watch over things, we don't do anything. And then Dee's questioning that, questioning herself, them being botched Endless of their own, having to deal with their own imperfections, even though they're regarded as higher beings. Um, the empire falling into ruin due to its own leadership. It's causing its own ruination, even though from the outside it's flourishing. It's shifting from being a benefit to the others to a conquering state. And the original person comes in. It'd be like if the founding fathers of the USA came in and been like, what the fuck, guys? And then they try to retake over, and then we actually murder them because like, no, we want to defend what our reality is. Screw what the founding father said. And that like every single arc ends in a very depressing way, and I can't help but feel that's so satisfying. Just where you're trying with good intentions against forces you can and cannot control, and the results are not so easily predictable. You almost can't predict a lot of the resolutions for Breath of Fire 4, and that lack of predictability I really appreciate. Even at the very end when you think it's straightforward of Ryu and Fo Lu combating for just existing on their own, coming to grips that they can't, then trying to struggle just to see who at least will finish with a moral perspective of a perspective on life, just to see which is more relevant, which ends up not mattering to because the new person who comes by is like none of it mattered, and I'm gonna snap us all and just go. It's just it comes together in such an interesting way that I love that it's a continuous series of questions that really make you think about a lot of greater issues beyond their surface level. 4 makes you think a lot, and I really like that because if you stop and think about it, you're like, man, this is really good. And again, a lot of it's because of Folu just being the absolute champ, literally being like the best character in the entire series. And that really does carry how good the story is. It's okay that some of the characters in there, like Sias, are useless and don't mean anything, but even they get like small bits where
They're very cheeky. Like one of my favorite Sias lines that sticks out. I don't remember anything else about what he says, but I remember this line when the politicians were paying them to watch Nina and the rest of them, and um they go and like escape and do stuff. They're like, Sias, what the hell? We paid you to watch them. Why didn't you stop them? It's like, I didn't stop them because you paid me to watch them. You didn't pay me to stop them. And then he smiles at them with a shit-eating grin. I'm like, I like this guy. Sometimes technical victories are the best ones. And yeah, four did a very satisfying job of a lot of it. You have a lot of quiet conversation points too that I think are really nice. The quiet conversations I do during the tent scenes in three are also nice because the dialogue and exposition in three and four are very good. They do like whoever wrote the dialogue on both these games did a fantastic job. I am gonna have to give it to four though over three. Like if I was to replay the story to which one I think was just more impactful, both of them are very good. I'm slightly gonna say four is better than three, but not by much. Both of these are very good for slightly different reasons. Dragon Quarter is, as we wrap this up, it matches and aligns with the themes that we've been going with so far, where Ryu is very selfish, and his personal journey is one lined with self doubt, incredible power, power that when used recklessly could not only ruin himself literally, but also ruin everyone around him literally, but even conceptually because people don't want to believe in the sky. People want to continue their daily life. The usage of bio filters like Nina, who cares that it's child experimentation? Who cares that it costs the life of one person? It's for the greater good. So who cares if we have these disposable humans, these people that are taken, literally made to use their life that otherwise aren't contributing to society? It'd be like, hey, if we took all the homeless people and if we converted them into weird creatures that um cure diseases, which ironically is used in Resident Evil, by the way. I'm pulling that from it. Or used to clean the air, or readjust climate change, or something like that. Whatever large scale issue you have, what if we did at the cost of the people at the bottom rung of society? Would you do it? It's a fascinating question because it's one we actually face with in today's world. How much are you going to use the people that don't matter? How much will you use them? What is the actual price of human life? Is human life worth the entirety of a society? Is it worth losing and sacrificing all that society? Is it worth turning back on what you believe in because something might be good? Is a short-term gain better than the big picture scale? There's no right or wrong answers. There's just actions and consequences. And from that perspective, Dragon Quarter absolutely hits that line. The problem with Dragon Quarter after that point is that the path along the way to those interesting pillars of plot is riddled with holes in the storytelling. It is easily the most shoddy storytelling across all of these, and it is such a shame because the soul system is such an under. I could get it's new, but they used it in the wrong way. They used it to obscure information that should have been done in the main playthrough, and every subsequent playthrough should have been adding scenes that you would not understand the context of unless you had a playthrough already. Such as, how about we dive into what's going on with Origin? And what's going on with him and the regents and why he's misleading them and what his decision points were. Well, how his interaction with the dragons went astray. What exactly are the dragons? Are there more dragons? We have one named 1, one named 4. Where's 2 and 3 and maybe more? And that rhymes. And where else do we have, like, why did he go to the surface when it's perfectly fine? Does he not check it? Why does he value it? He kind of alluded to it where he's like, I think I kind of in a sadistic way like having the humans down here be subjugated by it. But why does he feel that way to the point where he's going to die very soon and he knows this? So why is he perpetuating this? Why is he not setting up a successor? Well, he does set up a successor. He asks Odin, or not Odin, Adine, to find the next chosen one, and he finds the next chosen one, and he fights the next chosen one. Why? I have so many questions on the minute details of Dragon Quarter that it sabotages its own overall good storytelling. It really had a lot of potential to be a really good character examination on like what you value in life, and they just kind of threw it away, and that is such a tragedy. Where do I place that though? It has the most flaws. I have a right to put it down here.
but at the same time, the overall premise is more interesting than one. But one is better told than this. Damn, purpose over execution. I'm gonna have to go with execution because it doesn't matter how good your idea is if you didn't actually do it well. If the vehicle to convey that story wasn't done well, that's unfortunate. So Dragon Quarter is the weakest of the story, not because it has a bad premise, but because its execution is not very good. It's unfortunate. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay that right there, which is for story, for both themes, impacts, dialogues, conveyance, importance, and even outside the game, relevance. 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 5. 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 5. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. There's one last one that we're going to figure out at the end. But before we do this, I'm going to pull out a handy dandy calculator. And I want to, on this unweighted scale, calculate from 5 to 1 how many points we give to each of the games to kind of see on an unweighted scale how much we rank them. So like if this was like number 1, then it gets 5 points, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Which game on the scales we've already done so far rank up? So let's go with Battle first. So for number 1, we have 1. And then for fusions, it gets a 4. Then for characters, it got a 2. And then for gameplay, it got another 2. And then for story, it got another 2. Wow. So really, it ranked pretty low overall, Breath of Fire 1 did. It only got like the really high ones on the Dragon and the Fusion system. Kind of brutal when you think about it. But like it ranked very low, relatively speaking, on all of them. So the overall aggregate score for Breath of Fire 1 is 11. If we can write that down. 11 is the aggregate score for Breath of Fire 1. For Breath of Fire 2, it is clear everything. 2, then on fusions, it was 3. Characters, it was 4. Gameplay, it was 5. And then story, it was 3. So pretty medium to high range on that. Aggregate for Breath of Fire 2 is 17. 17 for Breath of Fire 2. Breath of Fire 3 is 4. Fairly high for battle, I agree. Dragon was 5, no doubt there. Characters, 1. Lol. Gameplay is 4. And then story is also 4. So wow, overall very high. Interesting. So the aggregate on Breath of Fire 3 is 18. Just edging out 2. Just edging out 2. Even though the distribution on 2 is very medium for most things, is like very high or very low for Breath of Fire 3. Interesting. I feel it's appropriate. So Breath of Fire 3 is 18. Breath of Fire 4, we are looking at 3 plus. Did I do this right? Yeah. Then 1. Characters is 5. Gameplay is 3. Story is also 5. Oops, I messed this up.
My bad. Three, one, five, E, and 5. Breath of Fire 4 is also 17. How about that? Again, medium to high for a lot of it. So Breath of Fire 4 is 17 as well. Man, how about that? And then finally, Breath of Fire 5 is, excuse me, 2 plus 5 plus 3 plus 1 plus 1. 12. Wow, Breath of Fire 5 edges out Breath of Fire 1 on the unweighted scale. That's quite a gap, too. So if we look at the unweighted scale, based on my own rationale and slight emotional bias, because I remember I only played Breath of Fire just for recap. I have no nostalgia for any of this. I played them all within the last 5 years for the very first time to completion. A couple of these I started way back in the day, but I never played them meaningfully. I kind of played like an hour or two and bailed. So yeah, it is Breath of Fire 3, followed very closely by 2 and 4, followed by 5, followed by 1. That is the unweighted scale. Now, the weighted scale is the final one, which is which would I rather play? Which would I rather play? This is the one that most people, if they're doing a tier rating, this is the only thing they care about. This is the only thing they rate on is which would I rather play? Which do I like? They're not going to go through and spend an hour and a half like we just did, actually breaking down the core fundamentals that are shared across all of the games in a fairly even manner. And if anybody, if you or anybody you know has opinions on Breath of Fire of this, by all means, please link them to this so they can listen to the discussion and maybe provide their own thoughts in the comments below. But my own personal preference, which would I rather play? If you put all 5 of these games down, you told me you have to play them in order right now, which order would you play it? In terms of the games I would absolutely play and prefer to play, like I'm gonna play this and I'm gonna have fun, which ones do I like? I'm gonna say it's Breath of Fire 4 first. That's definitely my favorite. Oh, one last thing too. This doesn't factor into any of it, but music. Music isn't not going to be weighted, but if we're talking about music, I think uh 3, 4, and 5 have like very good soundtracks. I already said that. Like I could gush about them. They have so many good soundtracks. 3, 4, and 5, you can't go wrong with any of them. They're solid. If I could give bonus points, I would. But actually that wouldn't change anything because 3, 4, and 5, it wouldn't change their rankings really. 3 and 4 would still be tops. Even if I gave bonus points like Mario Party Stars. 4 is still going to be my top one. I'm torn between 3 and 5, believe it or not. For which would I rather play? Because I'm not going to lie, Breath of Fire 1, I would play the least. I'm not feeling that. And 2, despite how great its dungeons were, it's such a grind, and I hate the grind in it. And I hate, even though there's exploits for it, but I shouldn't have to do that because of how poorly paced your game is. I hate labyrinths and mazes. Even though they do creative things with 2, some are hit or miss, I don't have fun with that. And 3 does mazes too, so I'm going to dock a point on that. I almost want to say because I love the tactical strategy thing, I would pick Dragon Quarter, then that, then that. Honestly, emotionally speaking, this is where I'm feeling. This one I almost feel because these didn't have really long-ass, useless maze dungeons is kind of why I enjoyed the experience.
This game just is any good things as Breath of Fire 2 does, it wastes my time, and I don't like that. I don't respect it because it doesn't respect my time. So if we take the weighted scale into account, then Breath of Fire 4 becomes 22. Breath of Fire 1 becomes 12. Breath of Fire 2 becomes 19. Breath of Fire 3 becomes 21. Breath of Fire 4 becomes 23. And Breath of Fire 5 becomes 16. So I think what that means is Breath of Fire 4 wins at the top with 23 points, or 22 points. Yes, 22 points. So 22 points for Breath of Fire 4, followed by Breath of Fire 3 at 21 points, followed by Breath of Fire 2 at 19 points, followed by Breath of Fire 5, excuse me, at 16 points, followed by Breath of Fire 1 at 13 or at 12 points. That's the final scale. So it ended up being 4, then 3, then 2, then 5, then 1. So even when you take into my biases, this is kind of how I rate Breath of Fire. And as you could tell, the scale with which I prefer things is not the scale with which I would still rate them. 3 and 4 ended up being way closer than I thought. But I feel that I'm glad it justified it, even though the bias scale for 4 is what tipped it above 3, using my own fair standards, like being completely fair to all the games. I felt I was completely fair to all the games, more or less. I feel I talked about the good and the bad on each of them. And watching all the recaps really helped remind me of a lot of these things that I forgot. So that's it. I talked for 3.5 hours. Thank you, everyone who stuck by. But please tell me what you think. You don't have to give me the numerical breakdown what I do. I think that just helps add a little bit of context to each of it. How would you rank the Breath of Fire games? And it's okay if you just want to be like, look, I only played 2 games, but I would say this and then this and everything else doesn't count because I didn't play them. Let me know, chat. Let me know what you think. Tell me your thoughts. This was actually, I'm impressed I could talk this long. I know I could rant, but man, I was impressed I could talk this long. Thank you for enjoying this, Nova, Wesley, Lynn, Javier. And I saw another name I didn't recognize. I think it was like Shin. I think I saw Shin in here somewhere. If you're still here, hello. What do you guys think? Drip God played none of them, so I'm just peanut gallery, but enjoyed listening to this. Hey, I'm glad you were entertained. Sometimes I feel my only ability to tell stories is to talk a lot. If I could entertain with that, then even better. Okay, after I hear from you guys, maybe I'm gonna click this community rank to figure out what the hell the community rank is. Oh boy, I can only imagine. Because here's what I hear on the street. I hear a lot of Breath of Fire 3 is the best, and then 2 and 4 kind of close after that, and then 1 is the first one, but Breath of Dragon Quarter is the bad one, which incidentally kind of matches, uh, if we just switch this, kind of matches what we just came up with on the fair scale. So I almost want to say, as much as I personally disagree with it, the public is kind of right on this one. Oh yeah, most tier lists are boring as fuck because people they don't actually want to add nuance or context to it, and they also just be like, all the games I like are here, and every game I don't like is down here, and this is a tier list. No, that's a piece of shit. This is you being too freaking dickless to actually say quantitatively why
you like certain things for the things you do, and you're not thinking critically enough about any of it. This is a lazy piece of shit. You might as well made a top 10 list. That's what you did. You just called it a tier list. There's no point in being a tier list because a tier list conveys relativity relative to each other. How much does this thing that's central to all of them matter? That's what the whole point of a tier list is. People using a tier list as a top 10 list are idiots and use it wrong. Yeah, exactly. People use them as over glorified top 10 lists. That's exactly what they do. They just call it a tier list because a tier list comes with the context of adding more rational thought to concretely think about why these things matter more than they do. Like, what if we did do the S A whatever system? What is the difference between an S and an A? What is it? And then the people who is like S, then double S, triple S, quadruple S. Those are clowns. I can't take them seriously. Technically, you shouldn't take any of this seriously. It doesn't matter. It's just all in good fun. But the discussion around it can be interesting. Just because it's all for, shits and giggles doesn't mean it can't be constructive. I think if Breath of Fire keeps these things in mind, along with the storytelling aspects they have, that's what I want to see in my next Breath of Fire game, if it ever comes around. Like Drip God says, sometimes you just gotta keep the faith. You never know. Shenmue 3 came out 18 years after its last game, and it was a piece of shit. That's a terrible example. But we do sometimes have sequels come out of the blue. Like think about uh World Ends With Us. The World Ends With You. Got a sequel after so many years. So you never know. And yeah, the whole point of communicating like this is to exchange ideas and perspectives. It's not about who's right, it's who's wrong. It's where we stand, and more importantly, why we stand for where we stand. That's what's more important. So let's check out the trash that's a community rank. See what this clown show's all about. There are not enough rankings to create a community average for Breath of Fire games. Brutal. Yet I'm not surprised. Wait, is this it? Is it just 2? That's it? Oof. Okay. This person just made a top 10 list. They liked 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Oh my god, it's almost exactly like mine. Okay, well I can't really argue with that then. I would switch this around, but yeah, that's kind of close to what we came up with. Damn, that's so woefully generic. It's almost accurate. How terrible. And then this one. At least they have the bell curve. A sign of a good tier list is a bell curve. Now, we only have 5 games, but I appreciate that they said none of these are what I would consider S tier. I respect that. A lot of love for the first one. I wonder if that was a pity placement where it's like, well, it's the first one. You have to give respect. You don't have to give respect for the first one. The first one gets credit for being groundbreaking, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was exceptional in any of the things that it did. Like, why would you play 1 when you can play any of the other ones that do anything 1 does arguably better, except for a couple of things? But yeah, a bundle collection on the Switch would be nice. It's great that we have 1 and 2 on the Switch, but Capcom really should, like they have done with Mega Man, Resident Evils, not quite Monster Hunter, but definitely Street Fighter, even Darkstalker is getting like the 3rd lease on life, maybe. Put a compilation out there. Some of the Final Fantasies have compilations. Like, put compilations out there. I don't know why I said Final Fantasy. It's not Capcom. But put some out there, man. Come on, Capcom. 2 at the very bottom. Interesting take. Interesting take. I appreciate that they put Dragon Quarter higher, though. On the same level as 3. I kind of, whoever this person is, who's clearly a Danganronpa fan, I kind of appreciate the bold take. First of all, I love that you said nothing was irredeemable and nothing was exceptional. Everything was kind of like average or somewhere close to that, and you kind of made it bell curvy. I actually respect this tier list more than this, even though this one is probably more accurate to even what we came up with. I kind of respect that. This stream was fun. This was an experiment. I want to do this for every series that we end. And oh boy, can you imagine when we get to like the end of Castlevania? And it's like 15 games. I'm gonna have to set aside some extra time for that one. Maybe not. A lot of those are very short. A lot of the Castlevania ones are like less than 8 minutes in terms of how long they are. They're all very short. And
it really comes down to gameplay more than story. Like, it's very simple to rate a Castlevania game. It's how important did it contribute to the overall lore and plot line, and then how well did it execute its gameplay. That's really what it comes down to. Like, there's usually very few characters, very little story, and the combat systems are usually quite varied. So there's enough to talk about there. I feel everyone's going to lean a little bit more on preference and rationale. And I'm definitely going to have to like watch the recaps because all those Castlevania games are going to blur together. But we can at least do. This was fun, and we should definitely do one for Parasite Eve next week because Parasite Eve I also did just finish. Technically, I finished Shenmue, but Shenmue's story isn't complete, even though it's probably dead. I'm not gonna do it though. No offense, Shenmue fans. But yeah, we'll do Parasite Eve next week, because that one we know is dead. That's a dead series. And yeah, I appreciate that you guys like this. Hopefully, I don't know, I hope that people on the main channel will come by and watch this. Uh it was a lot of fun, and this stream I think hopefully is a really good one. I'm gonna set up a separate playlist for this so this one doesn't get forgotten. I think we should call this the Memoriam Review stream. So we'll get there. I don't think I finished any other series yet. I'm very close on several of them. So the recaps on those are going to come out sooner rather than later, the ones that I'm very close on. Let's see what else we got. Kingdom Hearts is nowhere near done. I think we could talk about the Dark Chaser saga though, or Dark Seeker saga. Technically, that first arc of Kingdom Hearts is done, so we could talk about it. I still have to put out Unchained and Dark Road though, and I will put those out. I think Dark Road is still not yet translated into English fully, so wait on Kingdom Hearts. Resident Evil's still not done. It will never be done, and I'm okay with that. Um, I didn't finish Trails in the Sky, so we should do that. We could do Drakengard and Nier, because who knows when the hell we're gonna make more of those. Nah, we shouldn't. We shouldn't. But the ones that are definitely dead, Castlevania is still going on. It'll be a while. There's like a whole bunch more Castlevania still. They're good filler games for when I'm in between the long form ones. Suikoden, I'm still far. I've only done 2, so I still have to do the other 4. And I guess like maybe Tactics too. I don't know. We'll see. Fantasy Star Classic, Shadow Hearts. We just have to do 2 more of those, then we're done. Wild Arms, we have to do the rest of the series. So yeah, as the time comes when those get wrapped up, we'll do more of these. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap this up? How close are you on Castlevania? So there are. I'm actually the next couple are I'm actually just wrapping up. So there's going to be a couple Castlevanias. I'm front loading a few of them because I'm going to be taking a weekend trip out in the next couple weekend or the next week or two. So I won't be available. So I have some Castlevanias to fill out. If you haven't noticed, I'm trying to come up with a reliable posting schedule, which is on Fridays. Fridays middays is when I'm posting. Sometimes we do premieres for videos that are longer than 15 minutes. I realize that not everyone is necessarily available Friday afternoon, midday, Eastern Standard Time. YouTube says that you are, though. YouTube says that like midday on Friday, Saturday, Sunday is when the most people who watch my stuff are around. So I guess in one way or another, people are around. So we'll see. Uh, have fun with trails. We'll see. We'll see. Um, and Shadowheart is actually what I look forward to finishing up. I like them, so we'll see. They have a lot of fun ideas there. But yeah, we will do Parasite Eve next stream. I'm gonna be skipping the following week because I'll be out of town then, and then after that, I forgot. I said I originally wanted to do another co-optation or like pre-capitation, but I forgot that I need to play last year's Game of the Year story winner, which is Guardians of the Galaxy. I did not play that game last year, and it won Game of the Year, and I told myself I have to play this game and find out why it won and if I agree with it. Because last year, the game that you recall winning, or not last year, but the year before, was Last of Us Part 2, and it beat 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which is an effing travesty. 13 Sentinels is a masterclass of writing. And Jesus Christ. Look, don't get me wrong, Last of Us Part 2, I don't care how you feel about it, that's actually a very well written game. However, 13 Sentinels, Jesus Christ, knocks it out of the park. It was absolutely the best written story that year, not even close. Thank you, A40L. Oh, Elite Assassin. I see it now, the lead speak. Thank you very much for subscribing, by the way. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I was. Hopefully, you enjoy more of this. And actually, now that you're subscribed, you will get access to the Deep Cut series, the playlist. Feel free to go back all the way back. There should be like 70 something odd things. So if you enjoy this, if you ever want to listen to me just constantly ramble about the game I just did a recap on, this, except even more, yeah, you're going to get a lot of that. So hopefully you enjoy the value. Thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But yeah, 13 Sentinels was absolutely robbed for story of the year. It was bullshit. Like, yes, Last of Us are ranking up awards, and that's fine. It should not have won story of the year. That's bullshit. Just absolute bullshit. It was a crime. But hey, last year was Guardians of the Galaxy, which surprised me too. But I'm gonna play it. We're gonna be fair, but we're also gonna be critical. You know what I never like when people post reviews and like honest review. Granted I did this one time, but honest review just seems like I don't like this game and I want to preface this by saying that I'm gonna be mean to it. But it also kind of says like, hey, am I not being honest with other reviews? You know, like this is an honest review as opposed to a dishonest review. Like, what is that supposed to mean? Whatever. That's just clickbait crap anyway. How would you feel if they did release a new Breath of Fire game? I would be skeptical, but I would be cautiously optimistic. Will I one day do a recap of Odin Sphere? Tentative yes. Tentative yes. A lot of the vanilla soft games I will probably do. I think I added Odin Sphere to the queue. Hold on. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Basically, it comes down to, does it have a storyline that can be followed coherently? A lot of vanilla soft games require replays. And as long as the multiple ending things is not going to be an obstacle, then tentative yes, but again, we'll see. But okay, I'm wrapping this up, and I'm glad a lot of you had fun. Thank you so much for if you stuck around this entire time. If not, of course, the VOD will be right here on OBM Plays, the streaming channel. And please look forward to the upcoming recap. It's going to be Castlevania. It's going to be a short one, just saying. You know, right now, I think this might be my shortest recap yet, but it's still important to the lore of Castlevania, so please give it a watch. Last week, I did put out Breath of Fire, of course. Please give that a watch if you haven't seen Breath of Fire yourself. We can see in this discussion, I mean, you technically could have watched it right now during this, but I think it's a very relevant, very important game. It certainly does not deserve as much of the reasons people will hate it, because a lot of people have opinions on this from 20 years ago. It's like, look, you're going to trust yourself from 20 years ago to have a coherent opinion that's still relevant today? I extremely doubt that. Pressing X to doubt on that hard. And also, if your opinion's founded on like the blanket opinions of other people who also may be going on 20 years ago, I'm pressing X hard to doubt on that. But hey, to each their own. I just wonder if they can rationalize and support their beliefs as much as I did. I expect at least that much courtesy. But hey, remember, if there's one thing you take away from Breath of Fire, it's not about right or wrong, it's about actions and consequences. And so with that, I'm wrapping up. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you all for tuning in. Please look forward to next week's Same thing, probably shorter though, but Parasite Eve featured. And on that note, I will see you on the next battlefield.